Put out the fires. All of them. Right now. That was my father coming out of the tree line with 13 men behind him and 6 trees on their shoulders, and he did not sound like a man who had just had a good night at work. 6 trees, 20 meters each, nobody dead, nobody missing a limb. That is a triumph where I live, and every single one of those men had a face the color of old snow. I was in the middle of a form when he said it, fist out, hip turning, the whole thing, because I had exactly one hobby in this world, and it was punching air in the dark at -70. My little brother Guo Lei stopped watching me and started watching him. Father, we just lit those, somebody said. Then unlight them, my father said. How long until dawn? A quarter of an hour. Everyone inside, everyone, now. Nobody argued. That is the thing about a camp of 239 people living in a hole in a hillside. Arguing is for places where the argument can be survived. I should explain about the dawn, because if you are picturing something warm, you are picturing the wrong world. Where I live, the sun is the murder weapon, not the night. The night is only about 70 below, and you can walk around in it wearing hides if you keep moving. Daytime is colder. Daytime has light in it that goes through your skin and stops your arm from being an arm. 4 hours of it, every day, and every human being on the planet spends those 4 hours in a hole with the door shut, telling children to be quiet. So we live at night. We work at night, we eat at night, we haul trees at night, and the cold beasts, who are stronger in daylight and only mildly interested in eating us at night, have the whole schedule memorized. I had been in this body for about a month. Before that, I was a guy on Blue Star with a martial arts family, a lot of ambition, and a nervous system that had decided to quit on me, one muscle group at a time. I made my own arrangements about that on a bright afternoon. So you can imagine how funny I found it that the universe put me somewhere the sunlight is what kills you. The universe has a sense of humor. It is not a good one. Guo Lei fell in beside me as we ran, still buzzing about my training because he was 14 and I was his big brother, and in his head I had already won everything. You're going to be the 4th, he said. Everyone knows it. Only 3 geniuses ever hit logging level before 18, and you're going to be the 4th. Sure, I said. Logging level. 5,000 caddies of base strength, which is the exact amount of strength required to knock down a tree in a reasonable amount of time, which is why they named it that. Poetry is dead here too. I was at about 4,000 and change, which sounds impressive until you understand the local baseline. A month earlier, I had watched a woman my mother's age pick up a fallen trunk that weighed as much as a small car, adjust her grip like she was annoyed at it, and carry it uphill. She was not a warrior. She was in charge of the fruit. Everyone in this world is a perfected version of Mike Tyson. Every single person. The children, the mothers, the guy who does nothing but count crystal fruit. I arrived here as a 2-meter martial artist from a family that had been punching people professionally for 4 generations, and my rank in this camp was somewhere below average. Anyway, we ran, we sealed the cave, we put out the bonfire, and my father told everyone the good news. That Specter in Redwood Ridge has come out. Here is what I knew about Specters at that point, which was everything anyone knew. Iron Peak Camp and Shenju Camp had 600 people between them. Now they had none. Not fewer. None. The camp had a formation for the dark, and they got into it without being told. Children in the middle, women around the children, the grown men around them, and the logging team on the outside, closest to the door. Guo Lei and I got put on the outside too, and nobody made an exception for the leader's sons, which I want you to remember for later. Then we sat in a hole with no fire in it, at 70 below, and waited for the sun to come and go. An hour in, the children's teeth stopped chattering. That sounds better than it is. Teeth chatter because the body still thinks it can win. A mother somewhere in the dark asked for fire. Just a small one. 10 minutes. My father did not say no. He told her a story instead, which is the oldest leadership trick there is. In 20 years, he said, exactly one man has seen the Specter of Redwood Ridge and lived. Leader Jiang Bo of Luoji Camp. Do you know what he did afterwards? Nobody wanted to know. Everybody listened. He went mad, and then he killed his own youngest son with his own hands. The cave got quieter, which I had not thought was available. It has no shape of its own, my father said. It becomes people, not a costume. It becomes them. Your face, your voice, the way you clear your throat, the thing you said to your wife 6 years ago that nobody else heard. There is no test. There is no method. Nobody has ever found one. And if it gets you, he said, you do not die quickly. It ties you up, and it takes a small knife, and it removes you one slice at a time. And as long as some of you is left, you are still there for the next slice. Great. Wonderful. Love that for me. That was the moment somebody knocked on the door. Not knocked. Called. Why did you seal the entrance so early? Open up. We're back. I knew the voice. Everyone in that cave knew the voice. It was my father's, and my father was standing 8 feet away from me in the dark with his hand on my shoulder, not breathing. Nobody moved. 200 people in a black hole in the ground, and the only sound was a man outside politely asking his own family to let him in. Do not panic, my father said very quietly. It hunts light. We have no fire. It is guessing. I want to be fair to my father here. That was a good read and a good line, and he delivered it calmly, and it bought about 9 seconds. Then the branches over the entrance came away, and the killing light came in with the shape of a man standing in it, and it was not one man, it was 14, the whole logging team, every face, standing outside our door in a neat group, the way they always stood, with my father at the front of them, and inside the cave, the whole logging team, standing in the dark, staring at themselves. I have seen a lot of things in 2 lives. That one rearranged something behind my eyes. Somebody outside said in my father's voice, Chuan Jie, come here. Somebody beside me said, in my father's voice, do not go. The 2 teams went at each other in the mouth of the cave, and camp pulled backward deeper into the dark, and the sunlight was coming through the open entrance now in a long white wedge that nobody would cross on purpose. Seal the cave, said the one on the inside. Now, do not wait for me. They are the copies, said the one on the outside. Boys, help us. Guo Lei started left. He is a good kid, and his father was calling him, and that is all a 14-year-old needs. I got a hand around his arm and stopped him. Do not move, I said. Are you sure? 100% sure. Which one? He wasn't. His face said he wasn't. Then both of them started proving it, and that was the part I hated. Last month when the icicle came down and knocked you out, said the one outside. I sat with you. I put the medicine on. Chuan, said the one inside. Last night I sharpened your stone dagger. You could not get the edge right. And I stood there in the dark holding my brother's arm, and I did the arithmetic. And the arithmetic was very simple and very bad. Both of them knew everything, which means neither of them was guessing, which means both of them got it from the same place, which means my father was already dead, and before he was dead, somebody made him talk. My grip tightened. Golei's whole body went stiff under my hand, and I felt the exact second he did the same math I had. He was 14. He got there in about 4 seconds. Remember that too. So I handed my brother a hand axe. Let me look at them, I said, loud, reasonable, a helpful young man trying to solve a puzzle. Up close, both of you. Hold still. They held still. Of course they held still. They wanted to be chosen. I walked around behind the one on the right, and I let my voice come out of a place I do not use often. Do it. 2 axes came down at the same time. Guolei's got caught bare-handed, in the dark, without looking. Mine went into a skull and split it top to bottom and did not find anything inside a skull is supposed to have. No give, no wet, grain. Wood grain, running the length of the split, and the 2 halves stayed joined at the neck and swung open like a shutter, and the open face turned toward me, and smiled. The other one walked over, calm, unhurried, put a hand on either side of the split, pressed it closed, like a man shutting a cupboard, and the seam sealed itself and was gone. Then it talked, and its voice was nothing like my father's. It was the sound of a plane going over dry wood. My 2 creations are exactly the same as your father, exactly the same. How did you 2 work it out? And then, because it was enjoying itself, when that Guohan died, he was still running. In the opposite direction from your camp, trying to pull me away. It seems he cared a great deal about you people. Guo Lei went at it with his bare hands. I got him back by the collar, and then 26 logging-level puppets came through the mouth of our cave into a room containing 200 civilians, and I stopped being able to help anybody. I am not going to walk you through the next minute. 20 people were gone before I got to my feet. 50 or 60 were on the ground. One of them put me into a wall hard enough that I tasted the inside of my own chest, and then I heard my brother, save me. The thing wearing my father had him off the ground by the throat and was taking its time, slowly, on purpose, making sure I could see how slowly. I want you to understand that in that specific second, I had 4,000 caddies of strength, no weapon, a mouthful of my own insides, and a very clear picture of how the rest of my extremely short life was going to go. That is when a window opened in the middle of my vision, encountering destructive damage. Camp system is rebuilding. Gifting elementary building, small fire pile. I had no idea what any of that meant. I did not have time to have an idea. There was a place in my head where the thing wanted to go, and I put it in front of my brother, and something in the air agreed with me. A spark. Then 3 meters of red fire out of nothing at all, in a cave with no fuel in it. The thing holding Guo Lei came apart, not burned. Came apart, all the way down, in about a second and a half, screaming in that drywood voice, "What kind of fire is this? What kind of fire is this?" And then it was smoke, and then it was not even that. 2 more walked into it and went the same way, and they did not get to scream. My brother hit the floor and breathed. Everyone still alive got behind me, which is a thing that happens to you the first time and changes your life. Here is the part nobody in that cave found out for a long time. 3 of them died. 23 did not. The fire had a radius of 10 meters, and outside those 10 meters it was a campfire, and I had exactly one of it, and there were 23 of them left, and they were all faster and stronger than every human in the room. The lead one stopped at the edge of the light and looked at me across it. "Little thing," it said. "How long can that fire of yours burn?" "A very, very long time," I said, which was the single largest lie I have ever told, and I told it while smiling. Then I turned around and told my camp to drag every log we owned into a line and set all of it alight. 50 meters of it. 60. A wall of ordinary useless fire that could not have hurt those things if they had lain down in it and taken a nap. And they backed up. They backed up one step at a time for an hour all the way to the tree line because they had watched 3 of their own turn into smoke and they did not know which flame had done it. At dawn, they left. The lead one looked at me the whole way out. When we counted, we had lost my father, 13 men on the logging team, and 72 people in that cave. 154 of us left, and the thing that scared me most was not the number. It was that the Specter never showed up. Both of my fathers were things it had made. The second one stood there like a switched-off lamp until the first one burned, and it was still out there, and it had never once been in the room. I started dragging branches to reseal the entrance by myself. Guole got up and helped. Then somebody else. Then a woman with a child on her hip. Then everybody. Nobody said anything. It was the warmest that cave had been all night. 2 days later, I was in charge, which is a strange sentence to write, because nobody voted. It happens like this. Somebody has to say what we do next, and there is a silence, and then either you fill it or nobody does. I filled it. "We cannot stay here," I said. "Pack, we move when it gets dark." And 154 people packed. The place we moved to was cave number 4. We had 6 caves strung along the east slope, 500 to 600 meters apart, and number 4 was the farthest one out, which is the exact opposite of what your instincts tell you, and that was the point. The thing knew where number 1 was. It had been inside it. While they packed, I finally looked at the window in my head properly. Camp, Daxia, level 0, leader, Guoji, territory population, 154, resources, wood 15, coal 0, iron 0, silver 0, gold 0, buildings, small fire pile, level 1. Everything else on that list was there and grayed out. Wooden dummy, green bamboo fence, marking stone, medicine decoction pot, yellow soil field, grinding stone, small wooden table, thick iron chain, 8 beautiful locked doors, and under each of them a price in coal and iron and silver and gold. I had none of those things. I could not get any of those things. Iron and coal come out of the ground, and getting them out of the ground requires excavator strength, which is the level after logging level, which is the level I was not at yet, and there was nobody else in camp within shouting distance of it either. So before anybody asks the obvious question, here it is with the obvious answer. Why not just build everything? Because 8 of the 9 buildings cost metal I cannot dig. Why not keep the fire burning all the time and be warm forever? Because it eats 2 wood a day and I had 15. And because of the other thing, which I found out the hard way, and which I will get to, why not sit on the fire and be safe from specters forever? Because a 10-meter circle is not a place to live. It is a place to die in slowly with your friends. The cheat was real and the cheat was tiny. That was the whole shape of my first year. We marched in 3 groups. 40 adults at the front carrying the 3 trees we still owned, 76 children and 13 women in the middle, me and Guole and the 23 teenagers at the back. 1 bone whistle for signals, no voices. 2 kilometers, 2 hours, through snow that went from knee-deep to over your head. At the new cave, I put the fire out with a thought, and it went back into the window as not placed, which meant I could carry a campfire in my pocket, which is the first genuinely nice thing that had happened to me since I got here. Then we counted the food, 700 caddies of crystal fruit. Those are the fist-sized things off the ice fruit trees. Sweet, half a caddy each, and 2 a day per person keeps a human being technically alive and completely miserable. 700 caddies, 154 people, under 10 days, and 60 caddies of cold beast meat. Cold beast meat is the only thing in this world that makes you stronger. You eat the blue meat, you work your body until it screams, and your base strength goes up. That is cultivation here. There is no breathing technique, there is meat and there is suffering. 5 caddies a day is roughly the most a body can take. More than that, and it stops being food, so 60 caddies was 12 days of somebody becoming somebody, and my brother stood up in front of the whole cave and said, all 60 should go to me. You could hear the silence land. That meat had belonged to the men who died, which meant it belonged to their sons and daughters who were sitting right there. Song Lin stood up. Big kid, built like a door, absolutely no ability to be tactful, which in my experience makes for excellent friends. Jai, we trust you, but swear something first. Swear that when you break through, you won't take off and leave us. And every face in the cave turned to me, and this was the moment, and I knew it was the moment. So I said no. I will not swear that. You could feel the temperature drop, and it was already 70 below. If I wanted to leave, I said, I would swear your oath, and then I would leave. An oath is just noise a man makes with his mouth, so I am not going to give you noise. I let that sit. Trust is the only thing between us. It is the whole floor we are standing on. So I will say one thing and one thing only. If you give me that meat, then one day I will pay you back 10 times. 100 times. Nobody said anything for a while. Then one voice said, give it to him. Then another. Then the whole cave. I have made a lot of promises in 2 lifetimes. That is the only one I have ever kept the receipt for. 8 days, 5 caddies a day, every day, and the long fist thrown at nothing until my shoulders quit, and then thrown some more. Veins standing up on my arms in a room where the water froze, sweat that turned into frost on my own chin, and the whole camp lying down watching me because they were too hungry to sit up. That is not a joke. When you are on 1 crystal fruit a day, sitting up costs calories you do not have. So they lay on the floor of a cave in the dark and watched a teenager punch the air. So I taught them the form. It rises like a gale and it strikes like lightning, I said, going through it slowly, over and over, while 150 starving people watched from the floor. Learn it lying down. When we have enough meat, everyone in this camp learns this. Men, women, all of you. They thought I was being inspirational. I was being extremely practical. A camp of martial artists is a camp of hunters, and a camp of hunters eats. We measured strength on 12 stakes I had cut, 500s, 2 500s, 5,000s. Every night I stacked them and lifted, and every night the camp watched the number like a scoreboard, because it was the only entertainment we had, and because it was the only good news that existed. 4,100, then 3, then 5, 4,009. On the 8th day, the fruit was almost gone, and I stacked 5 1,000 caddy stakes and put the whole thing over my head and held it there. Logging level. Somebody made a noise. Then the cave made a lot of noise. I put the stakes down and got my hides on. As soon as it's dark, I said, I'm going out to find fruit. Going out alone was not brave, it was arithmetic. I was the only person in camp who could carry a tree, and the 13 men who knew where the ice fruit trees stood had all died on the same night, and not one of them had ever bothered to tell the leader's teenage son, because why would they? So I had a territory I could not read and a camp with 3 days of food in it. Redwood Ridge, for the record, is not a forest. It is a thing pretending to be a forest. The trees on the outer rim are 3 or 4 meters thick. Go in 100 meters and they are 10 meters thick, and you cannot see the tops of them, ever, because the tops are in the dark above where the light stops. And the whole thing grows outward a little every year, which means every year the cold beasts get pushed a little closer to us. Our slice of it was 800 paces of the eastern rim. West of that line was Dashi Camp. That line existed because Luoge Camp drew it 20 years ago, and everyone respected it the way you respect a fence made of politeness. I also picked up my first small torch that night. The fire pile had burned 13 units of wood in 8 days, and every 10 produces 1 portable version of itself. A campfire in your pocket that a specter cannot stand near. I climbed a vermilion frost tree to get a look at the ground, which is a stupid thing to do at night in a place full of things that eat you, and I did it anyway, and it worked. 200 or 300 meters west, a gap in the canopy. The ice fruit tree was 40 meters tall and silver all the way up, and it was carrying something like 1,000 caddies of fruit, and I stood at the bottom of it feeling like a man who had just found a bank with the door open. Then I noticed the icicles. There were dozens of them hanging off one particular branch, long ones, and one of them was pointing up. Icicles do not point up. It was a long-tongued snowmane, a young one, 300 or 400 caddies, asleep in the branches with its tongue hanging down through the ice like it belonged there. Snowmanes sleep like the dead at night. That is their entire personality after sundown. I tested it. I threw a rock at a tree 100 meters off and brought down a curtain of real icicles with a crash you could hear in the next province. It did not move. It did not twitch. It slept through it like a man who has finally paid off his debts. Fine. I would come back at the end of the night, fill a sack quietly, and go home. Then an arrow went past me. 17 men came out of the trees on the west side. Dashi Camp, on our ground, 400 meters past the line, and they had bows. Actual bows, and one of them had an iron blade that caught the starlight, which meant they had bought it off Luoge for something enormous. I got very still behind my tree and did the math again, and the math said 2 things. 1, I could not fight 17 men with bows. 2, and much more important, nobody could be allowed to see what Daxia Camp currently was. Because 154 half-starved people with no logging team is not a neighbor, it is an opportunity. So I watched them work. They were good. Blinded the left eye first, put snares on the limbs and the neck, 5 teams hauling in different directions until the thing was flat on its side, then 2 more arrows into the right eye. It stopped moving. They cheered. They started talking about how this was 2 or 3 months of food for the whole camp. One of them said, "Now do you see the power of these bows?" And a man walked up to the head to pull his arrow back out of its eye. The snowmane came off the ground like a thrown door and hit him in midair, and he stopped being a shape I could name. It had been faking. blind in both eyes and pinned under 5 teams of men, and it had lain there and waited for someone to get close. The tongue took the second man through the middle, then curved in flight, and went for their leader. 2 men put themselves in front of it. The one with the iron blade caught it on the steel with a sound like a bell. The tongue whipped around the blade and killed the man beside him instead. Then it came back for the blade man, and he threw the blade to his leader on the way down. 3 men, in about 6 breaths, from a beast that was already blind. Their leader kept his head. "It cannot see," he said. "Move slowly. If we make no sound, it cannot find us." Somebody hidden further out shot an arrow into a far tree to pull it that way, and Dashi Camp ran west and left their dead where they fell. The snowmane came back. It stood in the clearing and turned its ears around like a radar dish, and then it climbed the tree, badly, sliding twice, and went to sleep bleeding. And I stayed behind my tree, looking at 400 or 500 caddies of meat that was still walking around, with a camp 3 days from empty. I did not walk away. Here was the plan. At the time, I thought it was a good one. I dug a hole in the snow the size of my body beside a big oval rock. I planted my one and only small torch 50 meters off and lit it. Then I got in the hole, pulled the snow over myself until only my eyes were out, and settled in to wait. The logic. The torch keeps the beast awake. The beast is blind and bleeding. The beast bleeds out. I collect 400 caddies of meat and go home a hero. The snowmane came down the tree about 20 minutes later. It walked past my hole at under 10 meters with 2 arrows still standing out of its eye sockets. It went to the torch, and it put its face in the flame, not by accident. It leaned in and held there, the way a man holds his hands over a stove after coming in from a storm. It did not burn. It was enjoying it. And then I watched, from a hole in the snow, 1 meter of my own head sticking out, as the wounds on that animal started closing at a speed I could actually see, and the pressure of the thing in the clearing went up like someone turning a dial. My magic fire heals cold beasts. My magic fire is a health spa for the things that eat us. I had walked 2 kilometers in the dark to bring a monster a hot meal and a massage. That was when the bone spike frost wolf came out of the tree above the torch, because of course there was a second one, and it also wanted the fire. The fight was one-sided in a way I did not expect. The wolf went under the boar's belly and opened it, then went quiet and started circling on its pads only, no sound at all, and I realized what it had worked out. It had noticed the arrows. It knew the big one was blind. A wolf. Doing analysis. It pinned it, went for the neck, dodged the tongue twice, took the barb ring on its collar instead of a snapped spine, and waited. And the snowmane, which had lost most of what was in it into the snow, went down and stayed down. The wolf stood in the firelight a while and drank the warmth. Then it looked around, picked up my torch in its mouth, and ran off into the deep forest with it. There was a 400 caddy carcass 10 meters away, and it took the campfire. I lay in my hole with my eyes level with the snow, and I thought very clearly, everything in this world understands what that fire is worth except the humans. I hauled the thing home on my shoulders at a jog. 400 plus caddies. 2 kilometers. I want that written down somewhere. We had a password at the door, which Guolei had insisted on, and I had agreed to because it made him feel like we were a real camp. He called out a line about the rain on Redwood Ridge, and I gave him the one about the tiger coming down the mountain, and if you think that is silly, remember what had recently come knocking. Then 154 people watched me walk in with more meat than the logging team had ever brought back in one night. Where did you get that? I picked up a bargain, I said, which was precisely 100% true. Nobody believed me. I could see it happening in real time. I could see them deciding that their new leader was being modest, and that this was the sort of thing their new leader could just do now. I decided not to correct them. It has been my policy ever since, and I regret nothing. Later I flicked my brother and Song Lin on the forehead, one each. To be clear, I said, if that snowmane had still been alive, everyone in this camp put together would not have been enough to fill it up. Song Lin was more interested in the trespassing. 17 Dashi men, 400 meters onto our ground, and by his math that was a declaration of war. Let them cross, I said. When we are strong, they will stop, and nobody will have to say anything about it. 400 caddies of meat, and I had a decision to make about it, and the decision mattered more than the meat. Guolei was at 2,000 caddies. Song Lin was at 3,000. Both of them swore they could break through in a month, 20 days, if the meat held. So I took 100 for myself, gave 90 each to those 2, and put 1 caddy into the hands of every one of the 22 other teenagers in camp. 1 caddy, a taste. And then I announced a strength contest. Top 5 get 30 caddies each. The reason for that is ugly, and it is the truth. In this world, once you are past 25, your body stops converting meat into strength. Whatever you are at 25 is what you die at. So resources go to the young, always, and everybody knows it, and nobody says it out loud in front of the old. The 5 who came out on top: Kang Ji, 2000, son of a dead man; Wei Ming, 1800, son of a dead man; Wu Chen, 1700, son of the only archer Daxia ever had, also dead; Fang Hua, 1500, same story; and Chao Jin, at 1100. Chao Jin was the only one on that list who was nobody. The other 4 were logging team children who had eaten meat their whole lives. Chao Jin had never had a single bite of cold beast in his life, and he still made the cut, and when I looked at him, he flinched like I was going to take it back. This kid, I thought, might turn out to be a surprise. 10 days after we lost 72 people, I had a core team. I gave them the long fist in pieces because the whole thing is 4 styles and no one needs all 4. Small war is short strikes and defense, so that went to the 2 bulls, Songlin and Kang Zi. Grand war puts fist and foot and waist into a single point, so Wei Ming, Wu Chen, and Chao Jin got that. Scattered hands has no fixed shapes at all. It is head and elbow and knee and hip and timing, and it exists to end things, so I gave it to Fang Hua, who was quiet in a way I liked. Combined war, which is how you fight several people at once, I kept. Then I went and found out what a tree costs. Not the ice fruit trees, obviously. Not the Jinlin trees either, because Jinlin is hard as iron and cold bees sleep in them, which is a combination I was not ready for. That left Vermilion Frost, which is 90% of the rim and glows faintly red under its ice, and which runs 4 to 7 meters thick and 50 or 60 meters tall. I found a small one, 3 meters through, 20 tall. I scraped the ice crust off. I spat on my hands. I started swinging. 3 hours later, it came down. 5 units of wood. 5. And a body that could not have done a second one that night if you had put a knife to it. So there it was, the real math of my life. 1 logging level man equals 1 tree per night, absolute ceiling. The fire pile upgrade cost 200 wood and 50 iron. 200 wood is 40 trees is 40 nights, assuming nothing eats me. And the 50 iron might as well have been 50 units of moonlight. I went home and started grinding anyway, because that is what you do. 3 ice fruit trees found and stripped, 7,000 caddies of fruit, wood from 5 to 87 over 20 days. On the 24th day, Guolei and Songlin broke through on the same night, an hour apart, and Daxia Camp had 3 logging-level men in it, which was 3 more than the entire region believed we had. We went out together for the first time, and I walked them around the property like a man showing off a house. 3 ice fruit trees, 7 Jinlin trees with confirmed tenants, which we do not visit, the Vermilion Frost Belt, which is ours. At the 3rd fruit tree, there were 4 men in it picking our fruit, 5th trespass, and this one was deep, well east, nowhere near a line anyone could claim to have misread. I stepped out. Their leader came down with a saber on his hip and a friendly face, and told me to call him Uncle Ming, and mentioned that he had known my father. Our camp has had some problems, he said. I brought them out tonight to borrow a little food. Borrow. From the family of a dead man. While standing in his tree, I was still deciding how to answer that when my 14-year-old brother did it for me. Stealing is stealing, Guolei said. Why call it borrowing? I will go back right now and tell father to bring everyone over. And I watched Zhou Qi do the arithmetic. 13 logging level men, coming here angry, versus 4 of us up a tree at night. He put the fruit down. He swore on his own camp that they would never come back. They went west quickly. I gave my brother a thumbs up. Good lad. He grinned at me, absolutely delighted with himself. We couldn't beat them in a fight, so I had to bluff. That is my brother. 14 years old, working entirely without a net. I did not tell him the other half, which was that the bluff had a shelf life. It works once, maybe twice, and then somebody comes to check. Somebody was already planning to. Dashi Camp lives inside a black rock hill about 100 meters tall, up a vine on the east face, under a 5-meter board hidden in the snow. 2 levels of cavern, 30 meters deep, 300 or 400 people, a bonfire 2 meters across burning in the middle of it, children running around playing. I am telling you this because I found out later and because you should understand that they were better off than us. Considerably. They had fire whenever they wanted it. Their leader was Pan Shu, an archer with a kind face and a very fast calculator behind it, and his brother Pan Tao, also an archer, with a scar down one cheek and a temper. Zhou Qi came home and reported that he had run into old Guo's 2 sons. Pan Shu went pale. Then the 3 of them sat down and worked out the following, and I want to stress that every step of it was correct. Daxia has no meat. Daxia has never had a way to get meat, and yet old Guo's sons are walking around at logging level, which means somebody at Daxia was in the dark that night at the ice fruit tree, which means the snowman that Dashi Camp paid 3 lives for, including the man who threw his own blade to his leader on the way down, who happened to be Pan Shu's 3rd brother, got carried home by Daxia. In a few days, Pan Shu said, when we go to Redwood Ridge, I will lead the team myself. I want to see exactly what Daxia has now. So a revenge engine got switched on, aimed at me, built entirely out of true statements over a beast I did not kill, for a camp I did not rob. That is the ice abyss for you. Meanwhile, my problems were smaller and stupider. The fruit had gone from 7,000 caddies to 12,000, which is 2 months of food, and the wood from 87 to 210. But all 3 ice fruit trees were stripped bare, and nobody alive knew how long they'd take to fruit again. The meat was gone. Kang Ji and his 4 were all still short of the breakthrough. And I was nowhere near excavator, which meant iron stayed at 0, which meant 8 buildings stayed locked. So on a perfectly ordinary night, I said the sentence that shaped the next year of my life. Chuan Cheng. Tonight we are going to try hunting. Not hunt. Try hunting. There is a difference, and I said it on purpose. The method was this. Plant a small torch halfway between 2 trees that have beasts in them. Get up something tall. Wait for both of them to come for it and let them settle the argument. It is not a hunting technique. It is a desperation technique. You need 2 beasts, they have to arrive close enough together to fight, and they have to hurt each other badly enough that a human being can do the paperwork afterward. Also, it burns torches, which are the single most advanced object my camp owns, on bait. But it was that or nothing, so out we went. The adult snowmane came first. An adult is a different animal from the one I had seen. 2 meters at the shoulder, 4 meters long, over 1,000 caddies, tusks, and it tested the ground with 1 foot before it put weight anywhere, which told me it had lived a long time and had opinions about traps. It walked up to the torch and rested its chin in the fire, and its coat started to shine. I sat in a tree watching a monster get stronger on my equipment for the 2nd time, and I had a thought that went straight down my spine and stayed there for a year. If a cold beast ever finds the fire pile inside my camp is over. Not the Specter. The Specter I could at least burn. But the pile has a 100% success rate at attracting exactly the things 154 people cannot fight, and it sits in the middle of the only room we have. Before I am strong, the fire pile does not get exposed, ever. A torch burns 15 minutes. At about minute 12, the ground moved. The adult frost wolf had come in under the snow, tunneled. The barbs on its neck came up under the boar's belly and opened a wound a meter long before anybody saw a wolf at all. The boar's counter was the smartest thing I saw an animal do that year. It started plowing its tusks through the snow in wide sweeps, throwing the whole surface layer away until there was no snow left to burrow in, and the wolf had to fight above ground like a peasant. Then it was just 2 enormous animals killing each other for 20 minutes. Fight, bite, the wolf's teeth into the rear left leg down to the bone and locking there, and the boar rolling. 1,000 caddies, over and over, on top of a wolf that would not open its jaw. The wolf's nose and mouth were finished long before it let go. The boar went down. And I said quietly, in a tree, it is faking. Because I had already learned that lesson from the young one, and because there are 3 real steps to playing dead, and it was doing all 3. Stop breathing. Still the organs. And put away the living pressure that every big animal gives off, which is the part almost nothing can do. It came up under the wolf, put its spiked back into it, drove the barbs in, and twisted the whole thing end over end. The wolf got one last bite into that ruined leg and ran. Winner, the boar, crippled, limping toward my torch. 1,400 caddies of injured animal and 3 human beings. I sent Guo Lei and Song Lin up 2 separate trees and picked up my stone axe. 6,400 caddies, that was me at the time. 6,400 against 1,000 caddy beast in its prime, whose charge lands at over 10,000. I know because I caught it. I took both tusks head on with both hands, and it drove me back 5 or 6 meters and into a tree, and my arms told me things about my future. But the whole plan had never been the tusks. The plan was the tongue. It fired, and I moved, and 4.5 meters of tongue went into the trunk behind me and stuck. Then I jumped, and I brought a stone axe down on the part that was pinned. Down here, I shouted. Right hind leg, go. 1,270 caddies of meat after skinning. I have never seen people react to anything the way that camp reacted when we brought that home, before or since. And then I did the thing that mattered more than the meat. 30% to whoever hunts it, I said. 50% to the reserve unit, 20% to anyone between 15 and 22 with over 1,000 caddies of base strength, and anyone in this camp over 2,000 caddies can join the reserve. Anyone, any age, either gender. Then, because there were 70 caddies left over, and the rest gets split across all 154 of us, so everybody gets a taste tonight. Under my father, meat went to the logging team and their children. That was the law, and nobody had ever questioned it, because the logging team was the only thing standing between the camp and the dark. There was a lot of crying. Some people knelt, which I hated. What I had actually handed out was not meat. 70 caddies across 154 people is a mouthful each. What I handed out was the idea that there was a road and that anyone could stand on it. The reason people are people and not livestock is that living is not the point of living. I thought about my own last life a lot that night, lying in the dark listening to a camp that had eaten. I had been extremely angry about my body for 2 years, very focused on the unfairness of it, in a house with heating and doctors and a soft bed. And here were 154 people who had never once in their lives had a fair anything. Maybe that is why I got sent here, to do something for them. I am not saying I believe that. I am saying I thought it at 70 below with a full stomach for the first time in a month. The real wind that night was quieter than any of it. The torch trick worked, which meant Luog's camp, with its 5 excavator-class men and its coal and its iron, was no longer the only camp on Redwood Ridge that could hunt. They just did not know it yet. Pan Shu took 12 men and swept our territory for 3 straight nights, and found nothing at all, because we had stopped being findable. His men got tired of it. Zhou Qi suggested they go all the way to the Earth slope and locate Daxia's actual cave. The whole group went quiet. There is a rule out here that nobody has ever written down. Weak camps do not learn where other weak camps sleep. Because the winter is long, and when the fruit runs out and the meat runs out, people are still made of meat. Pan Shu refused. Guohan helped us once. A lesson is enough. And that is when Pan Tao pointed into the trees and said there were 13 men standing in them. 13, plus 1 at the front. Guohan and the logging team of Daxia camp. Dashi walked up swaggering, because 13 men is not enough to scare 400, and started in about the snowmane and who had paid for it. No reaction. And then my father's face smiled. Zhou Qi told me later, before he died, that the worst part was that the smile was correct. Every muscle in the right place. It just did not look like it had been put on from the inside. There was a sound like a needle drawn through the air, and 3 Dashi men dropped with a red dot between their eyes. Zhou Qi charged, and he did it deliberately, because he knew the Shu brothers were behind him with bows. 4 arrows hit. One went 10 centimeters into the right eye of the thing wearing my father. It did not slow down. It punched him once, and that was the end of Zhou Qi. Run, somebody screamed. That isn't old Guo. That's the Specter from Redwood Ridge. They ran. 2 more got taken apart on the way. 2 more died from something nobody could see, standing up, with nothing near them. Of Dashi Camp's 16-man logging team, 5 got out. And they did not run home. They ran the wrong way on purpose, away from their own hill, so they would not be followed to it. Pan Shu had lost 3 men at that ice fruit tree. Now he had lost 8 more, in about 90 seconds, to a monster wearing the face of the man who had once helped him. And behind him, a young voice said cheerfully, "Found you. Let's see where you run this time." The young man who stepped out was maybe 20, and he was wearing a full coat of brown beast velvet with a white fur collar and black boots. And I want you to understand what that meant to the people looking at him. Dashi Camp had 300 people, and fewer than 50 of them owned a torn hide skirt. The rest wore clothes made of dried leaves. This kid was wearing an outfit. He drew a silver longsword and took 2 puppet heads off before anyone had finished being surprised. Then 10 more. Then he turned and cut a Jinlin tree in half with 1 stroke, and Jinlin is the wood you need 10 hours and a team to fell. Elementary artisan ghost, he said, looking around the clearing. A wood puppet ghost specifically. And there it was, finally, standing at the edge of the light. A hunched old man in a black robe, well under 1.5 meters, with a face like something left out in the weather, a 3-inch knife in his left hand, and a spool of white thread in his right, and 2 crimson eyes. The thread was what had been killing people standing up. Nobody had seen it because nobody was supposed to. It brought 8 full-grown trees up out of the ground and set them walking, all at once, and left in the noise. 8 at a time, the young man said, and for the first time he sounded less than delighted. That is nearly intermediate. If it makes that step, there will not be a camp left anywhere near this ridge. His name was Hu Wei. The big one with the saber was Zhang Yang. And walking behind them, addressing both of them as lords and then kneeling in the snow, was leader Zhang Hao of Luoge Camp. Zhang Hao, son of Zhang Bo, earth-digging realm, the strongest human being on Redwood Ridge, on his knees in front of 2 men in nice coats. They were from Beishuo Town. I did not hear any of this until later. When I did, it took the roof off my understanding of the world. This place is called the Ice Abyss. It was named by a man they refer to only as the Great Lord, Lord Yang, and saying his name without the title is a capital offense, which tells you a lot about him and about them. There is a mountain range called Moao. On its southern foothills there are 9 towns, and each of those towns has a population over 100,000. 100,000 people in one place, while I was rationing crystal fruit for 154. So no, not everybody in this world lives in a hole, and before that, long before, there was the ancient abyss era, 12-hour days, 4 seasons, soil you could grow things in, humans on top, cold beasts as 99% food, no specters at all, settlements of millions. Nobody knows what happened to it. Nobody knows how the sun changed. That knowledge is simply gone. There are 5 kinds of Specter, and here's the thing that made me put my head in my hands. Artisan, nightmare, fierce, divine, demon, and the artisan ghosts were craftsmen, in the old world, when there was an old world. That hunched thing with the little knife used to make things for a living. Every Specter gets stronger by killing people. That is not a side effect, that is the mechanism. Beishuo Town once hunted an intermediate artisan called the Tailor Ghost. It had scissors, and the scissors cut earth-digging men into pieces. And it had a needle and thread, and it used them to sew shut all 7 openings in the head of a cold-resistant realm expert, and he suffocated inside his own face, which finally gave me the ladder I had been missing. Logging, then earth-digging, then cold-resistant, and a cold-resistant man can walk around in the daylight. Luogcamp's true strength, which everyone had been guessing at for 20 years, 5 earth-digging, 47 logging, and they turn down every merger request they get, because meat is the ceiling and people are the thing that eats meat. Zhang Hao knelt in the snow in front of 2 scouts and asked them to kill the thing. Whatever you want, he said. If we can provide it, it is negotiable. The price was not subtle. Every camp around Redwood Ridge takes their orders from now on. Zhang Hao agreed on the spot. Pan Shu agreed for Dashi. Then Zhang Hao counted up who was left. 9 camps around the ridge, minus Iron Peak, minus Shenju. 7, minus his and Dashi. 5. Leader Luo, Pan Shu said. It should be 4. And he pointed at the corpses on the ground, which were still wearing the faces of Daxia's logging team. So that was the night the entire region wrote us off. 9 camps, 3 dead, and 1 that was quietly the only camp on Redwood Ridge that was actually growing. I love that they thought we were dead. I want that on my gravestone. Chao Jin was the last of the 5 to break through, which made 8 logging-level men in Daxia, and the first thing he did after the celebrating stopped was apologize. I have been a freeloader, he said. You all risk your lives and I eat. I turned around and looked at the whole room. So besides the 8 of us, I said, everyone in this camp is a freeloader. Nobody answered, which was the answer. That resentment had been building since the day I split the first snowmane, and I had been waiting for it to say something out loud. Guo Lei and Song Lin said it. Both of them, that night, proposed we go back to the old law, 90% of meat to the hunters, 10 to everyone else, and cut the fruit ration from 2 a day to 1. I did not give an order. Orders lose that argument. What are you trying to do? I asked them. All of you, what is your goal? Survive. Get my mother enough to eat. Protect my sister. Fine, I said. Then when I killed the first snowmane, I should not have shared it with any of you. I should have sat down and eaten 400 caddies by myself. Silence. One day one of us will die, I said. It will not be dramatic. It will be a bad step on ice. And when it happens, your mother and your sister become one of those people out there. And somebody will stand up in this cave and propose that they get no meat and 1 fruit a day. I let them sit in it. Would you want me to agree? 7 grown fighters physically flinched, all at once, which is a thing I had never seen before. Then I did the boring part, which is the part that actually convinces people. 40 or 50 logging-level men can bury a snowmane just by climbing on it. More hunters means more meat. More meat means more hunters. The split is not charity, it is compound interest. Song Lin broke first, then Kong Ji, then the rest. My brother was the last one to come around, which is a thing I have never mentioned to him and never will. Then I said the part I meant. Our goal is to survive. That is true. It is not enough. I want us to live like people. We are humans. We are not something that lives in the shadows. The cold beasts are. The specters are. And sooner or later, I am going to make every one of them kneel in front of Daxia camp and shake. Everyone in that cave assumed I was making a speech. I was making a schedule. We ran the torch trick 4 more times over the next stretch. 5,000 caddies of meat, all told. And then a small thing happened that turned out to be the largest thing that had happened to me yet. The fruit trees were the problem. Stripped ones take about 2 more months. 3 harvests a year, 6,000 caddies a harvest, which is 54,000 a year, which feeds roughly 150 people. We had 154, 1 bad tree, and we starve, which also told me something about my father. To feed 239 people, he must have been quietly crossing onto Dashi's ground for years, which was the plan I had settled on, incidentally. Go borrow from Dashi's trees, in the great tradition of the neighborhood, except no Dashi man had been seen anywhere for over a month. We were walking their side of the ridge when Wu Chen screamed. He was wearing grass sandals because of course he was, and there was a cut 2 inches deep in the bottom of his foot, a logging realm foot. Those do not cut. Under the snow was a broadsword, a palm wide, 1.5 meters long, real forged iron. Under the broadsword was Zhou Qi. His skull had gone in from 1 punch. 3 more nearby, each of them with a single red dot above the eyes, and nobody had ever come back for that sword, which is what told me everything. Dashi camp had watched their logging team get taken apart, and they had run, and in more than a month, not one of them had come back for a forged blade lying in the open. Who says a cold beast did this? I said. Or people. I pulled everybody home. No logging, no hunting, until further notice. And 100 meters west of us, as we walked away, one of those corpses sat up and watched us go. I did not know that at the time. I want to be very clear that I did not know that at the time. The sword weighed 600 caddies. 10 caddies is 1 unit of iron, 60. To a man who had been staring at a 0 in that slot for 2 months. I want to explain why that number mattered, because from the outside it looks like I got excited about scrap metal. Ironware in this region is locked behind 2 doors. You need earth digging strength to pull ore out of rock, and you need coal to smelt it. So only medium camps have iron at all, and everyone else buys a single blade off Luog for a mountain of wood and then hands it down like an heirloom. My father owned half an iron axe. It cost more than I want to know, and it died with him. Wood 670, iron 60. 2 doors were now open. Wooden dummy, 100 wood and 20 iron. Or upgrade the fire pile, 200 wood and 50 iron. I had wood coming out of my ears and 1 enemy that had already been inside my house. I upgraded the fire, iron smelting furnace, level 2, 100-meter radius of warmth instead of 10. Much stronger effect on elementary specters. Much stronger attraction for cold beasts, which I noted with a certain grim affection. It could smelt ironware out of coal I did not have. Torches still dropped every 10 wood. And a new line at the bottom, which I read 3 times. Every 100 wood burned produces 1 portion of fire condensing oil, harmless to humans, ignites on contact with a specter. Next upgrade, 2,000 wood, 5,000 iron, which was a joke, so I laughed at it and moved on. The mud pit in the middle of our cave became an iron furnace 1 meter across and 2 meters tall, standing there in front of 154 people who watched it happen. That was the first miracle any of them saw with their own eyes. I did not explain it. I never explained it. And the story going around camp by the next night was that their leader was powerful, mysterious, generous, and selfless, and that they were alive because of him. Building a god is generally a bad idea. It depends on the situation. I stayed in the cave for 10 days after that and put everyone through the long fist because Dashi camp had gone silent and I did not like the shape of it. 470 wood, which is 3 months of fire without going outside, 12,000 caddies of fruit, and a very short lecture, which is the only piece of teaching in my life I am actually proud of. Every martial art on earth trains exactly 2 things, I told them. Reaction speed and explosive power. That is it. That is the whole subject. Everything else is decoration. Reaction speed means you know where the claw is going before it lifts. Explosive power means the most force you own, delivered in the least time. Your 5,000 caddies is a number for lifting rocks. In a fight you cannot deliver it. You have never delivered it. Small war will get you half of it. Practice and you get 80%, like me. Grand War gets you all of it, and at a high level it gets you past what your body technically has. The strongest part of the long fist, though, is what happens when you put a weapon in it, which is where I want to spend the next. And then the floor started shaking. Something enormous was coming, and it was coming in daylight, and it was coming at us. 3 orders, and I gave them in about 4 seconds. Kill the furnace. It is a lighthouse for cold beasts, and there is one outside. 5 men to the entrance. Everybody else deep, right to the back wall. Every log we own stacked against the mouth. While they worked, I put my eye to a finger-sized hole in the seal to see what we had. I want to describe what daylight does because I had never actually looked at it directly. There was a bar of sunlight coming through the hole, and the dust hanging in it turned into snowflakes. Not settled. Turned. In 3 or 4 breaths. In mid-air. I put my palm into the light. It went blue. Everything below my wrist stopped reporting in, and a numbness started climbing my arm like something walking up it. I pulled it back. Even at earth-digging realm, I do not think a man walks around out there. And my eye burned for an hour afterward from looking through a hole for 4 seconds. Outside was the goat. That is the technical term I use. 6 horns, 4 legs, 5 or 6 meters long, over 2 meters at the shoulder, and it was going through the tree line like the tree line was a rumor. It was not hunting. Something had spooked it, and it had picked a direction, and the direction had our hillside in it. It slowed down about 80 meters out. Everybody exhaled. I put my ear to the floor. Scatter, I shouted. Both sides, now. 6 horns came through the entrance and turned 470 wood into splinters, and then the sunlight and the killing cold came in on top of us, and 8 men got frosted where they stood in a second and a half. I got both hands on the horns. You cannot stop a 5-ton animal. You can steer one. It pushed me back 20-30 meters with my heels plowing, and I turned it, and it went into the left wall instead of into the 70 children behind me. Stone axe on the skull. The horn took it. The axe exploded. Guo threw me a second one. 7 men got ropes on it from both sides and nearly tipped it over. I was at 9,700 by then, and with Grand War through a weapon I can put out over 10,000, and I came up under the jaw with everything I had. The second axe exploded too. Its jaw was as hard as its horns. It got angry. It snapped every rope at once. And then it did not come for me. It went for Chao Jin, because Chao Jin had pulled the hardest. He had jammed himself against a rock and let the rope take the skin off his hands rather than give a centimeter, and the animal had noticed. I got in front of it bare-handed, and it threw me into the ceiling. Every finger nearly came off at the root, and both palms opened up on the horns. "Do not touch the horns," I shouted from the floor, helpfully. Chao Jin had a horn coming at his waist, so he grabbed the bristles on its back, half a meter long, and vaulted onto it. He went over the horn on the way, and it went through his shoulder, and he tore himself off it. Then he sat up there and hit that hide a dozen times with an axe that could not cut it, red down half his body, because getting off meant dying. And then, for no reason anyone could see, the animal screamed. Chao Jin had pushed the bristles apart and found an eye. Palm-sized, pure gold pupil, on its back, under the hair, wide open and looking at him without blinking. He shouted the weak point and swung. I yelled, "Do not do anything rash," and I was already too late. Here is a rule about this world that I have never seen written down, and that everybody pays for once. Nothing evolves a weak point for no reason. A weak point usually means something worse is on the other side of it. The pupil flashed. Chao Jin shut his left eye and kept his right one open to aim, because he is exactly that stubborn, and kept swinging, and something came out of that eye and took his right eye out of his skull. He was still conscious on the way down. He was conscious enough to warn us. "Leader, do not look at the eye on its back." So I climbed up, threw him down to be caught, and did the rest of it blind. I found the eye with my hand. I never once looked at it. 6 of them dropped their useless axes and each took a limb. Wei Ming and Wu Chen on the right rear, Kang Ji and Fang Hua on the left rear, Song Lin and my brother on the forelegs. The thing dragged all 6 of them around a cave the size of a house and used the walls on them, and every one of those 6 was bringing up red, and not one of them let go. It figured out where I was and started ramming its back into the stone to scrape me off. Half a minute of that. Then it panted. I got the little iron dagger out, 5 inches, and put it and most of my forearm into the golden eye. It went down warm. Afterward, sitting on the floor of a wrecked cave, Song Lin said the thing that I remember better than the fight. When I was holding that back leg, I thought I was going to get stamped flat about 6 times, but I could see the rest of you still holding on, so. That is the whole story of Daxia Camp in one sentence, and a boy who could barely write said it by accident. Everybody was blue. 10 minutes of open entrance had nearly finished the civilians on its own. So I started hauling wood to seal us back up, and a middle-aged man came over and offered to carry it for me. Then he hit me in the head. It moved the strongest man in camp about 10 meters. "I recognize him," somebody said. "Isn't that Johan?" And the voice came out like a plane running over dry wood. "You actually guarded against me, little thing. Cautious, aren't you?" I got up and I laughed at it, and I meant it. "I was wondering why a cold beast suddenly picked this hillside at this hour," I said. "You drove it here. You still will not show your own face, so you sent an animal to do it. What a waste of your talents." It told me that my 6 best men were finished and my 100 lives were his. "Do not get excited," I said. "Look at your hand." The furnace had produced exactly 1 portion of fire-condensing oil in the days it had been running. I had put it on my own skin before the fight, on a hunch, because I had asked myself why a spooked animal picks a hillside. It burned, screaming, all the way down. "I will be back. None of you will escape." Then we counted, and the real Johan was not in the cave. It had killed a man that morning and worn him into my house and offered to carry my wood. And here is the thing I could not stop turning over. Johan was an ordinary man, no cultivation at all, and the punch it threw had more behind it than Logging Realm. It does not just copy you, it upgrades you, and it can run several of you at the same time. If that thing is not killed early, it is going to eat this entire region. Cao Jin made the joke first, which is why I love him. "Leader," he said, with a bandage where an eye used to be. "We reeled in a big one this time." Everyone laughed. I did not, because I was doing the sum in my head where a one-eyed man cannot judge distance, cannot fight, and spends the rest of his life guarding a door while his friends go out. Wu Chen fixed it with 1 sentence. "My father was the only archer this camp ever had," he said. "You know what he did every single time he took a shot? Closed one eye." Chao Jin's face. "A blind right eye," Wu Chen said, "is an archer's eye." Then he ruined it slightly. "It is a shame we do not have any bows." "We do not have them now," I said. "We will. Write that one down." I did. Later, when everyone was asleep, I went to the stakes and stacked 2 5,000 caddy posts and lifted them, over 10,000, earth-digging realm. And I worked out why, standing there in the dark. The meat had stopped doing anything for me weeks earlier. I had been eating and training and going nowhere. It took a 5-ton animal with a hidden eye trying to scrape me off a wall. Some walls only come down in a fight. Earth digging means I can dig. Coal, iron, silver, gold. 8 locked doors, and I had just been handed the keyring. 1,700 caddies of meat. 1 entire hide, which became 5 fur skirts. Reserve unit up to 31. And 500 meters east of us, sitting in the outermost tree, a hunched thing in a black robe was holding a ball of white thread. One end of that thread ran invisibly all the way to our cave, to Johan. The fire went up the thread. It could not put it out. So it took its little knife and cut off its own right hand at the wrist, and felt nothing at all except relief, and watched the hand turn to ash before it reached the ground. Then it looked east, at us. Wait for me. You will not escape. Your lives are all mine. While I was learning to dig, the rest of Redwood Ridge was learning what an alliance costs. The method Beishuo Town brought to the problem was elegant in the way that things are elegant when somebody else pays for them. Each of 6 camps supplies 3 logging realm men. Those men go out into the deep forest. They are the bait. 4 hunts, 7 dead, then 9, then 7, then 6. 29 logging realm men. Every one of them the best thing his camp had, and the wood puppet ghost walked away from all 4. Its trick was simple, and it never stopped working. It kills one of your men out in the dark, and then it wears him, and it walks back to the group. A lot of those 29 died with their mouths open in surprise, standing next to a friend. Luoge lost 7. Dachuan 6, Chenye 5, Wangzhou 4, Lushang 4, and Dashi Camp, which had already been carved down to 5, was now the 2 Shu brothers and nothing else. The leaders started refusing. Zhao Kai, Liu Peng, Fang Jun, Gao Li, Pan Shu, all of them, all at once. Their camps were running out of food while their strongest men were being fed into a hole in the woods. And Zhang Yong lost his temper in front of everybody. We are risking everything to help you trash, he said, and the second we leave, all of you put together will not be a match for it. Hu Wei cleaned it up, and I want to be fair to him, because his version of the argument was actually good. An intermediate Specter kills a cold-resistant expert without warning. It treats earth-digging men the way you treat insects on a road. If this one steps up, every large camp in the region becomes its pantry. If it reaches advanced, Beishuo Town itself pays a bill. Do you really think, he said, the 2 of us stayed here to save your cheap lives? And bait is not their invention. Bait is the only method humanity has, everywhere. It is the accumulated wisdom of the entire ice abyss. 29 lives sounds like a lot to you, he told a room full of men who had buried their friends. Wait until it is 2,900. Zhang Yong's father volunteered as bait once and did not come back. Zhang Yong's face when that came up had nothing on it but pride. 1 more attempt tomorrow, they said, and then we leave and bring reinforcements. And afterward, alone, Zhang Yang suggested actually going to get those reinforcements, and Hu Wei said no. If we call people in, he said, this Specter stops being ours. There it is. 29 men, 4 hunts, and a very good speech about the fate of humanity, and underneath it, 2 young men who did not want to split the reward. Luoge Camp, when they finally showed the small camp leaders around it, nearly broke them. It sits in a valley between 2 mountains that go up 2,000 or 3,000 meters and lean together overhead, so no sunlight has ever touched the floor of it. Black ice crystals on the walls that are older than anybody's grandfather, and near the ground those crystals are wet because the coal heat has been melting them for 20 years. In the last 20 years, Zhang Hao said, not one person here has frozen to death. You could watch it land on every leader in the room, each of whom had buried children in the cold that same winter. 50-meter log pulls out of a rockfall and opens a 30-meter tunnel. Inside, 5 houses of Jinlin wood, 50 meters on a side, a few hundred people each. Coal fireplace is 5 meters wide with pipes to take the smoke out. Rooms with walls, a hall with chairs made of animal skin, which the small camp leaders stared at the way you would stare at a spaceship. Zhang Yong looked around and said rustic bumpkins, and then said the thing that mattered most in the whole exchange without noticing he had said it. Even a slightly better medium camp knows how to lay coal stones to soften the ground and transplant crops. You people only use it to keep warm. Zhang Hao's face when he heard the word crops. Then Zhang Yang killed it. 5 earth-digging men could not mine that much coal in 10 years, and beside the last house there was a small hut, 10 meters, 1 room. That, Zhang Hao said, is my father's residence. 20 years ago, there were 16 small camps around this ridge, and Zhang Bo became the first earth-digging expert any of them had ever produced, and therefore the first man who could hunt. Then he did the thing nobody does. 2 dying camps came to him, 300 mouths and 6 logging men, and everybody told him it was suicide, and he took them in. Luoge did not sink. It went up like a rocket. A dozen logging men became 30. 30 found coal. Coal made iron. Iron made hunters. 5 camps absorbed 1,000 people, and everyone on the ridge assumed that within a decade, Zhang Bo would simply own the region. 15 years ago, he met the Specter. And in the 15 years since, his son has absorbed 2 tiny camps and spent the rest of his time drawing the territory lines that keep the 8 remaining camps politely apart, which is generosity and a wall at the same time, and I do not think Zhang Hao has ever admitted to himself which one it mostly is. Here is what actually happened to Zhang Bo, and it is the worst story I know. His hunting team was 20 men. It took them one at a time, wearing their faces, over days. At the end, he was in a cave with his left arm gone at the shoulder, bleeding out, and his youngest son Jiang Jun found him and brought the news that the others were dead. And Zhang Bo, going gray, looked at his son's arm. He had watched that arm get opened up 2 days earlier. He had watched it happen. There was no mark on it. He closed his eyes. "So, I have been noticed," said a voice like a plane on dry wood. "You 21 took a lot of effort out of me. You 2 nearly got away." It put the little knife into what was left of his shoulder and started widening it, unhurried, watching his face the whole time. And Zhang Bo broke. Every man has a number, and it found his. "I can work for you," he said. "I can bring you people." The knife stopped. The old thing came out of the dark, took half a meter of wood, carved an arm out of it, and sewed it onto him with the white thread. And the wood took his color, so that you could not tell, so that it looked like it had never been off. 100 people, 10 days, and it kept the puppet son as a supervisor. Zhang Bo walked out of that cave with a wooden arm and a son who was not his son, and the moment he saw his eldest boy coming through the trees with a search party, he turned around and destroyed the puppet Jiang Jun with one punch, and then tore his own arm off at the join. Because he had worked out somewhere on that walk that paying once means paying forever, and that 100 people in 10 days becomes 220, and that eventually there is nobody left on the ridge to hand over. That is what broke Zhang Bo, not the Specter. Not madness from cultivation, which is the story everybody tells. He broke because he punched his son's body to pieces with his own hand, and it had his son's face on it while he did it. 15 years in a 10-meter hut, never outside, speaks to nobody. And when nobody is around, he talks to something under the bed that has his son's voice and keeps asking him why. He giggles at the wall sometimes. People hear it. "You will not find me. The wood is all gone off me now. And on the night I am telling you about, there were 2 voices in that hut. Cannot find you? You have owed me for a life for 15 years. It is time to settle." Pan Shu came home the next night with a bag of crystal fruit that Jiang Hao had given him out of pity, which is its own kind of insult, and he stopped at his own ice fruit tree on the way. There were 5 men in it, picking his fruit. 5 men in their 20s, all of them logging realm. That is not a thing that exists. Luoge could not field 5 logging men that young. Nobody could. So he arrived at the only conclusion available to a sane man on Redwood Ridge, which was Specters, and started backing away. Pan Tao said, "Those 5 are from Daxia Camp," which confirmed it for him completely, because Daxia Camp was dead, so those were Daxia's corpses out for a walk. Then 10 of us stepped out of the trees around them. You could see the whole thing arrive on Pan Shu's face. Surrounded, at night, by the animated dead of a camp he had personally written off, and his brother said, "Leader Xia, coming over to pick crystal fruit is one thing. Are you planning to kill us as well?" I came down out of a tree in front of them. The snow did not take my weight, which is a thing that starts happening at earth digging, and which I confess I enjoyed. "That is right," I said. Guoji, current leader of Daxia. Relief. Then confusion. Then he looked past me at the boys. "All of you," he said. "All of you are logging realm?" They were extremely cool about it. They were not cool about it at all. Pan Shu left fast, and he did not say one single word about the fact that we were standing in his tree eating his food, which is what made me curious. Because our position had changed a lot. 10 logging realm men, 1 earth digging, 3 new breakthroughs including Cao Shan, who is Cao Jin's little brother, and who I am fairly sure trained himself half to death out of pure fury about his brother's eye. Cao Jin's take on that. If I had known one right eye buys 3 logging men, I would have given the thing the left one too. I had spent half a month walking Redwood Ridge alone looking for coal and iron, because I could dig and nobody else could, which meant both the finding and the digging were mine. I had found precisely nothing. I let Pan Shu walk. "We have taken enough of Dashi's fruit," I said. "Call it even." But Kang Ji, who is older and sharper than the rest, said the thing that had been bothering him. A leader does not personally pick fruit, and that bag of his was not filled at this tree. And then my brother, 14 years old, doing it again. How did Pan Tao know your face? Nobody from Dashi camp had ever seen me, not once. Zhou had met me in the dark for 2 minutes, and Zhou was under the snow. Everything came together at once. The abandoned broadsword, the month of silence, the northern fruit, Pan Shu's expressions, which had been the expressions of a man who thought he was already dead. Something is wrong. Follow them. It is Pan Tao. I reconstructed the rest of it later, and I got it exactly right, which is a thing I would rather have been wrong about. Pan Shu went north for help and got a bag of fruit instead. He thought Daxia was dead because he had met a fake Guo Han, and his brother had been acting normal, too normal, perfectly normal, and he had volunteered my name to keep the conversation moving instead of letting it stall. The real Pantao had been dead for days. We chased them and lost them in the dark because we did not know where their hill was, which was the whole point of nobody knowing where anybody's hill is. At Ta Mountain, Pan Shu checked the board over the entrance for the marks that say the camp is safe. He found them. He put his hand on the board and felt that it was warm. He relaxed. He did not see the smile behind him. Inside, people came up to greet them and asked where the other three were, and mentioned that the fruit had run out. Then a white thread went through Pan Shu's shoulder blade and out again, and then it went through the rest of him, and his body stopped taking instructions. "Thank you for bringing me here," said the thing wearing his brother. "Otherwise, where would I have found this many people?" And lying on the floor, unable to move, Pan Shu worked out when it had happened, the fourth hunt. The chase after Zhou Wen and Chen Hao that had looked like a tragedy and had been a performance, which meant every plan that had ever been discussed in Luoge Camp's hall had been heard by the thing they were planning against. He got out one shout, "Run! Everyone run!" And then the threads went through his lips and sewed them together, and he lay there, awake, and watched. It killed 100 people with its hands and a stone axe. It took its time. He watched all of it, including his wife. I am not going to describe what 100 means in a room that size, and I am not going to describe what it did to any of them. I am going to tell you what I did about it, which is the only part of this that is mine to tell. We could not find the door. 4 faces of a rock hill and no entrance on any of them. Song Lin, who is very literal, said, "Can they fly or something?" So I looked up. Vine. Board. Screams coming out of a hole in the top of a mountain. I took out the last of the fire-condensing oil and coated all 9 stone axes and my dagger with it. Then I kept 1 marble-sized piece back for myself. That turned out to be the most important decision of my life so far, and I did not know it yet. 3 come down with me, the rest hold this hole. Whatever comes up out of it, hit it with the axe. I do not care who it looks like. The lower level of Dashi camp had 100 people in it who were not going to be people again. Pan Shu was on the floor making a sound I have not managed to forget, with white thread coming out of him in 6 places, and he could not point with his hands, so he pointed with his eyes. The thing wearing his brother turned around with something in its hand and threw it away like a man putting down a cup. "It is you again," it said. "You little wretch, you keep ruining my fun." I did not answer it, because there was a man near me who had been cut through at the waist and was still trying to move, and I had just understood that the people who died instantly had done very well for themselves. "Pray I never catch you," I said, "because when I do, I am going to hold you over a torch, day and night, until there is ash." The dagger threw sparks when it touched the threads, which told me the threads were the same stuff it was, which meant I could stop dodging them. 10,000 caddies plus a weapon plus Grand War gives me about 20% over my number. 1 cut took both arms and the head. The body stood there for 4 or 5 breaths before the oil found the neck. There was no triumph in that room. I want to be clear about it. Nobody cheered. Somebody was asking, quite politely, whether anyone had seen her son's head. A man was explaining to no one that his neck was broken. Pan Shu crawled to what was left of his wife. His 2 children, 15 and 16, were begging him to fix her. He looked at his brother's body on the floor and could not produce a single word. I gave him the only thing that was any use. "Leader Shi, time is short. That thing can come back whenever it likes, and there are still people alive under this mountain. If you do not get up right now, this happens again." He snapped back into himself like a man surfacing. 132 dead, 187 alive. He did not ask me. He was too proud and too broken, and he just looked at me, and I let the silence run longer than I should have, and I watched the hope go out of him. "Come back to Daxia with us," I said. "We can discuss the rest later." Guolei ran the evacuation. He roped the children together first, without being told, which is a thing I noticed and filed away. I offered to carry Pan Shu on my back. He would not let me. Instead, he called me leader, out loud, in front of his own people, which was a small clean piece of politics designed to make me responsible for him. I saw it. I let it stand. He was owed that. For the record, Daxia Camp could not feed 187 more mouths. I did it anyway. I have never been able to explain that decision in a way that survives arithmetic. On the walk home, Pan Shu gave me the world. 4 months I had been alive here, and everything I have already told you about the Ice Abyss and the Ancient Abyss era and the 9 towns and the 5 kinds of Specter, I got in one conversation from a crippled man being carried by his own teenagers, and he gave me a description of the enemy from someone who had been in the room with it, an old man, crimson eyes, nothing human behind them, a small knife in the left hand and a ball of transparent thread in the right, both of them weapons. Then we did the arithmetic at the same time, and I watched his face go the color of the snow. Pantao got swapped during the 4th bait hunt, and after the 4th bait hunt, Pantao walked into Luoge camp and stood in the Great Hall while the leaders of 6 camps planned the 5th one. It is over, he said, staring north. Luoge is finished. Luoge camp has over 1,000 people in it, and 90% of every fighting man in the region was out in the deep forest being bait. I want to tell you, I thought about it for a while. I did not. Then I have to go. Pan Shu tried to talk me out of it, and he had good arguments, and every one of them was about what Daxia gained. Not go, I said, and sit here while 1,000 people are taken apart? It was not charity. That thing gets stronger with every person it kills, and it already knew my face and hated it. Every hour Luoge burns, my problem grows. But it was also not charity, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. I sent the 3 newest logging men home with the refugees and took 6. And Pan Shu, watching a group of teenagers get visibly excited about running toward the worst thing in the world, gave me the location. Then he gave me 2 recurve bows and 2 quivers. These are of no use to me now. I did not keep my face straight even a little bit. Cao Jin, bows. I found the bait party deep in the inner ridge, and I found an argument. 2 hours, no Specter, which by itself proved something ugly. The previous 4 times it had come because it wanted to. It had been farming them. Jiemu said it out loud. He is Zhao Kai's son, 24, logging realm, and his father gave up his own cultivation years ago so that the meat could go to the boy. Zhang Yang hit him, then hit him again and kicked him 5 meters and called Zhao Kai an ant. All 4 small camps quit on the spot. That is when I came down out of a tree. Guojie, Daxia camp. Your Specter is inside Luoge. Nobody believed me. Zhang Yang, who had just publicly beaten a man for saying almost exactly that, called me a babbling fool. My 6 went off like dogs. Where did you come from, you fool? Do not shout at our leader. You are dressed like a person and your mouth is full of filth. I shut them up, and not because they were wrong. Leader Luo, I said, you do not have to believe me. But you should probably prioritize the 1,000-odd people in your camp over your opinion of my face. He ran. All 4 quitting leaders ran after him, and not one of them was following Hu Wei. Behind me, Hu Wei said quietly to Zhang Yang, do not underestimate that Guojie. His strength is probably not much below yours. And Zhang Yang said, he is 10,000 jin at best, which is a fair estimate and also the exact reason people like Zhang Yang keep losing to people like me. Running north, Zhang Hao started giving me sideways looks, and I knew exactly what he was thinking, because it was the correct thing to think. No small camp on this ridge can feed a teenager up to earth digging, therefore this teenager is not a teenager. I respected the caution. I got in front of it before it became a problem. At the valley, the rockfall looked untouched. Zhang Hao exhaled for the first time in an hour. 5 earth-digging men pulled the 50-meter log. 6 arms were hanging off the inner end of it. I did not go in. I gave Guo Lei the fire-condensing oil. Paint the outside of this entrance with it. All of it. Then take what is left and stand right here. Anyone who comes out, you throw it in their face. Anyone? Anyone. Then I went in. 4 of the 5 houses had been smashed flat from the outside. The 5th was standing. I will not describe the ground. I will say that there was not one healthy living person anywhere in that valley, and that the sound in the air was not screaming. Zhang Hao howled, and it went off the walls of the whole valley and came back. I have heard that exact sound twice now, and both times it was a man who had just understood the size of a number. I did not let him have the moment. 500 or 600 bodies, I said. This camp holds 1,300. Where are the rest of them? He stopped. Which means there are survivors, which also means that thing may not have left. 5 of us went into the standing house. Him, 3 of his earth-digging men, me. I refused to take more. Inside there was a fire going. Broken chairs, scattered coal, signs of a struggle. No bodies, no sound at all. 20 rooms, 10 down each side. 5 doors standing open and normal. 15 shut. 15 rooms. 30 or 40 people to a room. That is 500 or 600 people. Do not go over there, I said. Run. A blade came out of the first door at Tao Cheng's back, and Wenjia shot it out of the air, which I still think about. And then a doorway that had no door in it grew one, and it slammed in my face. It plays with wood, somebody said, in the voice of a man who has just realized where he is standing. Zhang Hao put half a meter of Jinlin open with one cut. The house shook, and the wound closed. The wood crawled inward and healed itself. Through the last of the gap I could see outside, where the 4 flattened houses were standing back up. Then all 15 doors opened at once. 500 or 600 people came out. Some of them ran, most of them crawled, and every single one of them was calling a family member by name. Father, my neck is going to break. Bai He, is that you? My eyes are gone and my legs are gone. Go and check on our son. He is still alive. It had kept them silent behind 15 doors for hours. Real ones and copies, mixed together. And the terrible part, the part that took me a moment to work out, was that the real ones did not know which of them was which either. I put oil on 4 men's hands and weapons. Jiang Hao got his eldest son by the arms, Jiang Guang. Not a scratch on him, whole, healthy, upright, in a room where nobody was whole. His son put a dagger to his throat. The oil took him, and Jiang Hao stood there and watched it happen. And I want to tell you, there was relief in his face somewhere. There was not. Then a woman came at me with an iron short sword and cut my stone axe in half. She fought at earth-digging realm. Every woman in every camp on this ridge is an ordinary person, every single one, which meant the copies were not logging tier anymore. I had 2 fists of oil left in the world. The 4 of them burned through the first one, saving maybe 100 people. Jiang Hao asked for the other one, and I said no, and I said the true reason out loud, because he deserved the true reason. If I give you this, can we tell apart the 400 behind us? And that thing has not even shown up yet. We burned a hole in the wall 5 meters wide, and we left 300 or 400 people inside it. I made that call, not him, me. Because there were 20-odd logging men outside that house, and 6 of them were mine, and a rescue you cannot finish is just a longer way of losing everybody. Outside, the 4 wooden houses had put themselves together, 100 meters tall, tiny torso, legs like pillars, arms 40 or 50 meters long, ending in fists 10 meters across with no fingers on them, in a valley 300 or 400 meters wide. It was fighting 4 separate battles at once, which is the thing I want you to picture. Right fist hammering a crack in the rock where my 6 boys were pinned. Left arm holding down every logging man Luoga had left, both feet stamping on the 4 small camps, and it had already punched the mountainside and sealed the entrance behind us. 7 of those 4 camps, 16 men, were dead by the time I got out there. I put a meter-long crack in one leg, and under the wood there was a mat of white threads packed solid. Then the giant ignored me completely and went back to hammering the crack in the rock with my brother's friends in it. I climbed the arm. The thinnest point on that arm was still 2 or 3 meters through, and I took it off with the last of 1 oil piece and everything I had. The fist came down dead. The rock cracked open. 6 boys crawled out of it, and Kang Zi and Song Lin were bringing up red, and all 6 of them were alive. Jaemu shoved his own father out from under a descending foot. I got under it, cut the foot with the oiled blade, and the giant shed the burning part like a man kicking off a boot. Jaemu lived. Zhao Kai bowed to me right there and told me that if I ever had orders, he would not refuse them even if it killed him. And I told him the truth, which I have never once regretted. There may not be a future, and I did not come here to save your son. I came here to take the leg off. The rescue was a byproduct. I said so out loud to a man who was crying. If you are going to build a reputation, build it out of things that are true. It holds weight better. Then I threw my last oil to Jiang Hao and told him to take the other arm, and he did, and then he ran up the stump and put the whole thing into the giant's face, which is when the real one arrived. It came down from where the 2 mountains cross overhead, 1,000 meters up, with Hu Wei and Zhang Yong falling on either side of it, both of them already hurt. An old man. White hair everywhere, filthy hides. A small knife in the left hand and a ball of white thread in the right, and Jiang Hao said, "Father, you," because it was wearing Jiang Bo. 15 years of a man sitting in a hut talking to something under the bed, and it had finally come to collect. "The work I killed so many people to finish," it said, "and you dared to break it." Hu Wei, who I had been assuming was hiding on the mountaintop waiting to steal the kill, said the sentence that reset the whole night. "Even if the 2 of us join forces, we might not take it down. All 5 of you have to help." He had been up there fighting it the entire time. I was wrong about him. I am putting that on the record because I was very confidently wrong about him for about 2 hours. My oil was gone, all of it. Zhang Yong counted us, 7, and then, in the middle of the fight, he turned around and shouted at me, "You coward, why are you not helping?" at a man who was already 3 steps into a charge. There is a particular kind of person who will take a swing at your reputation while a monster is actively trying to kill both of you. I have met 2 of them, and they were both from a nice town. Everybody on that ridge fights with a broadsword. It is simple to forge, and it forgives you, and it rewards nerve. And out here, nerve is most of what anyone has. Hu Wei had a silver longsword made of something in the same family as the fire-condensing oil, and it was the only blade in that valley that threw sparks off the white threads and cut them. The ghost put up a web of thread and stopped 5 broadswords at once. I came down 2-handed and pushed the whole web back into its own face, which pinned it, which gave the others their opening. Wenjia put 3 arrows into its head in one breath, and then it finally raised the little knife, 3 inches long. It had never used it once. It cut Jiang Hao's broadsword in half, then Tao Cheng's. Then it went through Zhang Yong's 100-forged saber, the one he had just finished telling everyone was in a different class from ours, and left him holding 2 pieces of it. Then it broke out. It went left, through Jiang Hao's side. I was standing on the right. I was the closest man to it, and it went the long way around. That is when I learned the thing I did not tell anybody for a long time. It was afraid of me. Hu Wei's sword finally went in under its right arm, and there was no blood. There was a sound like water hitting a hot stone, and then thick black smoke. Both of the town boys lit up like children at that smoke, which told me something else. I filed away. I looked into the wound. Get back, I said. There is something inside it. The wound came apart, and the inside of that specter was nothing but white thread, thousands of them, and they came out over our heads and did not touch a single one of us. They went into the ground, into every body and every piece of body scattered across that valley floor. 700 or 800 of them. It had put them there on purpose, days ago. The threads pulled all of it back in through the hole under its arm, and it started growing. 2 meters, 3, 5, 10, 20, wrapped in black mist. And then it started to talk in their voices. Not one voice. All of them. Men, women, old people, children, all of them resentful, all of them talking at once. Leader, why did you not save me? Father, you should not have killed me. Why am I the only one who died? All of you should die too. Every person we had pulled out of that house went down holding their heads. Every logging man in the valley buckled. My own thinking started to go soft at the edges, and that had never happened to me before. Hu Wei was openly panicking, which is how I knew how bad it was. Spirit absorption and soul gathering. It is evolving. If it reaches intermediate, every one of us dies in this valley. And I had the one thing nobody else in this world had. Song Lin, every torch you are carrying. Throw them here, now. 6 torches. 1 per boy. I put 1 in Jiang Hao's hand, 1 in Tao Cheng's, 1 in Wen Jia's. And then I put 1 in Hu Wei's hand and 1 in Zhang Yong's, and both of them looked at me like I had handed them a live animal. The thing had its eyes shut for the transformation, which meant no threads in the way, which meant somebody got a free run at it. I went first. 1/2 meter of wound in the leg, and the inside of that leg was full of the people from this valley, and some of the faces were still faces. I put the burning torch into it, black smoke and a scream that took the snow off the walls. It works, somebody shouted. And I noticed that the 2 men from the town of 100,000 people suddenly started running much faster. 6 torches into 1 wound made a fire 3 or 4 meters high and a column of black smoke that smelled like something rotten being scrubbed clean. And it climbed 5 meters up a 20-meter body and stopped. Torches are not oil. Torches are 1/10 of oil. Jiang Hao asked me if I had any more, and I told him if I had any left, I would not have been saving it for a rainy day. So Hu Wei cleared everyone off, ran up the body to the shoulder through threads coming out of all 5 openings in its face, and drove the silver sword at its closed left eye. He missed by about an inch. The eyes opened. The roar moved the valley floor. The advancement was broken. We stopped it. That is real, and I am proud of it. It also did not matter, because the 3-inch knife in its left hand was now a black broadsword 10 meters long, wrapped in black energy. 1 lazy swing put Hu Wei 100 meters across the valley and 5 meters into the mountain. I did the math in about 1.5 seconds, and then I said the least popular sentence of my career. Run! Zhang Yong screamed that I was a coward who feared death. The ghost laughed and swung at him specifically, which I enjoyed. I sent the 5 of them right, and I went left, alone. The blade followed me. Of course it followed me. It had been afraid of me all night. The dust went up 100 meters. When it cleared, there was a trench 7 or 8 meters deep and 30 meters long where I had been standing, and the edge of that strike had gone on and split the rockfall, sealing the valley mouth. Leader! Leader! Everyone in that valley thought I was dead. Jiang Hao sighed and said it was a shame that such a talented person still could not master his fear of death. Zhang Yong smiled. Hu Wei shook his head, disappointed in me. And the ghost shouldered its 10-meter blade, walked over, leaned down over the trench, and blew, to move my skin coat off my body so it could look at my face. Under the coat there was a pool of red and no guoji at all. I had gone into the dust cloud, gotten onto the blade, and ridden it up, holding onto the edge of a moving sword with both hands the entire way. I came out of a clod of falling dirt at its right shoulder with a fist-sized block of black oil already in front of me, and I put the block and the whole of that great blade through the side of its head to the hilt. The oil went through the inside of the skull. The threads packed in there caught all at once. It burned from the inside out. You little wretch, you tricked me. Here is the whole plan, since it worked. 1. From the second I entered that valley, I assumed it was watching me and listening to me. 2. The room full of mixed real and fake people was not a room. It was a bill. It existed to make me spend my oil. 3. So I lied. I was carrying 4 pieces. I gave 1 to Guo Lei at the door, and then I told Jiang Hao out loud in a wooden house that I had 2. 4. A thing that will face 7 men at once but ran the long way around one of them is not afraid of swordsmen. It was afraid of the oil. 5. It broke out through Zhang Hao's side instead of mine, which told me it still was not certain, which told me the lie was holding. 6. So I used a mere torch on its leg. Cheap, weak, reassuring. 7. And the head is the weak point on every single one of its puppets, because that is where the threads bunch, which I learned when Jiang Hao finished the giant by putting oil into its face. My own bill for the night was a cut to the bone across the shoulder from the shockwave of that blade, 1 inch closer to the neck, and none of the rest of this happens. Hu Wei and Zhang Yang abandoned every scrap of caution and rushed the burning ghost because they wanted something off it. I sat down in the snow and did not move. Lucky for those two. Hu Wei stabbed the burning skull until there was nothing in it worth the name, and the thing said, through a mouth that was mostly gone, "Even if I die, you will not have it easy. Die with me." A 20-meter body packed solid with everyone Luoga camp had lost came apart at once, and the pieces of it went out fast enough to kill, and it painted the valley walls, and it threw logging realm men 10 meters, and it finished off a number of people who had been too slow to get clear. Hu Wei and Zhang Yang went through the remains on their hands and knees and came up with nothing at all. Self-destruct? A Specter can self-destruct? Neither of them had ever heard of it, and they were from Beisho Town, where they collect this sort of information professionally. That single fact is the only reason anybody left that valley alive, because if it is not a thing Specters do, then it was not a thing that happened. It was a thing that was staged. "Nobody leaves," I shouted. "Nobody leaves this valley." The blast had just killed a lot of fresh ordinary people, and wearing a fresh body takes it about 4 seconds. 100 and some survivors were jammed into a 30-meter passage, and somebody at the back said, "Why is there someone walking around outside?" Now, I want to set this up properly, because this is my favorite thing that has ever happened. My brother had been outside all night. He had been given one job by his older brother and told to stand there and do it, and nothing else. He had heard the fighting, and the giant, and the screaming, and the explosion, and he had talked himself out of running in 3 separate times, which he admitted to me later. And he had painted the outside of that exit with fire-condensing oil, all of it, exactly as ordered. The figure that came sprinting out of the passage went up from the feet, and Guolei buried a stone axe in its skull. "Stop, you little wretch!" Zhang Yang roared from inside. My brother did not stop, partly because my order had been anyone, mostly I suspect because he had never liked Zhang Yang. Black energy came pouring out of that wound, and 3 points of gold light went out of it and into my brother's forehead. He grabbed his head, and Zhang Yang kicked him 5 or 6 meters and knocked him unconscious. I threw my blade at Zhang Yang and picked my brother up off the ground. He batted it out of the air and looked at me with intent to kill, and behind him, Hu Wei was looking at my unconscious 16-year-old brother with eyes like a man pricing livestock. "It seems," I said, "that the things on that Specter do not have much affinity with either of you." Hu Wei did not bother pretending to ask. "Hand him over. I am taking him back to Beisho Town." "No. If you will not let me take him, I will have to kill him." Zhang Yang volunteered, and then Zhang Hao stepped in between us. Zhang Hao, who had that day lost his father, his wife, and his eldest son, and who was holding his son's dagger in his hand while he said it. "That treasure already has an owner. Why must you two insist? If you intend to rely on your strength to bully people, I cannot agree." Then Liu Peng stepped up, then Zhao Kai, whose son was alive because of a leg I had cut for entirely selfish reasons. "My Dachuan camp has received great kindness from Guojie." Then Fang Jun, then Gao Li, and then the 100-odd ordinary people I had pulled out of that wooden house physically walked over and stood in front of me. People with one arm, people being carried. In that house it was Guojie who got me out. I do not agree either. Nearly 200 people, 4 earth-digging men among them. 2 men, however good, do not win that. There is an old saying I brought with me from the other world, and it turns out it works fine here. A just cause enjoys abundant support. An unjust cause finds little. I will be fair to Hu Wei because he was fair to us at the end. They were selfish. The bait campaign was monstrous. They were also the reason that thing did not reach intermediate, and if they had not stayed, every camp on Redwood Ridge would be gone. Their actual crime was not the bait. It was that they never once, in any conversation, considered that we were people. "Once he comes to Beisho Town, he can live a better life," Hu Wei said. "Perhaps one day you might even earn the right to enter Beisho Town because of Guolei is my brother," I said. "But even if he were any ordinary person from Daxia camp, I would not hand him to a stranger for nothing." Hu Wei did not curse me. He just looked tired. "Ignorant and foolish. There is no point saying more. Let's go." Zhang Yang cursed me. "Born in a place like this, your ultimate fate is to be food for cold beasts and specters. Nothing will ever change that." I did not answer him. I wrote both names down instead, not on anything, just down. Luoge camp had 1,300 people in it that morning. I put the number at over 1,000 dead, 3 camps in a row, Daxia, Dashi, Luoge, and it was an elementary Specter, the lowest tier there is, the kind 2 scouts came here to farm. If that is elementary, I remember thinking, sitting in the snow with my shoulder open, what does intermediate look like? What does advanced look like? And what exactly do I do on the day I meet one? The warm part happened while I was thinking it. Zhang Hao's youngest son, Zhang Bing, is 8, and he was alive because the ghost had mostly gone after adults, children being harder to copy convincingly. He came over to comfort his father, and his own face was still wet. And Zhang Hao held on to him and said, Cheng'er, father swears nothing will ever happen to you again. I want to see you married. I want to see your children. I want you to live a long time. That is a normal thing for a father to say, and it is not a normal thing to hear out here, and every adult within earshot found somewhere else to look. They burned Luoge's dead in the east end of the valley so the spring would not bring sickness, and Tao Cheng put up a 30-meter hut out of the giant's own wood, which I found funny and nobody else did. Then Zhang Hao gave me the thing that was worth more than everything else he gave me, and he gave it away for free. Where there are Jinlin trees, there is coal underneath. The thicker the trees, the more coal. I had spent half a month walking past Jinlin trees. I had specifically avoided them because cold beasts sleep in them and they are too hard to cut. The coal was under the trees I had refused to touch. And for iron, look for black caltrop, pitch black plant, 1 stem, 20 or 30 little paired leaves. It grows on rock faces and in crevices. Luoge's own iron mine was inherited from somebody's grandfather. In 4 generations they had never found another. Then he gave 1,000 caddies of meat to each of the 5 leaders, and Zhao Kai tried to refuse his. If we are talking about who actually helped, he said, it is Leader Shi, thank him instead. And then 3 bags hit the snow in front of me. 5,000 caddies of coal, 4,000 caddies of iron, which was very nearly the entire strategic reserve of Luoge camp. I looked at that pile for a while, because nobody hands over that much for nothing, and I could not see the hook anywhere. I took it anyway. I am not stupid. Guole woke up with a headache and a lot of new furniture in his head. He held out both palms and 2 clouds of black energy pulled themselves together, and there they were, the 3-inch knife and the ball of transparent thread, plus, in his head, something called a puppet legacy and an enormous amount of information about plants. So that is what those 2 came for. That is what the 29 dead men bought. Song Lin was so jealous he could not speak. My only concern was side effects, and I watched him for a month, and there were none. We went home, and the first order I gave when we got there was this one. Do not seal it. From tonight, the entrance stays open after dark. Let everyone get some air. 3 months. That cave had been sealed for over 3 months. I have given a lot of orders. That one got the best reaction. My brother went around telling everyone that the wood puppet ghost had been defeated by the leader and that he personally had killed it, both of which are true, and I let him. Then I looked at the far side of the furnace. 187 people from Dashi camp were sitting over there in a huddle, not celebrating, keeping to their own side, because they had no standing. They were guests, and guests get asked to leave when the food runs low. Pan Shu started pushing his children down to kowtow to me. I stopped them, and then I said it loudly, so that all 187 of them heard every word. Uncle Shi, since you call me leader, then from today, we are family. You 187 are members of Daxia camp. And because there is no point doing a thing halfway, I decided to take you in. So from now on, you are Daxia, and you will be treated exactly the same as everyone else in this cave. Some of them cried. Pan Shu turned around to his people and said, from today Daxia is our home, and Guo Jie is our only leader. Camp Daxia, level 0, population 341, wood 1,240, coal 254, iron 402. 3 grayed outdoors went bright, wooden dummy, a 2-meter figure standing on one leg, hollow through the middle, iron rivets, and a complete face with a small smile on it, which I have decided not to think about. You feed it coal. It raises the cultivation speed and the martial comprehension of anyone training with it. It can record a cold beast from a drop of its essence blood and then become that beast at full adult strength, so you can practice against a monster you have already bled, and inside the furnace's radius it takes orders and fights on its own, grinding stone, a half-meter black stone that molds into any shape you want and forges from 10-fold up to 1,000-fold. And if you soak it in enough cold beast blood, it can make weapons specifically for killing cold beasts. Medicine decoction pot. Green, patterned, smells sweet. You put anything into it and it tells you what it is, and anything medicinal it remembers permanently. And then it starts generating formulas out of what it has remembered. That last one is the biggest of the 3, and nobody in camp understood why I stared at it so long. In a place where getting hurt means either enduring it or dying of it, somebody just handed me medicine. It seems even the system knows which one of you is the precious one. I could not afford to play with any of them. 144 coal left, and the furnace alone eats 20 a day, which is 400 caddies of coal, which is 7 days of being warm if I spend every unit I own on it. Iron ore in this world is about twice as dense as coal. A fist of it is over 100 caddies. That is a thing that took me an embarrassingly long time to stop finding strange. Forging here works like this. You melt ore over coal until it runs. You pour it into a mold. Then you hit it until patterns appear in the metal, and the number of patterns is the number of times the structure has been folded and closed, and a 10-fold blade is the point where the edge will go through a low-level cold beast instead of bouncing off it. Luoj Camp does 10-fold. It takes 3 earth-digging men working in shifts all night with a 2,000 caddy hammer. I molded the grinding stone flat, with a groove in it the shape of a blade. 15 pieces of ore, 600 caddies, 3 hours over coal until the whole thing ran white, poured, a ladle of water, and out came a black billet 1.5 meters long. Then I molded the stone into a hammer, and I hammered until dawn. The entire camp sat in a ring and watched. 341 people, none of whom had ever in their lives seen metal being made, sitting on the floor of a cave with sparks going across their eyes. The billet on that stone was, more or less, an announcement that Daxia Camp had entered the Iron Age. By dawn I was soaked through, my arms would not close, and every joint I own was filing a complaint. That is several times harder than felling a tree, and I have felled a lot of trees. 10 forging patterns. First attempt. 1 man, 1 night. The grinding stone weighs nothing in your hand and never loses its shape, which is most of the trick. The rest of the trick is that a molten billet fights back. Every strike comes back up the handle, and under 10,000 caddies you cannot hold it down. Songlin insisted on trying one swing, and it threw him and nearly took his shoulder out of the socket, so I am the only man in Daxia who can forge, which is one more job on a list that was already too long. I put it in the quenching bucket and it hissed for 10 breaths and came out silver white with 10 silver lines running through it. Blade 1.3 meters, 1.5 with the handle, spine 2 centimeters. 620 caddies. Then Guolei and 10 others took it away from me and sharpened it for 4 hours, changing the water over and over, refusing to hand it back, refusing to let me declare it finished, arguing with each other about the angle. I tested it at half strength on a 3-meter Zhuang tree, 0.5 meter deep, not a nick on the edge. They wanted it named. I swung it once so the cold light off it pointed west into Redwood Ridge. Startling cold. The first hunt with iron was almost unfair. Ropes under the snow, 9 men on the ends, an arrow from a tree to wake a 4-meter adult snowmane. It hit the ropes, stumbled, and then it tried to run. That was new. That had never happened. They had started to smell something coming. I did not let it. I slipped the tusks and put the blade into the right side of its neck like a sword, and then simply held on and let its own charge drag the edge from neck to tail. Then I took the tongue on the way out. "Leader, that Jinghan blade is a bit much, isn't it? From now on," I said, "we stop using torches as bait and hoping." And a boy with a leather patch over his right eye dropped out of the tree on the left with a bow in his hand. He apologized. He had been aiming for the eye, and he had missed it by about 12 centimeters. He had been practicing for 1 day. Pan Shu had given him his dead brother's bow, taught him everything he had, and made Xu Ping demonstrate the rest. And Pan Shu, who has been an archer his whole life, told me privately that he had never seen talent like it. 2 months earlier, I had told a one-eyed boy that we did not have bows yet, but we would. I hate leaving a debt open. Dashi's 500 meters of ridge came with us, which meant 9 ice fruit trees instead of 3, 6,000 caddies a harvest, 3 harvests a year, about 160,000 caddies against a population of 341, which is enough, as long as nothing goes wrong, which it will, because the beasts eat the fruit too, and their range keeps creeping east. There was already a new adult snowmane sitting in one of them. Outside the cave, old people gathered clean snow for water, and the children played in the open in the dark. Songlin stood in the entrance watching it. "It has been a long time since I have seen this." And then my brother asked whether the Dashi people got meat, and before I could answer, he produced an entire 4-tier distribution law he had written himself. Tier 1, the leader allocates his own. Tier 2, the hunting team, earth digging only, currently containing 1 person. Tier 3, the logging team, 10 men, 5 caddies a day. Tier 4, the reserve unit, 1 caddy a day over 1,000 caddies of base strength and 2 over 3,000, ages 15 to 25, 69 people, about 4,000 caddies a month. 3 to 5 successful hunts covers it. Surplus becomes a reserve that the leader spends as rewards. I stood there like an idiot for a second because a 16-year-old in a cave does not just have that. He got it from Jiang Hao. 2 nights earlier, my brother had walked up to the strongest man on the ridge and asked him how Luoge distributed its meat, and Jiang Hao had sat down and taught him, which was interesting. which was, in fact, the second interesting thing Zhang Hao had done for us that week. I took his law and widened it. Reserve unit from 13 to 30, not 15 to 25, and every child under 13 gets 5 caddies a month for nothing. 1,700 extra caddies a month. 2 more beasts. 6 hunts instead of 4. My brother objected, and he objected honestly, which is why the argument was worth having. More hunts means more risk. Our range is about 1,000 meters of rim, and the beasts in it will run out, and then we go deeper than we should, early, and then, for the ordinary people in camp, I do not think it is worth it. What are they? I asked him. The ordinary people. Say the word. A burden. Correct. They are a burden. So are you willing to abandon them? He did not answer. He is not that person, and he knew it while he was standing there. Here is the thing you are missing, I said. Before they could go outside, we were already taking every risk for them, every tree, every fruit, every mine we ever open. It is already their risk. It always was. So the only real question is whether the risk buys anything. Meat buys the outside. The outside buys hands. Hands buy everything else. Everyone in this camp is going to be involved in building it. And here is the part I actually believe, and I have never found anybody in this world who agrees with me. Neither logging nor earth digging has a talent gate. There is no bloodline. There is no gift. With enough meat, everybody breaks through. Talent and age only decide how fast. Think about it, I said. One day, everyone in Daxia will be able to cultivate. 5- and 6-year-olds walking around at logging realm. Song Lin laughed until he had to sit down. My brother told me, kindly, that I was confused. Remember that. It comes up later. Camp was in the middle of physically lifting me onto their shoulders about the new meat law when a voice cut through it. Zhang Hao was standing in our cave. He asked what we were celebrating. Somebody told him, 13 to 30, and 5 caddies a month for every child under 13, free. Something moved behind his eyes. Brother Goji, what great courage. Then he saw the blade on my hip. Brand new, 10 patterns. Forged in 2 days out of the ore he had given me by one earth-digging man in a camp with no smithy when Luog needs 2 of their best working in shifts for 3 to 5 days to get the same thing. He opened his mouth to ask. I changed the subject and he let me, which I appreciated. Then he knelt. I went to pick him up and could not because he is stronger than me and he was not getting up. He had lost his father, his wife, and his eldest son in 1 day. He had one 8-year-old left. He was taking that boy somewhere bigger and safer, north, and he was not coming back. And he was asking me to take the 100-odd people of Luoj camp who were left. The dowry was an unmined iron mine on the south side of his valley and a working coal mine inside Redwood Ridge. I saw the trap underneath it immediately, and I said so. Dashi's people came to me with nothing, no fighters, no leverage, and a great deal of gratitude. They merged clean. Luoj's survivors had 17 logging realm men. Daxia had 9, and to take them, Daxia would have to move into their valley. That is not a merger. That is 2 factions in one building and a fight in about 6 months. Why not just make one of the 17 your successor? Zhang Hao's answer was the most honest thing anybody said to me that month. None of them has it. They are wrecked with grief, and they are deliberately playing helpless to blackmail him into staying. Do with them as you see fit, he said. I will have no objection at all. I asked him why me, and he told me, and it was uncomfortable to hear. I had run towards strangers at my own risk when I had every reason not to. That was character. I had fought with both nerve and judgment and had been right about the ghost when nobody believed me. That was ability. And when he had said the words 17 logging realm men, I was the only man in that valley whose face did not light up. I had immediately started calculating the friction. That was a mind. And I had written a meat law that spends every surplus on population growth. Without a massive population, he said, any ambition is empty talk. So he had been watching me for a while, and he had taught my brother how to run a camp 2 nights before he asked me this. Leader Luo, those 100+ people, Daxia will take them. My own accounting was simple. Feeding 500 instead of 300 is just more fruit and more hunts. Troublemakers get talked to once and suppressed after that, and the mines are mines. Camp worked it out before I finished the sentence. Over 100 more people, that puts us past 500. Does that not make us a medium camp? It does. There are 3 conditions for a medium camp. 500 people, 1 earth-digging man, and survive a low-level beast tide. 2 out of 3. I did not think much about the third one at the time. 341 people walked 4 kilometers north past Ta Mountain. Here is what Daxia Camp owned on the day it went to claim the richest valley on Redwood Ridge. Fewer than 100 hide skirts, between 341 people. The rest were wearing clothes made of dried leaves and sleeping on hay. 24,000 caddies of fruit carried a sack at a time. 1 snowmane. All of our timber traveled inside the system, which meant it carried itself, which is the single most useful thing that Window has ever done for me. Column order, 137 of the strong at the front behind Tao Cheng, 149 children under 13 in the middle, 44 older ones third, and Jiang Hao and me at the back, 50 or 60 meters end to end. And for the first time since I arrived in this world, the ordinary people set out excited. Even the children with blue faces were excited. You could hear it. Jiang Hao told them not to worry. Beasts do not move much at night, and this is not even Redwood Ridge. Then a wolf howled, then a dozen more. Move, I said. Faster, everyone. We watched the tree line for 100 breaths and nothing came out of it, which was the point, because they were not in the trees. A dozen waves came at us through the snow from underneath. Underground. They are under the snow. 15 bone spike frost wolves. And they were not a crowd. They were a formation. The howls had been a call to positions. The 3 largest went straight for the 3 earth-digging men, 1 each. 7 or 8 took our logging men, and 4 or 5 went past all of us, at speed, without slowing, directly at the civilians. That is when I found out that Frost Wolves' plan. It went badly fast. One of Loge's 7 was already gone. 4 of my men were holding stone axes that could not hurt a wolf and knew it. Song Lin was pinned. The 5 archers in the trees were the only thing between 4 wolves and 149 children, and they were nearly out of arrows. So I gave the worst order of my life, and I gave it out loud, in front of everybody. Ignore that side. Kill these 3 big ones first, or every single one of us dies here. The archers hesitated for 10 breaths before they obeyed me. People died in those 10 breaths. I know roughly how many. I am not going to tell you the number because the number is not the point. The point is the 10 breaths. I got an arm around my wolf's middle and held the thing still, physically, so somebody could put an arrow into it, and then I cut through the barb ring on its neck. It lived. It never came near me again for the rest of the night, which turned out to matter. And then I looked over and my brother had killed something. Song Lin was up. The wolf that had been on top of him was blind in one eye and pouring green. And Guo Lei was standing there with a 3-inch black knife, absolutely delighted with himself. Good lad, you have got some nerve. Then, do not get tangled up here. Stay with the column, block them, do not let them kill anyone. 100 breaths of that. Then the line held, and the wolves slowed down and started circling instead of charging, especially the one I had cut, and reinforcements came out of the dark from the north. Zhao Kai with 4 men, Liu Peng with 4 men, so I charged a 15 wolf pack, alone, first, screaming at them to come and get it, and the pack broke and ran. Then I turned around and let out the breath I had been holding and said out loud in front of everyone, that was close, that was very close. You could watch about 300 people simultaneously realize they had just seen a man bluff a wolf pack. I have never bothered to correct any of them about anything else. I corrected them about that one, immediately. There is a difference between letting people believe you are formidable and letting people believe you are safe. Zhao Kai and Liu Peng were out there because both of their camps had fed every logging man they had into the bait campaign and had 4 left each, and they had secretly merged their logging teams that very night, planning to merge the camps. I asked him how he felt about all of it. Being born in the ice abyss, Zhao Kai said, life is precarious. It is only a question of dying sooner or later. He said that standing over bodies, 2 kilometers from a valley everyone had spent a week dreaming about. Jiang Hao would not look at either of them. He had put 29 men into that forest, and he knew exactly whose sons they were. And I stood there and thought about the fact that 1 second I had been congratulating myself on inheriting the best real estate on the ridge, and the next second a wolf pack had walked out of the ground. We got out of that because of nerve and luck, not strength. There was no strength involved anywhere. What about next time? You two, I said. If you do not object, bring everyone from both your camps and merge into Daxia. Neither of them could talk for about 10 breaths. 39 people did not arrive at the valley, 304 did. And that first night in the 30-meter hut, 300 Daxia sat on the left and 100-odd Luoji sat on the right, with 15 surviving logging men sitting at the front of them like a wall. They were not hostile to me. I had come for them. They were extremely hostile to my people because they had worked out that they were about to become second-class citizens in their own valley. So I defended the man who had abandoned them. If Leader Luo could have taken all of you with him safely, do you think he would have left you? I watched that go around the room and take the last of the resentment out of it. Then Guo Lei stood up and read out the 4 tiers, and 100 and some people sat there and did not believe a single word. Jiang Lei said so. He is their strongest, 8,000 caddies, over 30, and he is not stupid. Luoge had 5 earth-digging men, he said, and we hunted 5 beasts a month at the absolute most. 400 or 500 people needs 10, more than 10. Zhao Kai and Liu Peng quietly put the real figure at 15. This is not possible for this camp. And I refused to argue with him, because he was right and arguing with correct people is how you lose rooms. Whether it can be done is my problem and the hunting team's problem. I am asking you one question. Do you agree to the rule or not? They agreed. Of course they agreed. It is free meat. Then I told them the price. When you break through to logging realm, everything about you is allocated by me. A pause. Including your lives. 100 breaths of complete silence in a room with 400 people in it. Then one voice. If the 4-tier rule is real, then I will hand my life to you, leader. Then another. Then the room. I want to explain why I did that, because it is the only genuinely hard thing I have ever done, and I have never been comfortable with it. Unity is the only thing our species has here, and a camp needs one hand on it, because in the moment that decides everything, it does not actually matter whether the decision is correct. It matters that everybody moves at once. 10 breaths. That is what hesitation costs. I had just paid it in people. I finally understood the way Hu Wei and Zhang Yang talked about their Lord Yang, and I stopped finding it funny. You do not get 100,000 people into one town any other way. And there was a second reason, which was sitting in my head in numbers. Wooden dummy upgrade, 3,000 wood and 6,000 iron. Grinding stone, 5,000 coal and 10,000 iron. Medicine pot, 20,000 wood, 20,000 coal, 10,000 iron, and 10 generated formulas. Furnace to level 3, 2,000 wood and 5,000 iron. A wood unit is 1,000 caddies of tree. A coal unit is 20 caddies. An iron unit is 10. 500 earth-digging men working for decades would not clear that list. So I needed population, which meant ordinary people, which meant meat. It is all the same equation. It has always been the same equation. Zhang Hao left the next day with 12 people and half the camp's coal and iron, which is normal startup capital for a man founding a life somewhere else, and I did not say a word about it. Then he handed me 2 scrolls made of cold beast hide. The first one had 6 cold beasts on it with their habits, their attack patterns, and their weak points. Long-tongued snowmane, bone-spike frost wolf, golden-eyed demon sheep, which I had already paid for with Cao Jin's right eye, and 3 I had never heard of, living in the 500 to 1,000 meter band. Cloud Mist Soaring Dragon, which is snake-shaped. Golden Armored Thunder Kui, which is enormous. Blue Moon Spirit, whose fur is whiter than snow. I bowed to him for that scroll, which I do not do, because every first meeting with an unknown beast in this world costs lives. Dashi paid 3 men for 1 snowmane. I paid an eye for a goat. What Zhang Hao handed me was not paper. It was the members of my future hunting team who now get to come home. The second scroll was a map drawn by his father in the years when Zhang Bo still thought he was going to own the world and never updated once in 15 years. The valley in the middle, east, behind the 2 mountains, unknown, loud noises during the day, which means very large things of unknown species that are awake when we are not. West, Redwood Ridge, explored to 1,000 meters and no further. South, 2 kilometers past our old Earth slope, a frozen river, and around that river, there are no cold beast tracks at all, anywhere, not one. Think about what that means. Everything in this world is a predator, and none of them will go near it. Stay away from the river. North, an arrow bamboo forest and a mountain road that is normally packed with beasts. Except for 3 to 5 days a year, during the ice fruit fruiting season, when every one of them crawls into the bamboo for reasons nobody knows, and a man can run that road. And past the bamboo, the Pingxi Plain, and a giant camp called Beehive. That is where he was going. That was the window he could not miss. I tried once to talk him out of leaving. If it were not for Yunir, he said, I would not have abandoned these people. His eldest son had been dead for 9 days, so he went. 2 more nights of migration brought Huangjiao and Dachuan in. 427 people, population 902, 36 logging realm, 302 age 13 to 30. 392 under 13. My brother came to me with the monthly meat figure, and he had clearly practiced not showing his face while he said it. A little over 20,000 caddies a month, which is 15 adult cold beasts, which is 1 every 2 nights. Behind him were 5 men who had come specifically to watch me hear that number. I did not look up from the anvil. Fine, understood. Go and rest, all of you. We will go out hunting after dark. Jiang Lei tried to save me from myself, which I respected. Luoge had tried animal traps, and traps do not work here. Beasts do not move at night. In the day you cannot stand next to one, and a beast that steps in a trap simply leaves, taking your trap with it. Do not worry, I said. I have a method. 3 days and 1,200 caddies of ore, 10 forging patterns, and a dozen crude springs. It was a bear trap. It closes at over 12,000 caddies, which means you need earth-digging strength just to open it. Jiang Lei needed 2 men to help him get it apart. While I was building it, I did some accounting on my own life, which I had been avoiding. In this camp, logging is the only job I can hand to somebody else. Hunting is mine. Mining is mine, alone. Forging is mine, alone. There is a thing about leadership that nobody says out loud because saying it sounds like complaining, and I have never found a way around it. If you are not willing to be the one who does the impossible part, you cannot be the one who tells everyone else what to do. Which, incidentally, is when I finally understood why Zhang Hao walked away from a valley he had spent his whole life inside. He had run out of the willingness, not the ability. We picked the farthest snow main, because 3 of the 7 beasts in our new range were too close together. Guo Lei took the claw chisel to the frozen black ground under the snow, and it threw him 3 or 4 meters. That ground only breaks for earth-digging strength. That is what the name of the realm actually means, and it is not a compliment. It means you are strong enough to dig, an hour to open a pit 1 meter long and half a meter deep, trap in it, rope off to a tree with a dead knot, buried, snow smoothed back over, 6 of us on the ground and 7 archers in the trees. Then I put a small torch in the middle of the covered pit and lit it. Zhang Lei's face was a beautiful thing. He had spent 15 years knowing that cold beasts do not wake at night for firelight. 5 minutes later, a 4-meter adult snowmane came down out of its tree and walked toward my torch with naked need in its face. The trap took it. Then arrows. 2 into the eyes, 2 into the ear and the mouth. It bit through the rope, turned around, and went straight for the one man in the clearing carrying no weapon. My brother did not move, because there was already a white thread strung across the air in front of him, and a 4-meter snowmane at full charge stopped half a meter from his chest like it had run into a wall. It fired the tongue. I was riding my own blade, which was buried in its side, and I drove it deeper to make it flinch. A 3-inch black blade appeared in my brother's empty hand and took the tongue off at the root. I took the head. Get the essence sample, quickly. Jiang Lei, who had come out that night quietly convinced that Guo Lei was in the hunting team because of his surname, said, "Brother Guo Lei, good technique. 7,000 caddies at 16 years old. Jiang Lei is 8,000 at over 30. I told him he was still nowhere near earth digging, and that he should spend more time studying the knife and the thread, because their real uses are obviously bigger than this. Somebody has to keep him in one piece, and it is not going to be his friends. The frost wolf went the same way, except the trap nearly took its foreleg off, and it pulled the rope apart, so we used my brother's white thread instead of rope. It did not break. No matter what that wolf did to it, it did not break. Halfway through the night, 2 kills, and Jiang Lei had gone quiet in a way I recognized. He had run hunts under Jiang Hao for 15 years. He was doing the comparison in his head, and it was not comfortable. I told them the limits before they got excited, because a method you do not understand kills you later. The traps cannot be mass-produced. 1,200 caddies of ore each, 10 forged, and Daxia has neither the ore nor the mining to make more. And more importantly, the trap does not kill anything. Without an earth-digging man standing in front of it when the beast comes off the ground, all you have done is lose a beast and a trap. But, I said, the first one of you to reach earth digging with these traps could run a second hunting team. I have never seen 15 men look at me like that. Zhang Lei suggested we stop at 2 for the night. Let's take that golden-eyed demon sheep as well. Everyone swallowed at once because the demon sheep is the thing that took Chao Jin's eye. It is also the easiest of the 3, and I should have said that first. It has exactly 1 move, which is to charge. The trap removes the charge, and the golden eye on its back, which cost my archer his right eye to discover, is now simply the largest and most obvious target that 7 bowmen have ever been handed in their lives. 4,280 caddies from 3 beasts in one night. Zhao Kai and Liu Peng met us at the valley mouth, and both of them stopped talking mid-sentence. Their camps had never in their history seen an intact cold beast corpse, not one, ever. But the actual reason I had wanted 3 species in one night was sitting in the hut. I took 3 wooden bottles of that essence to the wooden dummy and poured them into its hollow belly. Currently recorded breeds: long-tongued snowmane, bone spike frost wolf, golden-eyed demon sheep. 3 coal stones in, they lit themselves. The light ran down its arms and its one leg, and the wooden man raised its head, opened its eyes, and had a stretch. Then it turned into a 4-meter snowmane, and everybody in that hut ran. Logging realm men, grown fighters, ran. The fear of cold beasts in these people goes down to the bone, and I do not blame them, and I made a note about what that fear costs in a fight. I walked it outside, stood 10 meters away, and did not dodge. I caught the charge with both hands. It drove me back 10 meters and wore through my straw sandals and left a furrow. Then I got under it, flipped 1,000 caddies into the air, landed on the neck, and hit it until something in the skull cracked. And I lost, because while I was doing all of that, the tongue was already at my throat. 13,000 caddies of base strength, plus the long fist, plus a year of practice, and barehanded and one-on-one, I cannot beat a snowmane. The snowmane is the weakest thing we know about. I want that written down somewhere too, because everyone in that valley had started looking at me like I was the answer to things. The dummy's second use dawned on me while I was lying in the snow. Inside the furnace's radius, it takes orders and fights on its own, so I now had a guard as strong as I am, for 5 coal an hour, which is 100 caddies, against the 200 caddies a day an earth-digging man can mine. Everything in this world costs coal. Everything. Selection for the first hunting team was simple. Fight the wooden snowman, alone, 1 attempt. Pick a broadsword, or a bow. Longest survival wins. 15 slots. First, I made Zhanglei's 9 put every weapon in camp on the ground where everyone could see it. 4 broadswords, 11 bows, for 36 logging realm men to look at. Feng Chen immediately proposed that archers be judged on accuracy instead of survival, which was a reasonable-sounding argument made by one of the 3 best shots in camp. I did not enjoy answering it, but it needed answering in public. A snowman in the wild does not stand still and let you shoot it. If you meet one alone, it does not matter how accurate you are. You will not get a second arrow. You are support. You are not hunters. What I need from you is that you can keep yourselves alive, so that I am not looking after you while something is trying to kill all of us, and then the rule I have kept ever since. Anyone in this camp can question me, but when you question a decision of mine, it had better be out of public interest and not private interest. His chin went to his chest, and he did not argue, and I have never held it against him, because a man who says the wrong thing out loud is worth 10 who say it in a corner. My brother went first and refused a weapon. He dodged, and then he bound all 4 of that thing's limbs with white thread, and very nearly flipped it, and the whole hut made a noise. Then it burst the thread by simple strength and put him 10 meters through the air, 39 breaths, and he is arguably the strongest logging realm man in camp. Everybody in that hut learned the same lesson at the same moment, which is exactly why I ran it as a public trial. Only earth digging can hunt. No amount of iron closes that gap. I went to look at the iron mine. Black caltrop was growing in a thick patch right at the mouth of it, which is how you know where iron is, which is a fact I had been given a week too late to feel clever about. I pocketed one for the pot. Inside, a timbered cave 5 meters deep, and the back wall black and shining and cold enough to hurt. 2 hours of chiseling produced 1 fist of ore, 40-odd caddies. Unsmelted ore rebounds exactly like a billet on the anvil. Under 10,000 caddies you cannot chisel it at all, and it grows the way the caltrop grows, dozens of nodules along a main stem that is far too hard to cut, so you go along the side and chip the branches off one at a time. 2 hours. 40 caddies, 100 caddies of iron in a working night if I do nothing else. Coal is 200 and no easier. And there it was. The answer to the question I had been asking since the day I got 60 units off a dead man's sword. Why did Luoge camp with 5 earth-digging men and a decade of mining own 20 small iron tools? Because that is what a decade of mining buys. The hunting team came out of that trial with 15 names. Guolei, Zhanglei, Liupeng, Xu Gong, Zhao Kai, Xu Qiang, Xu Min, Wenlong, Wenbo, Wu Jai, Songlin, Kang Ji, Wu Chen, Ye Fei, who lasted 17 breaths and was the shortest and got in anyway. Weapons went in rank order, and my brother, picking first, took a bow and left all 4 broadswords on the ground. My black blade is better than these anyway. Which was true, and which was also the most expensive thing he could have said, and everybody in that hut understood exactly what he had just done. Nobody grabbed after that. Nobody has grabbed since. Sudong got the logging team, 21 men, no weapons, saws only. And then I made the whole ladder temporary and dangerous on purpose. Hunting team membership lasts until somebody better shows up. Any logging man who breaks through to earth digging replaces the lowest ranked member automatically, and whoever reaches earth digging first and can lead a hunt becomes the captain, on double pay, 20 caddies a day. Then we distributed meat, and 700 people queued up in a cave, 15 men at 10 caddies, 21 at 5, 302 of the reserve at 1 to 2. And 392 children at 5 caddies a month, handed over in one go, which came to 1,960 caddies walking out of the store in an afternoon. 2,640 caddies gone out of 4,280. The 100-odd people over 30 got nothing because their bodies cannot convert it, and every one of them has a relative in that queue. I did not tell anyone my actual reasoning about the children because it would have sounded strange. I do not want those kids breaking through fast. I want their bodies built out of meat from the beginning. A child raised on crystal fruit and a child raised on cold beast meat are not the same animal at 20. I have got about 15 years to find out how different, and I am extremely interested in the answer. Then I said, "Do you all remember what I told you?" Zhang Lei and Luoga's 15 knelt first. From now on, in life or death, we exist to be commanded by the leader. And then 900 people knelt down in one motion and said it together. I am not going to pretend I hated it. The problems that came next were logistics, which is what victory turns into. 900 people cannot practice the long fist in a 30-meter hut. The furnace warms 70 meters outside the hut at night, which helps, and does nothing about daylight, which does not. Sudong's survey found 37 ice fruit trees on our east rim, all on the same cycle, all just fruited, 140,000 caddies. I kept fruit mandatory anyway and got argued with about it, and won by pointing out that the medicine pot had identified crystal fruit as a medicinal material, which shut everybody up including me. I had fed that pot a dozen things by then: snowmane tongue powder, frost wolfbone, black caltrop, coal, iron powder, a golden cold tip, and a crimson frost stem that the gathering team brought in. 20 units of coal burned on identification and not one recipe, and then Wan Li brought me a drawing. I had described a building to him once, badly, from memory, in about 4 sentences. What he handed back was 200 meters square and 15 meters tall in 3 floors. Middle floor 5 meters high, the main hall with the furnace in it and the meeting space and the public stores. Bottom floor 3 meters, split into over 300 rooms of 10 meters each for every ordinary person in camp. Top floor 5 meters, 90 rooms of 20 meters for the hunting and logging teams, and a warehouse. A meter of solid wood between each floor and a 4-sided roof under hide so the snow melt runs off. Capacity between 8 and 10,000 people. 902 people live here. He drew a building for 10,000 because I told him to plan for what we would be, and then he went home and did it. There were 4 problems, and 3 of them were only wood, tools, and iron. The 4th was the foundation. A trench 800 meters long, 3 meters wide, 2 meters deep, in ground that takes me an hour to open half a meter. Alone, that is a year or 2 of my life. And Wan Li solved it with the exact sentence that Zhang Yang had used to insult all of us. Coal heat softens the ground. You walk the iron smelting furnace along the trench line. You dig the softened section. You move the furnace on. 4 months. 400 caddies of coal a day. Uninterrupted, and it has to be coal, because wood heat cannot soften ground for the same reason it cannot melt ore. I gave him the whole camp. I also made 2 offices that night, because a thing that has no name gets no accountability. The camp supply office, my brother as chief and Song Lin as deputy, holding wood, meat, coal, iron, tools, and weapons. And the craftsman workshop under Wan Li, open to any ordinary person with real talent for making things. 30 caddies a month as a position allowance. 6 days into the new hunting method, the meat store held 11,300 caddies. I want to say something about civilization, and then I will get back to the monsters. This world has surnames. It has marriage. It has funerals. It has writing. It cooks its food and boils its water. All of that survives something that ended the sun. And the camps on Redwood Ridge, which are the poorest human beings I have ever met, spend their entire strength feeding hundreds of people who produce nothing. That is not nature. Nature does not do that. That is a civilization running on momentum, centuries after the engine stopped. In an extreme environment, the amount of malice people can produce is exactly equal to the amount of goodwill you can cultivate in them. I chose which one to farm. The line I gave them, which my brother repeated until it was on everyone's lips, was this: unite as one, improve our strength, adapt to the environment, meet whatever the cold beasts and the specters bring. I had originally written it with the word humanity in it. I took that out and put Daxia in instead, because we were 900 people in a hole, and there is a difference between ambition and being ridiculous. 1 month later, the meat store held over 30,000 caddies, which is 2 months of buffer. I kept everything inside the outer 500 meters and refused to go deeper. Unknown ground, unknown species, and the outer band was still producing, and Daxia's territory was now the entire east face of Redwood Ridge, 4 kilometers south from the valley. Luoge plus Dashi plus Dachuan plus Huangjiao plus our own. Then I took my first night off in a month and stacked a 10,000 caddy post and 6,000 caddy posts on top of it and lifted the lot. 15,000. 2,000 in a month, which is good, and which is also a warning if you read it properly. I eat 20 to 30 caddies a day, which is my ceiling, and I put in 2 or 3 times what any of them put in for a smaller percentage. The higher you climb, the harder every step gets. That is not a saying. That is a curve, and I was on it. Earth digging tops out at 30,000 caddies. And Zhang Hao, the strongest man on the ridge, had never known how to go past it. The cold-resistant realm was a name and nothing else. I had a fallback for the day I hit that wall, and it was not a good one. Do what Zhang Hao did. Wait for the fruiting season. Run the arrow bamboo road while the beasts are all inside the bamboo, and go and ask a giant camp full of strangers. What I actually noticed that night, though, was the camp. Somebody complained out loud in front of me that he had been eating so much cold beast meat lately that he was feeling a bit full. A year earlier, that man had been lying on the floor of a cave conserving calories. Behind the hut, the furnace had already been walked 10 meters, and there was a trench 2 meters deep behind it, with 4 earth-digging men working in it. 1 month of walking a furnace down a trench line got us 15 meters, out of 800. At that rate, the building would be finished in 4 or 5 years, by which point I would either be dead or would not need it. There are exactly 2 ways to speed it up. Burn more coal so more ground is soft. Or have more men who can dig the hard part raw. Both of those are the same sentence, more earth-digging men. I climbed down into the trench, took the chisel out of Zhanglei's hands, and told him to go and cultivate instead. He stood there for a second watching the leader of the camp dig his shift for him, and then he went and trained harder than he had in 15 years, which was the entire point of taking the chisel. Wood 6,835, coal 160, iron 270. Wood was exploding and the other 2 were bleeding out. A few more months and both hit 0. Then, in the middle of that, the window in my head did something it had never done before. The medicine decoction pot has automatically generated the golden wound powder recipe. The missing piece had walked in by accident, blue condensation grass. Pale blue, faintly sweet, growing in the snow next to a blue tree that Sudong had declined to cut down because he had never seen one before and did not want to lose something that might matter. I nearly hugged him. What I said was, "Mark that location. That tree is never cut." The recipe: 1 blue condensation grass and 1 black caltrop, both ground. Half a caddy of coal powder. 1 caddy of jinlin tips, which is a white oval fruit, and there is exactly 1 per jinlin tree. 10 caddies of frostwolf inverted bones, which is the barbering off the neck. Water. Boil half an hour. 10 coal. 200 caddies of coal for 1 batch. I tested it on Feng Chen, who had a 5-inch gash from chin to hairline, and on Ye Fei, who had a 20-centimeter wound in the leg that had not closed in a day. A demon sheep had put a tree down on top of both of them. I did it in front of the whole camp on purpose, and I said 1 sentence while I did it. The cold beast meat you eat every day does not come out of thin air. Then I stopped talking. Some things you touch once and leave alone. It stings. Then it itches, which is much worse. And then over a few minutes the flesh pulls shut, the dead parts bubble off, and it scabs. 5 caddies a batch, which covers a hunting team for maybe half a month, and we could not afford it. Ruling: life-threatening wounds only. Everything else, you tough out. The real prize was not the powder. The real prize was that the pot had proved it could generate. If it can produce medicine, then somewhere down that list is something that makes people stronger. Wan Li came to me with a chair, 1.67 meters tall, 1.4 wide, a round back with a snow mane, a frost wolf and a demon sheep carved into it. Golden cold wood, zhuchuang armrests polished smooth, 9 white bone carvings inlaid, and the seat covered in blue frost wolf hide. I had my reprimand ready, and my brother shoved me into it before I could deliver it. I had been sitting on the ground for a year. It was wonderful. I have never told him that. Then he brought out the second thing, which was a full 5-piece outfit, a cap made from a frost wolf's head, with 2 snowmane fangs on the brim, demon sheep mane for the lining and the trousers, a snowmane hide coat. Black boots cut from the second layer of snowmane hide, soaked 10 days in snow water and baked, half a month of work by 5 men, and I put it down, and my objection was real. We need hides for gathering bags, for scrolls, for water skins, for quivers, for sleeping blankets, and above everything else for clothes for the women and children, who had only had hide skirts at all for the last half month. That is when my brother took the blame in public and made the best speech of his life. He had ordered them, he said so, and then he listed the reasons, out loud, to 900 people. The fruit runs, the meat that got shared instead of hoarded, the wood puppet ghost, the 100 people carried out of Luog, 900 people eating today, the mining and the forging and the hunting that nobody else in this camp can do. Right now, in Daxia camp, you are the only person who deserves them. The hut agreed loudly and then immediately started making jokes, with Wenlong accusing the Ying brothers of preferring to run around naked. So I put the clothes on, fangs on the hat brim, black hide cloak, boots. And I sat down sideways in a carved chair in front of several hundred men in hide skirts in a frozen valley, and the phrase that arrived in my head was Mountain Bandit King, and I had to laugh at myself for a while. Then I turned it into an engine. 15 more sets to be made. The first 10 men to reach earth digging get one. The first 5 of the reserve to reach logging get one. The circle around my chair dissolved on the spot and the whole valley started punching the air. I had been suppressing rank and class in that camp for a year, deliberately, out of pure reflex from my old life. That was a mistake and I want to be honest about it. In a world where strength is the only currency, visible tears are not vanity. They are a ladder with the rungs painted bright. If I had kept clinging to the instincts of a civilized society, I would have paid for it eventually, and I would not have seen the bill coming. So I started listing everything else I could gate behind rank. The rooms in the new building, the golden wound powder, weapons, and eventually the martial arts sitting in my head that nobody here has ever seen. The first man besides me to earn a suit was Shiping out of the reserve, ahead of 300 people. He is Pan Shu's son, and Pan Shu, who will never cultivate again, who cannot use his own hands properly, had rebuilt an entire life out of teaching archery to 11 men and driving every dashi youngster in that camp half to death, because he could read the room better than anybody in it. Daxia is 5 merged groups, and if you want to know the hierarchy, you look at where people sit relative to the stove. Old Daxia nearest, then Luoga's 100, who hold 15 logging men, 8 of the 15 hunting slots plus Sudong and Wanli, then Dachuan and Huangzhou, and at the very back, Dashi, with not one single logging realm man among 187 people. No value, so no voice. No voice, so no future. He was not being paranoid. He was being early. I got in front of it before he could ask me. In a few months, when the new houses are up, housing gets assigned uniformly. I told you I would treat you all equally. Do you still not trust me? He tried to explain himself, and I would not let him. I do not mind factions. Any group past a certain size grows them, and in a world that respects strength, competition between groups is how a camp gets faster. What kills a camp is malicious competition, and the only thing that decides which kind you get is whether the man at the top notices the friction in time. And what everybody else saw that day was one boy breaking through. What I saw was that the entire reserve had started eating meat on the same day. The spurt was here. Day 2, 2 more. Day 3, Day 4, Day 5. Wood 23,210. Coal 35. Iron 59. Nearly dry. I was spending a third of my life in the mine and falling behind. Without the ore Zhang Hao left us, the new building would never have broken ground at all. 4 months in, and we were under 100 meters of 800. Then my brother came running. 7 more logging breakthroughs, which made 110. And Zhang Lei. I threw the chisel down and ran, and when I got to the trench, Zhang Lei was already in it, working the unsoftened end. The end that until that night only I could dig. Leader, from today you do not have to work so hard. I can dig foundation piles with you. I looked around and every face at that trench was doing the same thing, which was reverence with guilt underneath it. 5 months of one man hunting and mining and forging and digging for 900 people had finally arrived where they could see it. A breakthrough means more ability, I said, and the more ability you have, the more responsibility comes with it. Then I kicked Song Lin in the shin. You all feel sorry for me, is that it? Then go and cultivate. Get out, all of you, get out. Inside 30 days, Shu Gong, then my brother, then Shu Cheng, then Shu Min. 5 earth-digging men besides me. Logging realm went from 110 to 140, and only 109 of the reserve's 302 had broken through, so it was nowhere close to finished. Timber stopped being a problem permanently, the workshop and the supply office got real staff, and the valley filled up with work, hauling timber, clearing ground, surveying, tool-making, butchering, warehousing. Every one of those jobs requires logging realm strength because a tree here weighs thousands of caddies and an ordinary human being cannot move it or cut it or lift the tools that cut it, which is when I finally understood the thing I should have understood in my first week. The logging realm is not an achievement here. It is the baseline. It is what a human being has to be in the ice abyss to count as a working adult. Below it you survive by leaning on somebody stronger, and everybody knows it, including you. 5 months of hunting had cost us real scars on all 16 of us and several near misses and exactly 0 deaths, and the only 2 reasons for that were the 500-meter limit and the golden wound powder. Nobody in that valley idled at night anymore. They logged, they built, they took the chisels the moment coal was burning, or they cleared ground, and every man in the hunting team was privately obsessed with the last 5 suits of clothes. 6 months after we moved in, I called all 140 logging realm and above into the hut. 5 earth-digging men nearest me, then the hunting team, then the logging team, then the 100 new ones at the back. Nobody assigned those positions. Rank arranges itself in a room every time, if you let it. They had all changed shape, taller, thicker, breathing slow, the way people breathe when their body has stopped negotiating with the cold. You have not let down the hunting team's work, I told them, and you have not disappointed me. Then I cut them off at the knees, because praise on its own makes people comfortable. And the strength of the logging realm is not very useful. You cannot hunt. You cannot mine. And in that trench you can only dig the parts that coal has already softened. Hunting team stays at 15, and from now on, only earth-digging men may apply. Logging team goes from 21 to 80. And a new gathering team, 40 people, fruit, tree cycles, medicinal materials, new food plants, and following the hunting team's range outward as it grows. Same pay as the logging team. I justify that one out loud, because 40 men on full rations to pick plants is a hard sell to people who fight monsters. One woman in the gathering team declined to cut down a blue tree because she had never seen one. That is why you have golden wound powder. Free choice of team. You may also choose not to join any of them. In that case, there will be no cold beast meat for you in future. and then the law of the camp in one sentence, which is still the law. Daxia camp does not raise idlers. Before you have strength and cannot go outside, it is right that camp feeds you. Once you have strength, it is your turn to feed camp. Then Wan Li stood up and said the piles were past 600 meters and construction could begin. Wan Li's walls are whole, Jinlin trees, 3 meters thick below ground and 6 meters thick above it, mortise and tenon, with iron pillars inside and out at every corner. Iron chains run under the foundation, stringing all 4 walls together before anything is set. 12 internal load-bearing columns with iron cores going all the way to the roof beams. About 206-meter Jinlin trees for the walls alone. No low-level cold beast will get through it, he said. Even something with the impact of a snowmane, unless a very large number of them came at once. My brother and Jiang Lei finished the thought out loud before he could. So from now on, even in daylight, we do not have to fear the light. We can keep a fire burning openly. And anything that does come can be shot from inside a building. The room stood up and started shouting about starting that night. I let them shout, and I did not tell them the reason I had spent 6 months of iron on a house instead of on weapons. In 6 months, I had killed about 300 low-level cold beasts across a strip 500 meters deep and 5 or 6 kilometers long. And the population out there had not dropped at all, not measurably, which means the ones deeper in are pushing outward faster than one man can kill them. I have answers for Specters now. The furnace, the torches, the oil. I have a whole toolkit. Beasts are not afraid of any of it. Beasts want it. And they are at their strongest in daylight, which is exactly when I cannot put the furnace out without freezing 900 people. If the beast population out there ever grows enough to find the fire in this valley, Daxia ends worse than Luoj did. Except for hunting, everything else in this camp stops. Everyone works on the house. 800 people built it. Logging men set the giant trees. The reserve fitted the ironwork. The 100-odd over 30 carried, because age alone gives you 1 or 2,000 caddies here. 300 children ran tools and water, a wall a night, west, then south, then north. I watched a hunt from a tree, one night, without taking part. 5 earth-digging men, no leader, on an adult snowmane. My brother took the charge head-on from behind a white thread, which was correct, and then put the black dagger through its eye, which was also correct. And the beast, which had just taken a fatal wound, did not scream and did not fall. It went berserk, fangs at his head, tongue around his leg. The other 4 had to haul on the trap rope to get it off him, and it still had his right leg, and it was about to harden that tongue and take it off at the knee. I came out of the tree onto its neck and opened it from spine to belly, lengthwise, through the toughest part of the animal because I was in a mood. Then I turned around and slapped my brother across the face in front of everybody. He did not argue. He put his head down and recited it himself, which is the thing about him that makes all of this bearable. Even with a fatal wound, a snowmane does not submit. It gets worse. The fight was not over, and I relaxed. Then I started on the other 4 for standing there watching him. About 10 breaths later, Jiang Lei slapped himself 3 times across the face, and the Zhao brothers copied him. And I made it worse on purpose. To kill one adult snowmane, you were about to pay a leg. If I handed you the hunting team today, in a week, I would be the only earth-digging man in this camp with all 4 limbs still attached. Another month of probation. Privately, I was satisfied, and I want to be clear about why. Their strength was fine. Their strength was never the problem. They had spent 6 months hunting behind me, and it had made them comfortable, and comfortable is what gets your leg taken off. That same night, I stacked posts in the dark and confirmed the thing I had been avoiding, 20,000 caddies, and the meat had stopped working. 13 to 15,000 in a single month, 15 to just over 20 across 5 more. And in the last 10 days, 1 or 200 caddies, nothing. Here is my theory, and I have never been able to test it properly. There is a burning feeling after you eat that never entirely goes away. The meat is blue, and what comes out of them is dark green. None of that is food. I think cold beast meat is poison, and I think the body builds up a tolerance to it, and I think the tolerance is the ceiling, which means the answer is either medium-grade beasts, which I have never seen and am not confident about surviving, or simply different low-grade beasts than the 3 we have been farming. There were 3 unseen species on Zhang Hao's scroll. I picked the cloud mist soaring dragon, and not for its meat. Its spinal sinew is the only material in this region that can string a real bow. 30 meters of it per beast, 10 longbows, because eventually every man in that hunting team is going to carry a broadsword and a bow, both 10-forged, and an arrow with 10,000 caddies behind it is not the same object as an arrow. The camp meat reserve reached 176,820 caddies. Nobody blinked. That is the part that got me. Nobody in the room reacted to the number at all. Daily consumption is 1,300 caddies, so that is 4 months of eating without a single hunt. My brother recited the entire ledger from memory. 140, logging at 5 caddies, 212 reserve at 2, 372 children at 5 a month, which averages 60 a day, plus the 6 of us. Even Zhang Lei looked impressed, and Zhang Lei has known him since he was a child with a stone axe. Our hunting capacity had outgrown our population, which is a sentence I would not have believed a year earlier. So my brother proposed putting everyone over 30 into the reserve as well. 200 more people, 300 or 400 extra caddies a day, which is nothing, he said, and he was right, and I approved it before he finished. Then I added the bigger one. Test the children, 6 to 13. I want to know the true minimum age at which a human body can absorb cold beast meat. Zhang Lei and Shugong, who both have children, went very still. My stated reason was the honest small one, which is that meat sitting in a warehouse is dead weight and only strength counts. The real reason is that I want to know what a person built entirely out of this stuff from the age of 6 looks like at 20, and there is only one way to find out, and it takes 14 years, and I intend to be here. Next on the list, absorb the last 2 camps, Chenya under Gao Li, Lu Shang under Fang Jun, about 500 people between them. Nobody doubted the answer. Warmth, food, safety, a meat ration, and a building with a roof. Once they merge, Daxia is close to 1,500 people. That is not far off a large camp. There has not been a large camp anywhere near Redwood Ridge in decades. Luoj, at its absolute peak, after 20 years under the strongest man the region ever produced, reached 13 or 1,400. 5 men turned around and looked at me at the same time, and I could see all of them doing the same arithmetic. A little over a year. I also made archery compulsory for every single person in Daxia camp, with Pan Shu as chief instructor. He invented practice bows out of wood and beast tendon for the ones who cannot draw a real one, and kept exactly 1 real bow in camp at all times for demonstration, and I have never seen a man take a job that seriously. Forging went to my brother, Zhang Lei and the Zhao brothers, partly because a 10-forged blade on the grinding stone takes 1 night and no skill at all, and partly because I was hunting for a natural forging talent among them. There was not one, not in any of the 5, and I made them a promise at the end of that month. Next month I am taking the 5 of you, and we are pushing our hunting range 500 meters deeper into Redwood Ridge. Half a month later, they killed an adult golden-eyed demon sheep without me, head-on, in the open, where the ground was too exposed for the 10 archers to get close enough to hit the golden eye. Shu Chang was so pleased he could barely stand still. So this one counts as the 5 of us killing it face to face, right? It does. The demon sheep is the strongest of the 3 low-grade species, and they took it in the open with no trick and no leader. I was not there. I had been going past the 500-meter line alone for days, looking at the inner ridge. And on the way home from that hunt, Zhang Lei peeled off north to look in on Chenya camp. It was his 4th trip in half a month, and he had not met a single Chenya man on any of them. A small camp's logging team goes out nearly every night. They have to. There is no version of a small camp where nobody goes outside for 2 weeks, and 2 ice fruit trees he had marked were still hanging full, exactly as he had left them. Either Chenya camp has moved, he told me, or Chenya camp is in trouble, and they have not moved. 3 possibilities. Their logging team was wiped out. Their settlement was found by cold beasts, or there is another Specter. He went up the mountain wall north of our valley to get a look, and what he found was none of the 3. On the north slope, 300 or 400 silver cold beasts asleep in a mass with their tails wound together, a meter of body, a barbed tail 2 or 3 meters long, a pointed head with 2 chisel-shaped front teeth, short thick limbs ending in claws like blades, tiny crimson eyes, a species nobody in this region has ever seen or named. He lay there and did not make one sound, and he told me afterward that the only reason he managed it was the discipline I had been drilling into all of them for a year, and I have decided to believe him. That is what happened to Chenya camp. They were 2 kilometers from my valley. 200 meters past the 500-meter line, on one of those solo nights, I found my second blue jade tree. That is my name for them. Blue trunk, leaves that feel warm when you touch them, which nothing else in this world does. Blue condensation grass only grows beside one, and blue condensation grass is the one ingredient in golden wound powder that cannot be substituted. The first tree gave us 47 plants, and we had spent every single one. Deeper in, there is more of everything. That is the rule of this place, and it is a very simple trade. I also saw a cloud mist soaring dragon for the first time. Not the animal, the mist. 50 or 60 meters of fog so thick that moonlight does not go into it, and the instant I saw it, my body wanted to eat it. Not metaphorically, I stood in the snow 200 meters away with my mouth watering, and that told me my poison theory was probably right, because a body that has hit its ceiling on one toxin will absolutely tell you when a different one walks past. Redwood Ridge, for scale, 3-meter trees on the rim, 20 meters and up 200 meters in. And from the top of every tree I have ever climbed, the view west is blocked by trees that are bigger still, and beyond those by trees bigger than those, going on for what I would guess is tens or hundreds of miles. The east side, where 9 human camps have spent 20 years drawing careful lines about who may pick which fruit, is a corner. It is not even a large corner. Back home I was still running passwords at the gate a full year on, which people had started to find funny. Caution is never wrong, and gate duty is rotated through the reserve on purpose because I want them practicing carefulness on the inside of a wall before they ever practice it on the outside. That habit did not save everybody. As the logging and gathering teams grew, we lost 7 dead and 11 missing. Every single one of those 18 was avoidable. Disturbing a beast that was asleep, wandering off, getting lost, falling out of a tree, falling into a snow pit. 5 days before this, I had lost my temper about it in public, punished the people responsible, and dressed down both captains in front of their own teams, which is why Sudong now runs gathering and Qian Min runs logging. And then Zhonglei came back and told me about the North Slope, and I stood up out of that beautiful carved chair. The word that arrived in my head was rat, and with it came the rest of the word: burrowing, gnawing, disease, and breeding. I went and looked myself in the last hour before dawn, because I do not take anyone else's eyes on a thing like that. 300 or 400 of them. What kind of world is this? It genuinely does not leave people a way to live. 15 frost wolves killed 40-odd of my people on an open march. 300 or 400 of anything ends Daxia camp. I named them long-tailed gnawing rats because somebody has to name things, and I am the one with the paper. Individually, I judge them weaker than a snowmane or a frost wolf. And I assumed there was a pack leader somewhere in that pile because the wolves had proved that these things have hierarchy, and hierarchy is the only thing that turns 400 animals into an army. 3 options: fight, no, run, 900 people, nowhere to go, in the open, with a burrowing enemy behind them, worse than staying, or lure them away. Which is brutally difficult because I did not know why they had gathered, what they could do, or what happens to a plan like that when it goes wrong at hour 2. Then 2 of them broke away from the pack and went toward Redwood Ridge on their own. Both my brother and Zhang Lei tried to take that job off me. Zhang Lei solved the argument by simply running out first, which I have never forgiven and always admired. He lit the torch at over 100 meters. I light them at 50 or 60. He doubled it out of pure caution, and the rats answered by chewing straight down into frozen black ground and disappearing body and 3-meter tail in a few breaths. That ground takes me an hour to open half a meter with an iron chisel. They did it with their teeth. 7 or 8 minutes later, Zhang Lei came running out of the trees with his left arm in ribbons and 3 claw tracks across his chest. They had tunneled 100 meters and come up through the inside of the tree he was standing in, silently, leaving a hole a meter wide where the heart of the trunk used to be. My rescue cut missed, and the barbed tail opened 4 or 5 wounds across my waist, and I was delighted about it. Because now I knew 2 things. They are fast, and they are not strong. A full lunge from one of those carries 6,000 or 7,000 caddies, which is nothing. Then a broadsword edge came away from one of them, bitten and curled over. Their front teeth are harder than iron. The rest of that fight is the only part I would show somebody if I had to explain what Daxia camp had become. Zhang Lei and I ended up back to back with 1 rat each. We looked at each other once. Neither of us said a word. We swapped. Mine went for where I had been. His went for where he had been. And both of them were extremely surprised. No matter how well animals coordinate, they cannot do that. 2 humans who have worked together for a year can do it with a glance. And then the last card, which nearly cost me a hand. At the moment it died, that rat's crimson eyes fired 2 beams of solid red light about an inch long, and the impact knocked a 20,000 caddy blade half a meter off its line. I split the webbing of my own hand, forcing the blade back on course, and broke its spine. Inch of light, I called it. Very short range, probably a death reflex. Summary: as I gave it to my men that night, teeth harder than iron, bones perfectly ordinary, a short-range light attack at the end. As long as the long-tailed gnawing rats do not gather in large numbers, they are not much of a threat. There were 380 of them asleep 2 kilometers from my valley while I said that. The second rat ran for the mountain wall at a speed no human being here can match, and Guo Lei had laid a white thread across its path, and it went over. Arrows finished it, and as it died, it threw its head back and called. We stripped that clearing, carcasses wrapped in hide, every single arrow drawn back out and collected on my brother's threads. Snow kicked over everything. 10 breaths later, a huge silver head came up through the ground. Its eyes were several times larger than the others. It sniffed the air, and it looked into Redwood Ridge, and then it sent 2 vibrations down through the earth. One went back to the north slope. The other one came after us. I put my ear to the ground, and the pack was 200 meters behind us and closing, not tracking the carcasses. I had buried and marked those properly. Their senses are simply that good. North was the Arrow Bamboo Forest, which is unknown ground, which in this world is exactly as fatal as the thing chasing you. So I went west, deeper in, and then I turned straight at the fog, because snakes and rats are natural enemies in every world I have ever lived in, and because if it worked, I intended to collect the sinew afterward. Preparation was 1 strip of hide per man, wetted with melted snow, over the mouth and nose. The cloud mist, soaring dragon's breath, is poison. A logging realm man dies in it. An earth-digging man behind a wet cloth gets about half an hour, and then hallucinations, and then he stops being awake, and then he stops. The dragon itself, 30 meters long, a body as thick through as a bucket, scales the size of an infant's fist, coiled around a central tree with its tail down in the snow. Its head is wider than its body, and it was resting it on a branch, and there were 2 swellings on its forehead where horns were trying to come out. That animal is still classified as low level. The rats stopped dead at the edge of the mist, exactly as I had hoped, and I allowed myself about 4 seconds of feeling clever. Then dawn started coming, and the wet cloths were timing out, and there was a crack of wood above us. 7 or 8 rats came out of the inside of the trunk we were perched in. They had faked the halt and sent a digging squad around. All 3 of us took wounds. A claw opened my face 3 or 4 inches. 8 rats closed in, 3 and 3 and 2, and then my brother looked up. 30 meters of cloud mist soaring dragon had come down the tree above us without one sound, and its head was hanging over the 3 of us with a tongue 4 or 5 meters long and mist pouring out of its nostrils. That is what being too clever gets you. We lived because the dragon was hungrier than it was curious. Its tail came down and put my brother and Jiang Lei both on the ground with something broken inside them. I got the blade into the path of it and opened a meter of that tail, which taught me the most valuable thing I learned that year. It hits with over 25,000 caddies, and its skin is completely ordinary. Iron cuts it. And then I watched the mist do to the gnawing rats what it had not done to us. They slowed. Their eyes went dull. They stopped tracking. And the dragon ate all 8 of them without hurrying. The poison that gives an earth-digging man half an hour behind a wet cloth takes a gnawing rat apart in under a minute. I filed that away, and then I ran south with 30 meters of angry snake behind me, straight over the top of the waiting pack, and the pack started to pull back. "Torches!" I shouted. "All of them. Now!" Every torch went up at once, and the dragon chasing me and 400 rats about to eat me all stopped at the same instant and forgot that human beings existed. I did not go back for the spoils. I am not that stupid, most nights. We came home poisoned, all 3 of us, faces flushed and pupils blown wide. Every blade we owned was notched and curled. Jiang Lei had bones sunk into his back. My face was open 3 or 4 inches. The women who dressed us cried while they worked, and somebody had to put a hand over a child's mouth. The yield from a gnawing rat is disappointing. 287 caddies of meat, 120 of bone, 20 of which is the 2 teeth, and fur softer and warmer than any other cold beast in this world, which is the kind of joke I have stopped finding funny. I expected panic when I told the camp. What I got was a cue. "Let us go out with you tonight. Let us fight that thing to the death." They knew exactly what that meant. Every single one of them had watched 3 earth-digging men come home in that condition. Feng Chen stepped out first, which meant something, because he is Luoge's and he is the man I dressed down in public. Then Song Lin. Then Zhao Kai and Liu Peng. Then the logging and gathering teams. Then the reserve. 7 months after the merger, there was not a seam left in that camp anywhere. Good. Daxia has no cowards. Then I told them the plan, which I had privately labeled the attempt of the week. We cannot fight 400 rats. We cannot run, because east is mountain, north is the pack, and south is tall mountain, and then ground nobody has walked, and moving 900 people cost 39 lives the last time we tried it in a quiet season. So we were going to lay a chain of torches from the north slope 700 meters west to Redwood Ridge, and another 1,000 meters into the trees, light all of them within moments of each other, and walk 400 gnawing rats into a cloud mist soaring dragon's living room. About 30 torches, 1 every 100 meters, 35 volunteers, the hunting team plus the logging team. First torch is the signal. Everyone runs the instant theirs is lit. And then I listed everything that could go wrong, out loud, because volunteers who have not heard the risks are not volunteers. Not every torch position can avoid a beast. 30 torches burning at once might mobilize every cold beast in the outer ridge. The rats might not all follow. And if they gathered on that slope for a reason, they will simply come back when the torches burn out. Nobody may return to camp before dawn, in case something followed them. Every one of the 35 said yes anyway. 2 kilometers north, under the mountain wall, 278 people had been sealed in a cave for 17 days. I did not know that at the time. I put it here because of what it does to the timing. Chenya camp. The rats slept on the roof of their cave every night and climbed the mountain by day. They vented their smoke deep into the rock and had never once dared to open a peephole. Their crystal fruit had run out 3 days earlier. They had eaten the leather, they had eaten the hay, they had eaten the tarpaulins. A woman was holding a child of 3 or 4 whose heart had stopped, and Gao Li, who was over 40 and therefore an old man in this world, had looked around at the adults in that cave and recognized the expression on their faces. His son said it out loud because somebody had to. Camp is going to start eating people soon, father. So he made the only decision left. He and his eldest would run north, loudly, as bait. His other son would take everyone south. At least if they fight, they die with some dignity. The last thing he thought before he opened that door was that he wished he had been born somewhere like Beishuo Town. Then the ground started shaking, and every rat on that slope was going west, toward a chain of small fires. Their column came apart anyway, because 3 rats surfaced in the middle of it. Gao Li and both his sons charged to buy time and were thrown 5 or 6 meters in about 3 seconds. The men who charged with them did not get up. There was a barbed tail an inch from Gao Li's eye, and he closed it, and he was satisfied because he had bought the column some distance. And then an arrow moved that beast 4 meters backwards. 6 young men in complete sets of clothes came out of the dark with broadswords on their hips and quivers on their backs, and every single survivor of Chenya camp thought the same word, Beishuo. Leader Chen, do not just stand there, get your people moving. Xia, Leader Xia, how can it be you? Both rats were dead in under 3 minutes. My brother's threads on the limbs, 5 blades sealing every gap, and then the word, and everybody cutting at once. I took the back of one skull off so completely that the only recognizable part left was the 2 front teeth. Of the 277 who came out of that cave, 65 did not reach my valley, 212 did, and exactly 3 minutes after the last torch burned out, the whole Silver Sea flowed back onto the north slope. Everything we risked bought us nothing at all. Gao Li told me why, and he was certain, because he had spent 17 days with his ear against that rock. There is something about 100 meters up the north slope that those rats want. I do not want it. Nobody wants it. What we have instead is a sword hanging over the valley, and every hunt and every log run and every gathering trip passes underneath it. Meanwhile, Shu Gong was telling Chenyu's survivors what Daxia had become, and Gao Li, who had eaten a tarpaulin that week, could not make himself believe the meat ration. It does not have to be 100% true, he said. Half, no. If a tenth of it is true, I would be satisfied. 212 starving people walked into that valley, and the first thing that happened to them was that they got warm. Then they saw the timber. Mountains of golden jinlin stacked with men sawing planks off it. Then they smelled the crystal fruit from 30 meters out. Then a man walked past them carrying several hundred caddies of blue meat out of a warehouse like it was firewood. And then they saw the house, 200 meters long, 15 meters tall, 6-meter walls, iron at every joint, 5-meter iron-bound doors, a hide roof, 40 or 50 logging realm men hauling timber, 4 bonfires with women curing whole hides at them, and children under 10 sitting around eating cold beast meat and hitting each other with little wooden weapons. We have not fallen into heaven, have we? Redwood Ridge has a place like this? More than half of them cried, and then the fear came back, which is the thing about starving people that nobody warns you about. They had just seen everything they had ever wanted, which meant they now had something to lose. Will Daxia really keep us? And the man who answered them was Shi Ping, who is younger than Gao Li's sons, standing there in a full suit of clothes. Our leader said he would take you in, so he is not going to go back on it. We are all one family. Come with me and get registered first. 37 under 6 at 5 caddies a month, mashed with fruit as weaning food. 172 into the reserve at 1 caddy a day. And Gao Li and both his sons, all 3 logging realm, into the gathering team at 5 caddies a day. Later I saw 2 former camp leaders, Old Pan and Old Gao, sitting by the stove laughing at each other about a boy who had just outranked both of them. I still could not solve the rats. We cannot fight them, and we cannot run from them. So do we just sit here and wait? While I was failing to answer that, my long fist got to the point where I add 30% over base, which put me over 26,000 caddies, and the outer wall of that hut shook when I worked. And in the corner of the same hut, 100 small children were copying the form badly and arguing about it. Luo An, who is Zhang Lei's boy, and Feng Hao, who is Feng Chen's, neither of them 6 years old yet, going at each other about which of them was going to be stronger. The age test came back that week, incidentally. 6 is the floor. Below 6, a human body cannot take cold beast meat at all. So everybody over 6 went into the reserve, and everybody under 6 got 5 caddies a month mashed into fruit. Those children had grown visibly in a matter of months, taller, thicker through the chest, like calves. And I stood there watching 2 5-year-olds argue about strength and let myself think about the long version. If they start at 6, they will pass their parents, and their children start earlier still and start bigger. Give it enough generations, and being a descendant of Daxia is a physical fact. Bodies that outclass every other human in this world. Bodies that a cold beast has to think about. Bodies that do not have to be afraid of a specter. Then I laughed at myself because I was standing in a valley with a rat problem I could not solve, planning 4 generations ahead. I also stacked posts that night and got 20,400, 200 caddies in one go after eating gnawing rat. New species. That is the whole answer. It was always going to be new species. We moved into the house. The doors are 5 meters tall, iron-bound, with latches that seat into the floor. No matter how hard a thing outside hits them, they do not come apart. I have since tested that claim in a way I did not choose. Ground floor. 360 rooms of 10 meters each in 4-quartered zones, every door with a number plate on it, and a 50-meter hall in the middle. The furnace hangs on a chain and a shaft running up through all 3 floors, so it can be raised or lowered between them. That was Wan Li's own idea, and then he improved it in a way I would never have thought of, by hooking the whole assembly into the cast iron roof beams so that adding weight to the furnace stiffens the entire building. The man taught himself structural engineering in a cave. 2nd floor, the meeting hall, the blacksmith shop, the training ground, the medicine room, the craftsman workshop, the camp supply office, the warehouse, 280 rooms, and firing windows every 10 meters on all 4 sides. 3rd floor, 100 rooms of 20 meters, a 3-meter gallery running around the outside, and a 30-meter suite that I did not ask for. 100 square meter hall lit by 24 iron fire basins, carved screens, a 2-meter bed, a bathing tub, a recliner, cabinets, smoke pipes, and 17 chairs. Mine at the north end, and 8 down each side. I objected to the iron. Wan Li had an answer ready, which was that all 37 caddies of it came out of the offcuts pile, and my brother took the blame again before I could get going properly. Capacity, 5,000 people comfortably, 40 or 50,000 if we ever have to pack them in. Then I changed how the camp works, and this is the part people underestimate. Everyone at Logging Realm and above now keeps a private balance of contribution points. Below Logging Realm, you keep your free ration, and you are simply not eligible to buy anything, which is harsh and which is the point. You earn 1 point for going out at night. 2,000 caddies of Jinlin is a point, 4,000 of Jushuang is a point, 50 caddies of fruit is a point, a blue condensation grass is 10, a newly found ice fruit tree is 2, a newly found blue jade tree is 100. You spend them on cold beast meat at 2 caddies a point, which makes meat the currency underneath the currency. Velvet hide at 20 a meter, 2nd layer at 10, 3rd at 5. A full suit of clothes costs 80 in materials and 75 in workmanship, so 155, which is about 2 months of saving. Prices float with what the warehouse actually holds. Here is the design. An ordinary Logging Realm man clears 3 or 4 points a night, which buys 6 to 8 caddies of meat, which is more than the flat ration he used to get. So every single person in that hall went home better off, and cheered, and thanked me, and what I had actually just done was create a class of people who own things, in a camp where nobody had ever owned anything. Housing runs on the same logic. Families first. Any household with 1 point earner in it moves to the 2nd floor, and their relatives may use whatever the earner buys. Single people are bunked 10 to a room, 2nd floor if they earn, and ground floor if they do not. Hunting team takes the 3rd, and the real reason for all of it, which I did say out loud, because I wanted them thinking about it. There are about 300 women in a camp of 1,096 people. That ratio is not survivable over a generation. Lu Shang is the last camp left on Redwood Ridge to absorb. After that, the only way Daxia grows is births. You could watch the single men and women in that hall start doing arithmetic. Census. The week we moved in, 1,096 people, 642 adults, 322 age 6 to 15, 132 under 6. 182 households housed, and 52 orphans under 6 placed with Logging Realm families for adoption, which took 1 afternoon and no arguing at all. Then I went down to the blacksmith shop and built something ridiculous. A 2-meter double-bladed axe, 10 forging patterns, 2,800 caddies. Startling cold is 1.5 meters and 620 caddies, and for the thing I was planning it is a toy. A cloud mist soaring dragon is 30 meters long, moves through the treetops faster than you can turn around, has enormous vitality, and gives you half an hour before the poison closes your eyes for good. So the kill has to be fast, and it has to be enormous. The rule I worked out from that, which I have used ever since, your weapon should weigh about 1/10 of your base strength. Songlin asked if he could try it. He picked it up, stumbled, and then swung it 12 times. You cannot swing that axe 12 times under 10,000 caddies. The 7th earth-digging man in Daxia camp is Songlin, who was a loud kid with 3,000 caddies and a dead father 1.5 years ago, and who beat every Luog veteran to it with no inheritance and no head start. When you pass 25,000, I told him, this axe is yours. and I threw him startling cold to carry in the meantime, and he tried to give it back on the grounds that his leader should not be walking around with an unfamiliar weapon. Down in the mine, the earth-digging men had started gossiping like householders, whose wife wanted ready-made clothes instead of hides. Whether a wooden bed at 25 points was worth it. Whether the full furniture set at 75 was a scam. Zhonglei was being nagged into buying his wife a suit and was pretending to be annoyed about it. I laughed all the way back up the shaft. Then I made a chisel tipped with gnawing rat teeth, and it cracked ore loose in about 100 strikes. 400 caddies of iron a day per man, or 800 of coal. It had been 100 and 200. 1 dead rat, 4 teeth, 1 chisel. We had 2 rats. That is when I started raiding the north slope for strays on purpose. The cloud mist soaring dragon hunt happened because 3 separate things pointed at it. My meat ceiling, my brother and Zhonglei starting to show the same slowdown, and the fact that the dragon is the one thing on this ridge the gnawing rats are afraid of. I drilled with that axe in front of the whole camp before we went, because a 2,800 caddy weapon that you have not learned is a way of killing yourself in front of your friends. Split, chop, sweep, smash, and up. It blew the snow bare for 5 meters in every direction and left a half-meter trench in the ground. The camp decided I was a god again. The actual explanation is that the long fist adapts to any weapon you put in it, and that I messed around with a lot of things in a previous life while I still had hands that worked. The hunting team's contribution scale went up on the wall that week. 2 points for going out, 200 for a gnawing rat, 240 for a frost wolf, 280 for a snow mane, 350 for a demon sheep, 380 for a cloud mist soaring dragon. I want to be honest about what that scale is since I designed it. A single beast is worth over 500 points in meat alone, so the hunting team hands the camp a large surplus on every kill and gets paid a fraction of it back. That is a tax. It is a public tax on the strongest men in camp, and I wrote it, and I have never taken 1 point from a joint hunt myself. I probed Zhonglei about it once, carefully, expecting resentment. He was offended on my behalf. If we calculate everything to the last point and think only about ourselves, are we still people of Daxia? 35-meter dragon, 3 trees, 7 men, a 20-minute limit on the wet cloths, and the antidote we did not have yet. Climbing, my hand went into something warm and thick on the bark, and the second I smelled it, every trace of poison sickness in my body switched off. Dragon saliva, the antidote to its own poison, sitting on the tree in plain sight. I had about 1 second to enjoy that discovery, and then I looked up. Its eyes were open, and it had spread itself silently across all 3 of the trees we were standing in. Attack, it found us a long time ago. It broke 4 6-meter trees at once, which is the moment the axe justified its existence. 1 overhead blow took 7 or 8 meters of tail off. The second cut the dragon into 3 pieces, and Song Lin, who was too eager and too close, took a beam of green straight across the back. His clothes burned through, the skin under them started going bad and spreading fast, and it took 5 earth-digging men to hold him down. I ran back up the tree, scraped that saliva off the bark with both hands, and put it on him. A cold beast's saliva is the antidote to a cold beast's poison. Write that on a wall somewhere. Afterward, we could not work out how it had known. Too cold for scent, no heat signature to read. And we had made no noise at all, because I had spent a year making noise a punishable offense. My brother and Zhonglei got there at the same moment, from opposite ends of the argument. The tail. Both dragons we had ever seen had their tails buried in the snow. It does not hear you, it feels you, through the ground, with its tail. I had that tested and written down, because I had started keeping a book. The Great Xia Cold Beast Chronicle. 7 species so far. Snowmane, Frostwolf, Demon Sheep, Gnawing Rat, Soaring Flood Dragon, Thunder Quay, and Blue Moon Spirit, with habits, attacks, and weak points. Almost every death we have ever taken out there came from meeting something we did not know. Previous generations plant the trees, the next ones sit in the shade. I did not invent that saying, and I have never found a better argument for paperwork. The saliva cost 50 coal to identify, which is 1,000 caddies, and I paid it anyway. It is an alchemy ingredient. It heals dragon toxin wounds. And breathed in, it only reduces the mist. It does not clear it. 40-odd materials in that pot by then, and still exactly 1 recipe. I finally worked out why, and it was not the pot's fault. Nobody in Daxia camp knows anything about medicine. The pot generates from what it has recorded, and we have been feeding it at random because none of us has the faintest idea what we are looking for. The dragon's poison sac is a fist of flesh out of the throat with a white bead inside it that visibly breathes. I found out what it does by accident when the pouch on my belt started smoking near the furnace. High temperature sets it off. I laughed out loud in a corridor for about a minute, alone, and several people asked me later if I was all right, because I had 400 gnawing rats sitting on a hill, and I had just found out that I could deliver poison gas anywhere I could put a fire. Zhang shot my plan down before I finished explaining it, and he was right too. They charged straight through poison mist to get at us last time. The toxin does not kill them, it slows them. My brother got the rest of it. So you weaken 400 rats, and then you kill 400 rats. Every man in that room told me that was impossible even with the entire camp. They were correct with the equipment we had, so I changed the equipment. An iron fetal bow that draws 5,000 caddies needs 350 caddies of ore, plus 50 arrows at 5 caddies each, 600 caddies for one man, fully kitted. 100 men is 60,000 caddies of ore. That is a month and a half of mining before anybody lights a forge. Which is why we spent that month and a half doing 3 things at once. Raiding the north slope for stray rats, because 4 teeth make 1 chisel, and 1 chisel quadruples a man's mining. Hunting soaring flood dragons for their spinal tendon, because 38 meters of it makes 19 bowstrings and nothing else in this region will hold a real bow together. We killed 7, and teaching other people to forge. My brother, Zhang and Shu Gong learned it. I did 3 bow bodies a night alone. Wan Li strung and tested every one of them. Meanwhile, my brother, without asking me, invented a 10-day archery competition with point prizes, 10 for the top 3, 5 for 4th through 10th, scored only on bullseyes at 50, 100 and 200 meters, graded into 3 classes. The entire camp went insane. People were shooting at targets in the corridors. I demonstrated once, on a wooden dummy that I had ordered to become a frost wolf and charge me from 200 meters. 10 arrows in 10 breaths everyone placed, 2 of them through the eyes hard enough to snap the head back. Nobody said anything for a while after that. 20-odd days. The 7 earth-digging men slept 1 or 2 hours a day, mining and forging in shifts, and by the end of it we had 96 iron fetal bows. There had been 11 bows in the entire history of this region. 3,000 iron arrows, plus 3 oversized bows built in one night for the Zhao brothers, who are freaks. Logging realm went from 140 to 212, partly because I made a rule that only logging realm men may touch a bow, which turned out to be worth more than the meat ration. And then the gathering team brought me a fruit off a tree species none of us had ever seen, and it smelled exactly like dragon saliva. I put it in the pot, elementary antidote pill, 20 to 25 a batch. We made 10 batches, 2 pills per man, complete immunity to soaring flood dragon poison. Without that fruit there is no plan. There is just 100 men standing in a fog dying politely. The clock was running the whole time. The rat pack moved south twice more, 400 meters and change, until they were sitting just over a kilometer from my valley. And then my brother came back from a scouting run and told me he had counted 40 or 50 pups. They had been on that slope a month and they had already started breeding. I know what rodents do with a month. Anyone who has ever kept a granary knows what rodents do with a month. So I told my men the actual objective because they had all been assuming something more heroic. This was never extermination. This is eviction. East into the deep mountains would be ideal. North is acceptable. South, which is my valley, and west, which is my hunting ground, get sealed. 96 archers picked by open trial out of 212. The rest were turned away, and they argued with me about it, and I did not move, because a logging realm man without a bow in that fight is not a soldier. He is a delivery of meat. One of them said, to my face, whoever is afraid, let me take his place. And another one said, a good thing like dying for the leader would never have come round to your turn anyway. That is the tone of the camp I built. I do not always know how to feel about it. We opened with 3 poison sacks wrapped in blue meat, fired as incendiary arrows. An iron fetal bow generates enough heat off the string to light them. Each arrow killed a rat and set off a poison sac in a different third of the pack, and the rats did not break. They charged into the arrows. 400 animals ran uphill into 96 bows and did not slow down, and about a third of them were already choking. So I took the archers forward off the slope, which every instinct says is wrong, to buy range and to stop the line from folding. And then I went in alone, with a new weapon, a Yi Dao, 1.7 meters, an inch wide, a formation-breaking blade from an army that existed on a planet none of these people will ever hear about. I picked it specifically because gnawing rats are small and fast and long-tailed, and a 2,800 caddy axe against a target the size of a dog is a way of making craters. That blade takes tails off, it halves bodies, it goes through the necks without stopping. About 70 killed and over 100 crippled, which is a quarter of the pack, and then they ran west, into my brother and Jiang Lei and more poison sac arrows, then north, and I pushed them nearly 2 kilometers all the way to the edge of the arrow bamboo forest, and Shu Gang ended the argument with one arrow that killed the lead rat at 100 meters and broke the whole herd. That is when the ground under my foot lit up. A beam of red came up through the snow and went through the sole of my boot and out the top. And Zhang Lei shoved me sideways and took the second one through the shoulder. That beam went on through 7 or 8 men behind us and killed 2 of them. It hunts by hearing, so I froze the entire company with one order, 100 people standing absolutely still in the open, and made myself the only moving thing on that field. Then I climbed 20 meters up a tree because the beam's range is about 20 meters and let it tunnel up the trunk after me. At 5 or 6 meters, I put the Yidao through the wood to the hilt, and the Zhao brothers put 9 arrows into the same spot. The tree came apart, and out of it came something 4 meters long with a tail 7 or 8 meters behind it, and its fur was turning gold. The Rat King. I read it in about 2 seconds, and the read is the only reason I am alive. It hid. It ambushed from underground. It hesitated before showing itself. That thing is cautious to the point of cowardice. So I did not fight it. I had 100 bows raised, and I did not give the order to fire, and I stood there with a hole in my foot and let it look at 96 drawn strings. It backed down. And then the pack came pouring back out of the arrow bamboo forest, which was not part of the plan, because something had driven them out. 15 young men walked out of that bamboo in complete sets of clothes with powerful bows in their hands, every single one of them at earth-digging realm, every single one of them my age or my brother's. The Rat King took about 200 survivors east into the mountains, and I have not seen it since. The man in front introduced himself as Liang Rui of Jingxian Camp, and the next 4 minutes rearranged my understanding of the world for the second time. He mentioned Old Lu casually, which told me Lu Sheng Camp had already merged into them, which meant Redwood Ridge had no camps left to absorb. He mentioned Beehive the way you mention a town you buy things from, and he described an earth-digging realm camp leader as truly weak, which told me there were cold-resistant realm people above him. Then he claimed the arrow bamboo forest and demanded all 80 of our rat carcasses as an apology, and when I did not respond, generously came down to half. I put an arrow into the ground between his feet. Get lost. 100 bows came up behind me. He took 4 or 5 corpses on his way past, which I allowed, and said the traditional thing. Jingxian Camp will remember this. I did not unclench for a full minute after they were out of sight. I kept my ruined foot behind my other leg the entire time, and I made sure every recoverable arrow was collected before we left that field, because 3,000 arrows is a month and a half of my life. 83 carcasses, 2 dead, 8 badly hurt, around 2,100 arrows recovered, and Liang Rui's men followed us home at a distance, and Jingxian Camp concluded from what they saw that Daxia must be a large camp with a cold-resistant expert hidden in it. Their report on that subject went to somebody they called their lord. On the night we came home from that field, Kang Ji's wife had a baby, Kang Tao, the first child born in Daxia Camp since I arrived in this body. They asked me to name him, which is apparently a thing a leader does, and I did it badly, and everybody pretended otherwise. And standing in a corridor holding somebody else's son, I finally understood the arithmetic I had been avoiding. Lu Shang is gone into Jingxian, Chenye is absorbed. There is nothing left on Redwood Ridge to merge. From here, Daxia grows one way. People have to want to build families in it. So I did the only thing I know how to do with the problem, which is to write rules about it. I also founded a calendar that week. That sounds like vanity. It is the opposite of vanity. A calendar is where civilization starts. You cannot plan a harvest without one. You cannot say the beasts come at this time of year without one. You cannot tell somebody in 50 years what happened here. Day 1, month 1, year 1 of Daxia. I gave it to Kang Ji to keep, along with the job of recording the plant cycles, the beast cycles, the weather, and every major decision and incident this camp ever has. He asked me why it mattered. Geese leave a call behind them. People leave a name. And if Daxia is unlucky, and one day there is nothing left of us, then at least there will be a few words somewhere in this world saying that we were here and what we tried. Then the Rat King's blood taught me the thing that changed everything. I had some on my hand from that tree. It is red, not dark green. Red. Mid-level cold beast blood is red, and it burns like the concentrated version of everything eating their meat has ever done to me. I put the burned finger into a beam of daylight through a window to cool it because I was not thinking clearly. The wound closed and came back better than it had been. That is the cold-resistant realm. You use mid-level cold beast blood to reforge your own skin, and what you get in exchange is the ability to stand in the sun. Nobody on Redwood Ridge had known that in 20 years. Zhang Hao did not know it. Zhang Bo did not know it. I found it because I burned my finger and then held it in the light. No arrow bamboo run. No hat-in-hand trip to Beehive. The economy matured on its own after that. Weapons went on to a rental scheme, 10 points a month for a 5-stone bow and 50 for a 10-stone, or 802,000 to own one outright. Jiang Lei, who had taken a light beam through the shoulder that was meant for me, got 1,000 points, a 10-stone bow, and 1,000 caddies of ore. And the kill tally from the North Slope, which I read once and did not post on any wall. 96 archers killed 51 rats between them. I killed 32 by myself. That number is not a boast. That number is a structural problem, and I knew it while I was reading it. Then a man called Zhou Hao came back. He had been missing from the gathering team for months. He gave the correct password at the gate. He was begging for help, and he went up like a torch the moment he crossed the line, because I have had fire condensing oil painted around the entire perimeter of that valley and reapplied every single day for a year. He was almost certainly not aware of what he was. So there is something out there stronger and quieter than the wood puppet ghost. It knows exactly where my valley is, and it has been watching us long enough to send a familiar face. Everybody expected me to lock the camp down. I refused. If it likes watching us, let it watch. Pretend it does not exist. Because a siege of attrition against a thing that does not eat and does not sleep and does not get bored is a game I lose in about 4 months. New standing orders instead. Oil and a torch on every person who leaves. 10 to a group for gathering and logging. 3 for hunting. Password changed daily, and that perimeter oiled and re-oiled forever. Stock in the warehouse at the time, 5,192 torches, 1,210 pieces of fire-condensing oil, 10 wood makes a torch, 100 wood makes an oil. I had been burning a forest for 2 years and stockpiling every drop of it, and now I know why the reflex was worth having. Fear does remarkable things to cultivation speed. Within days of Joe Howe burning at my gate, every single member of the hunting team broke through to earth digging, all 15 of them. Logging realm passed 283, and I hit 30,000 caddies, which is the earth digging ceiling, the top of the realm, the number Jung Hao spent his life underneath. So we went deeper, past 1,300 meters, where the trees are 20 meters thick and an ice fruit tree measures 17 or 18 across and carries 10 or 20,000 caddies of fruit over a golden swamp of rotted fruit going back who knows how long. We killed a blue moon spirit which is a meter long, whiter than snow, and the fastest thing I have ever tried to hit. Its legs explode with about 5 times its own strength. And then we found an intermediate long-tongued snow mane, 7 meters long, 3 meters at the shoulder, a purple-black mane, tusks 2 meters long, hundreds of frost-covered spikes down its back, 3 times my strength. We deepened a natural trench by 2 meters, put 3 bear traps in it, lit a torch, and set 16 10-stone bows around it. I took its right eye with a silent shot at the opening. It put a tusk through my chest. I got hold of the arrow shaft and pulled the eye out of its head, and it sprayed red across my face and shoulders and burned my skin raw everywhere it touched, which is exactly the material I had been trying to work out how to collect. Its tongue was no longer a weakness. Arrows come straight off it. It took me most of that fight to notice that the tongue only goes soft when it bends, and that the bend is the shot. I let it ram me so I could plant the Yidao 1.5 meters into its cheek, and then let it in a full circle back into its own trench. We finished it with ropes reinforced with my brother's white thread, hooked to a dozen 10-meter trees so that every lunge it made had to break a forest first, then 100 more arrows into the head. I set the contribution value of 1 intermediate cold beast at 10,000 points, and nobody argued. Its last card was to play dead, and then fire the hundreds of spikes off its own back like javelins. Ye Fei and Feng Chen went down badly. My shoulder opened again. It ran 3 kilometers deeper, and we followed it, 4 or 5 kilometers into Redwood Ridge, which is further than any human being from this region has ever gone. Out there, the trees are past 20 meters. To the north lies a mist field 500 or 600 meters across, which means a soaring flood dragon of a size I do not want to describe. And to the south on one enormous tree, dozens of intermediate-sized beasts were coiled together, which implies something above them. We killed the snowmane with arrows the Zhao brothers went back for, and its blood scalded every part of me, and at 30,000 caddies I could survive it, and my skin and my strength both improved while I stood there taking it. That is the entire secret of the cold-resistant realm. Get strong enough to endure being burned, then get burned on purpose, repeatedly, for a long time. On the way back out, we found Jingxian camp again, working. They had an intermediate golden-eyed demon sheep on the ground, 9 meters long, 16 pairs of golden eyes the size of lanterns, every one of them throwing light, and their leader was a young man in black with a broadsword 1.5 meters long, who drove that sword 0.5 meter into an intermediate neck, which is 40,000 caddies, which is more than I have. Duyan, my brother's age, his 20-odd men fought with no fear of death whatsoever, not bravery, absence, men with broken limbs standing back up and walking in again, like the arm was a minor administrative issue. I demanded the beast. All of it. He countered with half of what was in it, and then he beat me in the conversation, which does not happen often. He did it by being pleasant and telling me the truth. Jingxian camp has over 10,000 people, hundreds of earth-digging men, and 2 cold-resistant realm powerhouses, the leader Liang Tian and the second leader Du Lei, who is his father, and then quietly that the camp has 2 factions, and that if I killed him, I would be removing the moderate one. I took 30 caddies of blood and told him that if Jingxian crossed into Redwood Ridge again, there would be no mercy. He had a second kill hidden behind a tree the entire time we were talking. I want to describe their home, because it has stayed with me. a basin north of the Arrow bamboo forest with bamboo walls, 40 houses, and a tower 20 meters tall built of white spiked bamboo, heated by an iron pillar 3 meters through. Their leader never comes out. He speaks from behind a partition. Nobody in that camp of 10,000 people has seen his face in years, and more than half of Jingxian camp has worshipped something they call the mirror immortal, and the ones who have are the ones who do not fear death. And people in that camp who unmistakably die come back alive, memories intact, cultivation intact, changed in exactly one way, which is that their temper turns vicious. Liang Rui, who demanded my rat carcasses, had died once already. So had his brother. Duyan's father carries a jade that detects specters. He has pointed it at Liang Tian for years, and it has never once reacted, and Liang Tian's manner has never changed, so the old man will not accept what is in front of him. His son will. His son said it out loud to his father in their own house. That mirror immortal is connected to specters. Worship is still voluntary over there. That is the part that stayed with me. It is voluntary right up until the moment everyone else in a 10,000 person camp has done it, and then the last few holdouts do not get a vote. And their leader had already given a standing order about us, which I learned much later. Bring all of Daxia into Jingxian, by persuasion or by killing. Liang Rui to attempt the second, Duyan the first, in open competition with each other. I went home and got into a tub, 100 caddies of intermediate cold beast blood in a 2-meter tub, and I climbed into it deliberately, having already learned exactly what a splash of the stuff does. The pain does not add up with volume, it multiplies. 2 days. My brother stood outside that door for 2 days, and nobody could make him leave. Somewhere in the middle of it, the window in my head did something it had never done before. It detected that my nervous system had reached its carrying limit, and it offered to spend camp resources to offset the neural pressure. It burned about 100,000 wood, 5,000 iron, 8,000 coal, down to wood 21, coal 0, iron 0, 2 years of 1,000 people cutting trees, and a mine and my own back spent in 2 days to keep one man breathing. I came out of that tub and read the new line under my name, Earth Digging Realm Perfection, Skin Remodeling Progress, 2%, 2, which means the full distance is over 5,000 caddies of intermediate cold beast blood, 80 to 100 intermediate cold beasts. I had killed one, and it had put a tusk through my chest and taken 16 bows and a trench and a forest to finish. I did get one thing out of it immediately. I walked to a window on the 3rd floor at midday and stood in the open sunlight, and men standing at the edge of that same beam had blue fingers within seconds. My skin had gone finer. It had a shine on it that I did not enjoy looking at. I was 2% of the way to something, and I could already stand in the thing that kills everybody. So I went hunting for 80 more of those animals, and I did it alone because nobody else in Daxia could survive being near one. 32 intermediate cold beasts in 8 days, 70% skin remodeling, 120,000 caddies of blood. I scouted south past our old earth slope in the gaps and put 2 more names on Zhanghao's map. The Ying River, and a pass through the hills I called Xingu, and 5 small hills on the north bank, arranged in a way that made me think of a hand, with what looked very much like human camps hidden in them. I made a note. I did not have time, because while I was out there getting burned on purpose, Jingxian camp's leader called a council. Liang Tian, still behind his partition, still a voice. Somebody in that room questioned the plan, and he flicked a bamboo leaf and took the man's ear off from behind a screen, without being seen. The order was a siege of Daxia Valley in 10 days, with all 271 of his earth-digging men, and it specifically excluded Du Lei and the 43 men who had never worshipped the mirror immortal. Father and son sat with that afterward and reached the same conclusion. He was not leaving them behind because they were unreliable. He did not want them to see something. And at home, my brother noticed that every low-level cold beast on the outskirts of Redwood Ridge had gone, not fewer, gone. 2 years of a hunting ground, and suddenly there was nothing in it. He remembered the demon sheep that had been driven at our cave 2 years ago by a specter that did not want to show its face, so he worked it out on his own, correctly, with no help from me, and I want that in the record because of what he did with it. Something was gathering the cold beasts, and something was going to walk them into this valley. He did not come and get me. I had just gone into seclusion with 1,850 caddies of blood to finish the breakthrough, and he decided that interrupting that was worse than handling it himself. So he ordered every earth-digging man in Daxia into the mine to dig iron flat out, and put 15 men in the blacksmith shop, and started reinforcing a building, and he told nobody why. Here's what my brother did with 3 days and a camp that did not know what was happening. He put every earth-digging man underground and told them to mine as if their families depended on it, which they did. Shiping shut down the speculation in the mine with one line, which I would have been proud of if I had been awake to hear it. Instead of standing here guessing, dig more iron. And when Wei Ming came down to say that the 100,000 caddy iron reserve in the camp supply office had already been used up and that the hunting team was coming down to mine as well, the whole shaft went quiet. 100,000 caddies, gone, in 2 days, into what? Then the order came down that stopped all outside activity completely, not even the 500-meter outskirts. 15 men in the blacksmith shop and everybody else in the mine, and the forging never stopped, day or night. You cannot hide that from 4,000 people. Song Mei and Manhwa talked about it while stacking logs, the way people do, the way I have never been able to. Nobody had been home in 2 days. Their husbands would not say a word. Wan Li had been installing iron blocks and thick chains at the 4 corners of the building and had replaced the main door with a bigger one. They guessed an advanced cold beast. They guessed the rats had come back. Only a handful of people knew that every low-level beast on the outskirts had vanished, and those people worked out the real answer and then very deliberately said nothing at all. 3 days of forging produced 49 10-stone iron fetal bows, 52 large sabers, iron arrows in batches, and a great deal of reinforcement. One of those bows was larger than the others, and its string was not quite transparent. There was white in it. My brother and Song Lin spent those 3 days working on a single long narrow billet that nobody could identify. The defenses, the timber from both sides of the valley stacked into a wall around the building, 100 meters thick and over 10 meters high, crossed diagonally, with specially made iron spikes set into the outer face and across the roof, and over the whole outside of it, a layer of soaring flood dragon skin. The valley left one gap, wide enough for one man, that could be closed in seconds. "Do our best," my brother said when Shiping asked him whether it would be enough. "The rest is up to fate." He was quoting me. I say that a lot. I had never once heard it said back to me. The marking stone caught it first. That is the diamond of jade in the middle of the 3rd floor training ground, half a meter tall, with a mirror surface that shows every foreign life inside 1 kilometer of camp as a red point of light. I had bought it and installed it and mostly forgotten about it, and my brother had put a man on it full time, which was not my idea. Deputy Warden Qin Ming had been staring at that stone for days. He had wanted to be cultivating. He had been given a rock to watch, 1 red dot on the western edge, then 30. Then hundreds, and they started wrapping around toward the east. My brother came up the stairs, looked at it, and gave 4 orders in about 12 seconds. Wake everyone. Get everybody in from the mine. Children to the 2nd floor hall. Song Mei and Manhwa in charge. Shiping to hoist the furnace to the 3rd floor and light an ordinary coal fire beside it for heat, and to be ready to put the furnace out on command. Every earth-digging man to take a bow, arrows, a saber, and a piece of fire-condensing oil and get to the 3rd floor. Every logging realm man to take a 5-stone bow and a piece of oil and go to the 1st floor under Wan Li. Then he turned around and looked at the door of my room and took 2 steps toward it and stopped and set his teeth and went downstairs instead. The ground had started to shake. It was still daylight. A cold beast tide in the middle of the day, which is when they are strongest and when no human being alive can go outside. The daylight gear, which they had tested in advance because my brother tests things. Skin gloves, a hood over the whole face with the eyes out, a fur hat, and over the eyes a cloth woven from white silk thread. 10 minutes. That was the tested limit outside in daylight. 10 minutes, then rotate to the furnace and thaw. 67 earth-digging men split into 2. My brother's group out on the 3rd floor gallery, Zhang Lei's group shooting from the shadows inside. Then he opened the door. The first thing through the valley mouth was a hole 3 or 4 meters wide, and everything we had piled there for 2 years came in on top of the snow like a flood. A snowmane put its head through it and looked up at the 3rd floor and saw people, and its pupils contracted, and it screamed, and then 5 or 6 more impacts took the whole 50-meter entrance out at once. About 100 snowmanes and 100 golden-eyed demon sheep on the west, 3 to 5 meters each. Frost wolves going up the north and south walls of the valley, hand over hand, to come at the building from the sides, and soaring flood dragons dropping in over the top where the 2 mountains cross, down the rock into the east end, behind the building. 4 directions, coordinated, timed. "How many are there?" Song Lin said. 300, 400, 500, as it turned out, and I want to be precise about what my brother did with them. The first snowmane rammed the wooden wall, and the wall held, and then it rammed it again, and the wall started cutting it. 100 meters of cross timber with iron spikes through it does not break, it grinds. Dozens of iron arrows came off that gallery with over 10,000 caddies behind each of them and went most of the way through a low-level cold beast. The camp cheered. Somebody shouted that this counted as hunting. My brother did not cheer because he could hear the despair underneath it and because the wall was already losing. Then the demon sheep arrived, and a demon sheep has 6 horns and a charge, and 100 meters of cross timber came down in under 100 breaths. And the beasts had learned something. They came in with their heads down, which means the fatal points, the snowmane's eyes and belly, the golden eye on a demon sheep's back, cannot be reached from above. 67 men on a high platform with the best bows this region has ever produced, and the animals had solved them by looking at the floor. The soaring flood dragon's skin paid for itself. Everything that had rammed that wall started slipping. Legs went out. A dozen cold beasts flopped down in front of the doors, thrashing, trying to stand, unable to. Contact poison, on a wall, in a layer, applied a week earlier by a 16-year-old with a plan. Then Shugang lit a white bead on an arrow and put it into the middle of the pack, and half the valley went white with poison mist, and every man on that gallery had already swallowed his antidote pill. 10 minutes ran out. Ice was forming on their clothes. Their aim was falling apart. Song Lin, who was the 7th man in Daxia ever to reach earth digging, was shaking so hard he could not hold a draw. Chuan, go and wake the leader. We cannot hold them. And every man on that gallery stopped shooting and looked at him. My brother turned around. My door was directly across the corridor from where he was standing. He looked at it for about 1 second. Big brother is in the middle of a breakthrough. We handle this ourselves. Then the poison mist thinned, and the ones at the back walked over the ones at the front, and it stopped working. The corridor ends came in first, 4 holes, 3 or 4 meters across, at the 4 corners of the 2nd floor. Frost wolves inside the building, a snowmane's head through the west wall, half a soaring flood dragon through the east, and every one of them looking at the same thing. Not the people, the furnace. They wanted the fire. They have always wanted the fire. I have known that since a wolf stole a torch out of my hands 2 years ago and left 400 caddies of meat on the ground. That is when the 400 children went up the stairs. 400 children, from infants to 15, moving up a staircase in a building that was being taken apart around them, and not one of them made a sound. The older ones carried the babies. The 5- and 6-year-olds pressed their lips together and climbed and did not speak, because they had been told that noise would distract the people fighting. Luo An was in that line. He is Zhang Lei's boy. He was 6. I have thought about that staircase more than I have thought about any fight I have ever been in. Then a room burst open from the inside, and a dead demon sheep came out of it, and something walked out after it. 9 meters of golden-armored thunder kai. The room went white with terror, and then a few people looked at its eyes and started laughing and crying at the same time. That is a wooden dummy. That is the leader's wooden dummy. 5 of them had been in the side rooms the entire time, killing everything that came through the outer wall, which is why nothing had reached the central hall in 20 minutes. And every man in the old hunting team worked out the problem in the same second because they were the only ones who knew the buildings well enough. A wooden dummy only functions inside the radiation of the iron smelting furnace. Put the furnace out and the dummies die, and Zhang Lei got the rest of it out loud, looking across the hall at my brother. It is not just the dummies. Putting out that fire is exactly what Jingxian camp wants. Then 4 intermediate cold beasts arrived, 1 on each side of the building. Frost wolf north, demon sheep south, snowmane west, soaring flood dragon east, and their eyes were not red. Their eyes were silver white and fluid, like mirrors, and from 30 meters away, you could see your own face in them. They did not feel pain. A thunder kui crushed the chest of the one in the east, and it got up. Another snapped a foreleg off the one in the west, and it was standing on it 4 breaths later, exactly like the men of Jingxian camp. My brother looked up at a sky that had gone completely dark and understood the whole shape of it at once. They had started this in daylight so that we would be at our weakest, and they had been waiting for nightfall the entire time. Downstairs on the ground floor, 500 logging realm people were holding a building together with their hands. Wan Li had run 4 iron chains from the corridors into the central hall, hooked to the structural joints of the whole building, with iron lumps set at every key point. 100 men on the main door chain and 400 more on the other 4. Every time something hit the outside, the chain dragged them forward a few steps and they hauled it back. Hands opened up. Then the chains started coming away red. Wan Li tied his chain around his own waist so that his hands could rest. Others copied him, and a few of them died in seconds when the next impact came, because a chain tied to a person transmits everything, and more people copied them anyway. I have the things they were shouting because 200 people heard them, and every one of them told me afterward. My wife and children are upstairs. What am I for, if not this? I have eaten this camp's meat for 2 years. It is finally my turn to be useful. The hunting team is up there dying. All we have to do is pull. And Wan Li at the end of the longest chain, with his own waist cut open by it, shouting up at the ceiling, "If the wooden walls will not hold, we will build a wall out of ourselves." They were all waiting for one thing. You could hear it in every sentence. Hold on until the leader finishes his breakthrough. When the leader comes out, we live. And I was in a room 40 meters above their heads in a tub, not hearing any of it. The 4 intermediate beasts fought the 4 wooden dummies to a standstill and started taking the building apart between rounds. The second-floor corridors filled up with frost wolves. Zhang Lei held the stairs with 50 men and a thunder kui and would not give up a single step. My brother took 12 men down to the first floor, saw the state of it, and did the arithmetic he had been avoiding for an hour. The outer walls down there had gone from a building to a fence. Beasts were in among the 400 people on the chains, and 3 or 4 of them were feeding. He killed a soaring flood dragon with one cut across the neck. Cao Jin put an arrow through another one's eye and pinned its head to the floor from 40 meters away with one shot, which is the arrow I had promised him 2 years earlier without knowing what I was promising. Wan Li told him they could not hold, and somebody in that chain line finally asked the question out loud. Where is the leader? Is he outside? Is he fighting something worse? 500 people looked up, because a building is only so big and they had not heard my voice once, all night. My brother let that silence run for slightly too long, and then he lost his temper, which he almost never does. You all know what kind of man the leader is better than I do. If he has not come out, then the time is not right. We do what we have to do. Whether we live is up to us. And then, at 400 people holding chains, if you do not trust him, if you do not trust my brother, then let go right now and run. Nobody let go. They pulled harder, and for a moment the 4 chains actually came back in a few inches, which under the circumstances is the single most impressive physical act I have ever heard described. Then the iron gate on the west side came off its mountings, and my brother counted to 3. On 3, 400 people released 4 chains at the same time, and the chains snapped home into the joints of the building so hard they dragged sparks across the floor, and the outer shell of the ground floor collapsed on purpose. Behind it stood 4 green bamboo fences, 50 meters each, that had been moved inside and set up days earlier and covered, diagonal weave, thorns 20 centimeters long, that fire out on impact like rain. 50 or 60 cold beasts died on those fences in about 4 seconds. He had built a room inside a room and then dropped the outer one on the enemy. My brother looked at the sky and said the only thing left to say. It is dark, so they will be coming too. 300 cold beasts got past the fences. 13 earth-digging men on the ground floor. My brother took a snowmane fang through his right shoulder, put transparent thread around its tongue with a hand that still worked, hauled it aside, moved the saber to his left hand, and split that animal's mouth open to the back of its skull. Then he shouted upward, "Shiping, put out the fire, then light the fire." Shiping was on the 3rd floor with 400 children. He had already lit an ordinary bonfire so the temperature would hold. He smothered the furnace with his own coat, and every low-level cold beast in that building stopped for 1 full second and lost interest in the ceiling. Then the whole valley went orange. 100 meters outside the west entrance there is a tree 5 meters through. My brother had spent one night 3 days earlier driving over 10,000 small torches into it. Half of everything Daxia had stockpiled in 2 years in one tree, wired to be lit by an arrow. A column of fire 5 or 6 meters across went up 100 meters into the dark, and 500 cold beasts turned around and left, all of them, off the walls, out of the corridors, out of the building, in one movement, sprinting west over their own dead toward a burning tree. Shiping was still standing there holding a drawn bow with nothing to shoot at. It worked. The administrator's method actually worked. My brother laughed out loud on the ground floor 3 times and said, "Good, good, good," which is the thing our father used to say, because he had understood 3 days earlier the thing that took me 2 years to learn properly. You cannot fight a tide. You can only give it somewhere better to be. They wanted the furnace out. Fine. He gave them the furnace out. And then he gave them a better fire 100 meters away, outside the walls. The 4 intermediate beasts did not go. Their eyes had gone back to normal red the moment the furnace died, and they still came straight for the people, and my brother had 1 second to understand that these 4 had never been hunting a fire at all. "Shiping, light it!" And a voice from the 3rd floor said pleasantly, "Once a fire is out, it is not so easy to light again." Shiping came off the 3rd floor like something thrown, and my brother caught him and was driven back 6 meters by the impact of catching a man. There was a footprint on Shiping's chest. 2 men were standing next to my furnace, Liang Rui and Liang Feng. The 17 men of the old hunting team all had the same reaction, which was to stop breathing because they had watched both of those men die on the 25th of the previous month. I had killed them myself, personally, in front of everybody, and Liang Rui's skin had a faint shine on it now, not only alive, cold-resistant realm. We had known for weeks that the thing behind Jingxian camp could bring people back. Knowing it and watching a man you killed walk around your house are 2 different experiences. He called out to the valley, and 271 men in black poured in through the ruined west entrance with longbows and sabers, and my brother recognized most of the faces in the front rank because they were all men I had killed on the same day. They surrounded what was left of the building and drew on the earth-digging men because they understood exactly which part of Daxia camp was dangerous. The entire population of my camp was standing in one small area around a staircase. "We will not kill you," Liang Rui said. "Where is that bastard leader of yours? Tell him to come out. If he accepts his death today, we will not kill one other person in Daxia. In fact, you can all join Jingxian camp." Nobody answered him. Not the hunting team, not the 500 on the ground, not the 400 children on the third floor, including the ones who were 5 years old. They just looked at him. That made him laugh, in the way a man laughs when he is furious, and he explained at length what a coward I was, and how little I cared about any of them. Then he took a dagger out of his coat and threw it at a child who was glaring at him, Luo An, 6 years old. Zhang Lei screamed his son's name from the second floor and started moving and was never going to be in time. And Luo An, who has grown up eating cold beast meat and has a concept of death because everybody here does, did not dodge. He put himself in front of a smaller child. Then something came down out of the sky. A blade 1.5 meters long, narrow, falling point first, with enough force behind it to drag a white line through the air. It hit the dagger and pinned it to the floorboards, not through the floor, onto it, exactly hard enough and no harder, which is a thing you can only do if you have complete control of about 100,000 caddies. Every face in Daxia camp came up. I had woken up before the tide arrived. I want that on the record before anything else, because a lot of people in that valley spent an hour believing I was in a tub while their children went up a staircase, and I was not. I came out of the breakthrough, felt what was in my body, and understood immediately that Jingxian camp had stopped being a problem, so I did not show myself. I went looking for the thing that had sent 500 cold beasts at my house because that was the only enemy in the valley worth my time, and it had never once shown its face in 2 years. Here is the chain of reasoning, since it is the only part of that night I am actually proud of. A tide of 500 beasts should have finished Daxia, so why bring 271 men as well? Because whoever sent the tide knew it would not be enough, which means they knew about the 5 wooden dummies, which almost nobody inside my own camp knew about, which means they knew the furnace pulls cold beasts, and that we would have to put it out. And the only outsider who had ever stood next to that furnace, touched it with his hand, and had the run of my camp for 3 days, was a gentle young scholar named Bai Yun, who said he came from a village east of Shuanglong Mountain. The only leader in Jingxian camp nobody has ever seen is Liang Tian. Bai Yun is Liang Tian. Liang Tian is the mirror immortal. The marking stone senses every foreign life within 1 kilometer of the valley, including above it and below it. I searched that whole outer band 2 or 3 times and found nothing at all, and I was close to giving up and simply walking downstairs because I'd been counting my own casualties the entire time. Then I looked up. The point where the 2 mountains cross overhead is more than 2,000 meters up, outside the sphere. He was sitting up there in white, watching my camp be destroyed, with silver light coming out of his eyes. The ambush worked. I got 7 or 8 cuts around his eyes before he understood what was happening. The price for that was my left arm, which came out of it covered in fine cracks like a dried lake bed with red underneath, 2 cuts on my face, and about a dozen holes in my chest. What I bought with them was one fact: the eyes are the weakness. Whatever that thing is, it lives in the eyes. Then the tide broke and ran for the burning tree, and Liang Rui and Liang Feng walked into my house, and I dropped 2,000 meters into my own valley. He threw me into the north wall of the valley on the way down, 3 or 4 meters into solid rock, and I came out of it and asked him the only question I had prepared. "You came all the way to my camp to lecture me about battle bodies, low grade, mid grade, high grade. Take a look and tell me which grade mine is." He did not answer me. He jumped straight to the 3rd floor, to the dead furnace, and told my people that they were all going to die because a fire cannot light itself, which is when I finally got to say the sentence I had been saving for an hour. "Who told you my furnace needs a person to light it? It is a system building. I have been turning it on and off with a thought since the day I was given a fire pile in a cave. The oldest people in Daxia knew that. My brother knew it. Song Lin knew it. They had watched me summon a campfire out of nothing while a Specter was strangling a 14-year-old. Zhang Lei's generation did not know, and Jingxian camp certainly did not. The furnace lit. 271 men started screaming at once, and their eyes turned to silver liquid, and the liquid started running out of them. The 4 intermediate cold beasts twisted where they stood. Liang Rui and Liang Feng went down onto the floor. And the man in white at the top of my house distorted and did not fall, because the stronger the thing is, the less it costs. That is when the whole camp saw his face for the first time. Bai Yun, who had eaten at our fire and been polite to our children and asked interested questions about our buildings, with a black haze around him and silver in his eyes and 7 long thin cuts around them where I had been. The eyes, I shouted. Their eyes. Use the fire condensing oil. Shu Gang got the first one, because Shu Gang always gets the first one. An oiled arrow into an eye that was already leaking, and the smoke came up out of the pupil, and then the flame came up out of the inside of the skull, under 5 breaths, nothing left but smoke going up. And then every man in Daxia camp who could hold a bow started shooting for eyes, not just the earth-digging men, the 500 logging realm people who had been holding chains an hour earlier, and, I am told, several of the older children who had been practicing archery every day for a year because a crippled man from a dead camp had made them. Liang Rui and Liang Feng tried to reach my brother, and a thundercui blocked both of them, and being cold resistant did not help because the furnace was suppressing them and the dummy does not feel anything at all. My brother took the hunting team down and hunted them through my own valley. I had other business. He ran. I chased him to the south wall and put my fist through his chest and drove him 7 or 8 meters into a mountain, and he came out of the rock with the whole story on his face. He guessed it was me. That is why he did not appear. The furnace could have been lit at any time, and he left it dead on purpose so that I would believe it needed a person. Yes, that is exactly what I did. Thank you for saying it out loud in front of my camp. Then he broke my sword. A single line of mirror light out of the dust, and startling cold made one soft sound like a struck bell, and then it cracked from the point of impact outward like a mirror and came apart in my hand 3 breaths later. 2 years. That blade was the first iron Daxia ever owned. 11 people sharpened it for 4 hours because they would not let me call it finished. Big brother! Catch! And my brother threw me the long, narrow thing he and Song Lin had been forging for 3 days. Slender, silver white, and running down the blade, 100 forging patterns. Then Wan Li threw me 2 more things. An iron fetal bow with 100 patterns on it, and a quiver of arrows that all had them too. The bowstring was intermediate soaring flood dragon tendon blended with white silk, and I recognized that silk because it came off Liang Rui's body the first time I killed him. Big brother, that string will take 100,000 caddies. They had built me a set of weapons at a level this region has never produced in 3 days in a mine, while waiting to be attacked, and had not mentioned it. The arrowheads were already oiled. Somebody had thought of that too. First shot took his right eye and put fire in the socket. After that it was not really a fight, and I am not going to pretend it was. His men stopped running. 271 men who had been fleeing my valley turned around and came back to put themselves between me and him, shouting, "The leader does not die. The mirror immortal is eternal. As long as the leader lives, we live forever." I have thought about that a great deal since. Stubborn fools, I said. From the moment I came out of that room, Jingxian camp had no reason to exist. My brother started forward with the hunting team, and I waved all of them back. I am enough. The blade light did not have time to fade between strikes. I let Liang Tian go, deliberately, out the west end, and went through the men who had stayed behind for him. Liang Feng came at me with a saber over his head and everything he had. I blocked it with one hand, and his weapon left his hands, and the force went back into his own chest. He is cold resistant, a little over 120,000 caddies, and he had just felt the gap. So he did the only intelligent thing available and grabbed my shoulder to pin me and screamed at his brother to run. It is a bit late for that. I bumped him with my shoulder. That is all. I did not use the blade. He went 10 meters backward into the stone wall with both arms bent the wrong way and never made a sound. Liang Rui was still working out why his brother had told him to run. I threw the blade like a spear. It went through the back of his head and out through his left eye and pinned him to the west wall, and the oil did the rest. 2 cold-resistant realm experts, a shoulder and a throw. There is a specific sound 1,000 people make when they all inhale at the same time. In the middle of the crowd, 6-year-old Luo An stood next to his father with both fists clenched, having watched the man who threw a dagger at him experience approximately 15 seconds of what he had felt. "Father, I want to be as strong as the leader." And Zhang Lei put a hand on his head and said, "There will be a day." I finished the last 30 odd with the bow, eyes only, and then I walked over to my people. Zhang Lei, Song Lin, the hunting team, 50 new earth-digging men whose names I had learned that month. 500 logging realm people who had held a building together with their hands and their waists, Song Mei and Manhwa, and the women who had spent the entire night standing between 400 children and a staircase, and the 400 children who had not made a sound, 9 dead, in an attack by 500 cold beasts and 271 cold-resistant backed fighters. 9. Not one earth-digging man, not one child. I want to say the honest thing about why I stayed hidden for that hour, because there were 3 reasons and only one of them is flattering. The first was that I was hunting the Specter, and I got it, and that was worth an hour. The second was that the casualties stayed inside a range I could accept, and I was watching the whole time, and I will not pretend I was not counting. The third is the one I have never said out loud to any of them. It was a test. I wanted to know what 1,000 people who had been mine for 2 years would do if I was not there. Whether Daxia was a camp, or whether Daxia was one man with a lot of dependents. Because if everything runs through me, then this place has no future, and everything I have built is a trick that ends the day I do. Guolei led that defense. He did the preparation, the timing, the command, the discipline, and the burning tree. Under the same strength, I am not confident I would have done it as well. He is my little brother, and he was 14 when he worked out that both of the men wearing our father's face were fake. Jingxian camp is finished, I told them. Wan Li, get camp cleaned up. Guolei, every earth-digging man, get ready, you are coming with me to their base. I found out later what happened in Jingxian camp while we were getting ready. Their leader came home alone, badly hurt, with black smoke coming off his face, and 2,000 or 3,000 people stood outside his tower waiting for 271 husbands and fathers and sons who were not going to arrive. Duyan stood at the front of that crowd doing the arithmetic and not liking any of it. 4 intermediate cold beasts, 500 low-level, 2 cold-resistant men, 271 earth-digging, and the leader in person, against a camp everyone in his region had written off. His conclusion was that there was a terrifying weapon hidden in Daxia Valley because the alternative did not fit, and in a room on the 3rd floor of a bamboo tower, Liang Tian lay on the floor with both hands over his eyes and black smoke coming out between his fingers and had an argument with himself. I mean that precisely. There were 2 of them in that body, and one of them lives in the mirrors of his eyes, and when the inner one spoke, the outer one's mouth moved with the words in a different voice. The one on the outside was low and resentful and enjoyed things. The one on the inside was gentle, measured, and completely calm, and it was the one that had been talking to me the whole time I thought I was talking to a scholar. The real Liang Tian had used the Specter's own mouth to tell me about battle bodies, to feed me a number that would make me overdose on beast blood and die in my own tub. And the Specter had let him do it because the Specter wanted me dead too, and because that was the price of getting the body. There was a contract between them, which the gentle one brought up as a threat. A Specter may not force people to become its followers. And the Specter's answer, which I have not been able to stop thinking about since, you have no idea how much you humans want to live forever. Then it lifted one hand and Dulei came off the floor into it. The second leader of Jingxian camp, Duyan's father, covered in cracks, eyes empty, no more responsive than a coat. It had killed him at Redwood Ridge with its own hands, days earlier, and kept the body. It healed him and put him back, and he stood up and did not remember 1 second of it. Second brother, it said in his sworn brother's gentle voice, Daxia is too strong, they will come. I cannot stop Guojie, the people of camp must. And Dulei nodded along to a sentence that no living person should have agreed to. He went out onto the balcony and told 12,000 people that they had lost, that Liang Rui and Liang Feng and 271 men were dead, and that the leader was critical. The crowd's reaction was anger, not grief, not fear, anger. Duyan stood there watching the families of 271 dead men fail to grieve, and his skin crawled. Then his father made the offer. The mirror world was open. Abandon your body, send your soul across, and you get eternal peace. No cold beasts, no specters, no frost, endless food and endless warmth. And once everyone crosses, the leader recovers, and once he deals with Daxia, he can bring you all back whenever you like, and you can travel between the two. Then Dulei's pupils turned silver, and he cut his own throat on the balcony rail in front of his son, and then it started. In the mirror world, we live forever, 1 at a time, then 100 at a time. Serene faces, small smiles, everybody looking up at an empty sky. Duyan and his uncles ran into that crowd shouting and shaking people and slapping them, and none of it worked. A man took a blade through the thigh and glanced down at it, and then looked back up at the sky and put a dagger in his own heart. 12,000 people in that camp. Over 9,000 had worshipped. He got the remaining 3,000 or so out through the South Passage because the ones who had never worshipped could not see whatever was up there. His mother, Chao Mei, would not come with him. She looked up at the balcony where her husband was hanging over the rail, and she told her son to go and save the people from Ningzhou who had never worshipped because they could still be saved. He tried to argue. When has your mother ever changed her mind? Every second you waste here is fewer people. And then she said the thing that finished him. It is too cold to leave your father hanging up there like that. And she walked toward the tower. They were nearly out of the passage when the sky over the bamboo building chimed like a struck mirror. 2 oval mirrors, shaped like eyes, hanging in the air. The left one threw a narrow, fierce beam down onto the building, wide enough for exactly 1 person, and the right one showed a world. The same basin, the same houses, the same paths, except green and warm and full of birds and flowers and sunlight, with food heaped on the ground, and people walking around in it, laughing. Everyone in that passage saw somebody they had buried. That is my father. That is my husband. That is old Gao's whole family. That is the second leader. And then Liang Tian's voice, gentle as anything, said that the mirror immortal was him, and he was the mirror immortal, that he had made this place, that you only have to die once to move in, and that afterward you can come and go as you please. And the proof was standing right there in everybody's memory, because Liang Rui and Liang Feng had died and come back and been perfectly normal apart from their tempers. Then the people inside the mirror started calling out to the people in the passage by name and holding out their hands. An old man in that crowd put a dagger into his own heart. Then it went through 3,000 people like fire through dry grass. Even if it is fake, I want to be with my family. I believe the leader, and Du Yan's mother from inside the mirror told her son to trust her and come in because his father was waiting. He put his own broadsword against his neck and pushed, and then a wave of heat hit him in the face and he came back to himself because both of those mirrors were on fire. We had arrived. Dozens of oiled arrows were going into those things, and they did not shatter like glass, they stuck like meat, and then they burned. How can you be so fast? That was the scream out of the sky. How could you possibly be so fast? 9,000 souls collected, and the world one step from finished, and I was early. You are a fool, I said from the mouth of the passage. I let you go on purpose. Did you think I would not put a mark on you first? If you could get away that easily, what exactly was my breakthrough for? Du Yan shouted the situation across to me before I could ask for it. His 3,000 had never worshipped. The other 9,000 were dead by their own hands. It was preparing something. That is a good man in a bad hour, and I said thank you and told him to get his people out. Instead, he sent his uncle Zhao Jian to hide 3,000 people at the edge of the arrow bamboo forest, kept 41 earth-digging men, and came to fight beside us, and my brother threw him a bag of fire-condensing oil without being asked or told. That is the whole reason Jingxian Camp still exists as a group of people today, and neither of them has ever mentioned it since. The oil ignites on contact with a specter, I said, walking in. Those two mirrors are the mirror immortal's actual body, which means Liang Tian is being controlled. I was wrong about that last part, and being wrong about it nearly cost me my throat about 10 minutes later. Then the puppets came. Hundreds of expressionless people with sabers out of the houses, and hundreds of silver pupils lighting up in the upper windows, and thousands of arrows, every one of them at earth-digging realm. Jingxian Camp had only ever had 300 earth-digging men, and there were 500 or 600 coming at us, which meant the right-hand mirror was standing them back up as fast as we put them down. I kicked a door panel into a room, and it killed or crippled dozens of earth-digging men behind it, which is a thing I did without thinking about it, and which apparently told Du Yan's people more about me than anything else that night. I heard the phrase super-grade battle body for the first time from a man hiding behind a wall, and I did not know what it meant. My brother told me to go on ahead, that they would hold, and I did, because it was the correct call, and because he had earned making it. I threw dozens of blocks of fire-condensing oil out in front of myself while running and cut them apart in flight with the blade, so that I was moving inside a cloud of black mist, and every silver eye it touched went up. Inside 100 meters, I summoned the iron smelting furnace out of nothing in the open air and lit it. Both mirrors flinched. I could feel fear coming off them, which is a strange thing to feel from a pair of objects. The building fired 10-centimeter spikes at me out of its own walls, and they came off my skin without leaving a white mark, and that was the first time I properly understood what my own body had become. Liang Tian was on the floor of the top room with his hands over his eyes, and the beam from the left mirror was cracking his skin everywhere it touched, which is the same beam that had cracked my left arm. Then he laughed and stood up and healed, and his eyes went normal, and the man in front of me was nothing like the scholar who had visited my camp. That black oil and that furnace only suppress me. They cannot kill me. Super-grade battle body, 6 mains of strength. I truly underestimated you, but you cannot beat me now. You and Liang Tian are one, I said. But you are two different people, aren't you? That was the only thing I said in that room that landed, and I could see it land, because my calm was the thing it hated most, and it had spent years living inside a man who had the same calm. It shook the building, and every white bamboo leaf came off the walls, and then every leaf its left eye touched turned into a beam of light, and the room filled up with them. Those leaves cut me. Bamboo leaves, cutting skin that had just shrugged off spikes. Then, an ink-black longsword, drawn without a sound, moving without a sound, and the only noise it made was a rustle like a forest when the point touched me. 7 mains, nearly 8, 750,000 caddies, going on 800,000, in a body that had been on the floor 2 minutes earlier. That was the 9,000. That is what 9,000 people bought. Specters get stronger by killing. I have known that since a man in a black robe told me so through my father's face, and I had never seen the exchange rate written out before. I moved so the sword went under my arm instead of through my heart, ignored the piece of me it took, reversed my grip and hauled upward and put it 20 meters through the wall. Who told you, I said, that I only had 6 mains after my breakthrough? I should explain the number because it is the entire reason any of this worked. Bai Yun in my own camp over tea had told me the latter. At the 30,000 catty earth digging ceiling, you reforge your skin with beast blood. An ordinary man gains 20,000. A low, mid, or high-grade battle body gains 30, 50, or 70,000. And when the remodeling reaches perfection, your strength doubles, which means the finest battle body in the world tops out at 2 mains, 200,000 catties. He fed me that so I would look at my own progress, decide I was behind, and drink more blood than a body can survive. He did not know about the window in my head, which spent 100,000 units of wood keeping my nerves alive while I did exactly what he wanted. At 70%, I was at 120,000 catties. Every percent after that cost more blood than the last. At 100%, I was at 300,000. And then the breakthrough did not double it, it tripled it. 900,000 catties, 9 mains. A normal cold-resistant realm cultivator has one. I went in with the blade into the left eye, and the pupil connects to somewhere else, so the point never came out the back of the skull, but the oil did not care about that at all. Then a kick through the floor, then the right eye, and the 2 mirrors in the sky shrank down into a black one and a white one, palm-sized, and started to drift down. Guojie, my thanks. The gentle voice, from under my own blade. And a black sword took the skin off the back of my neck, and if I had been half a step slower, it would have taken the front. 8 mains at least, from a man who had been a puppet 3 seconds earlier. I caught the white mirror. He knocked the black one out of my reach and took it, and then we stood there 10 meters apart, sword and blade, a mirror in each free hand, for about 10 breaths. Then he sheathed his sword and bowed and smiled warmly at me. Guojie, I trust you have been well. The scholar was back, polite, refined, genuinely pleasant, and now I could see the whole thing. The sword had been meant to kill me, which means the man who came to my camp and told me about battle bodies was him. Not the Specter using his mouth. Him. Which also explains why he could stand next to my furnace and put his hand on it without flinching, back when I was congratulating myself for testing him. The Specter had simply been hiding at the time. He let a Specter live inside him for years. He let it kill his own sworn brother. He let it talk 9,000 of his own people into cutting their own throats. Because he needed somebody strong enough to kill it for him so that he could pick up what was left, and I had walked in and done it. There seems to be some misunderstanding between us, he said. I did not give him the chance to explain, and the clash brought the tower down around both of us. My brother and 100 men surrounded him with bows up. He slapped the black mirror against his own right eye, and it shrank and went in like light going into water. That mirror will not be much use in your hands. Give it to me, and I promise you something far greater later. Then his right eye opened onto a black light with a green living world inside it, and the space around him started to bend, and iron arrows stopped in midair and hung there. This is the yin-yang mirror. Yours is the yang half. Mine is the yin. Since you will not hand it over, keep it safe for a while. And then he said the thing I have not been able to put down since. One day you will hand it to me of your own free will. He went into the black light, and every body lying in that camp went with him, 9,000 of them in about a dozen breaths. And then Jingxian camp was empty. 40 houses, a fallen tower, warehouses, workshops, and not one living or dead person in any of it except us. Du Yan came and knelt in the middle of it with 40 men behind him. If you do not mind, take us, all 3,000 of us. From now on, we serve Daxia through anything. I had known that was coming since the moment he sent his uncle to hide his people instead of running with them. His father was dead. His leader was gone. He had 41 earth-digging men and 3,000 mouths and an arrow bamboo forest he could not hold. And if Daxia did not take them, Beehive Camp would eventually come and take them apart. He is a smart man. Smart men know when the arithmetic has already finished. Get up. From now on, we are one family. Then we went through what was left of a camp of 12,000 people, and I want to give you the numbers because I stood there and read them off a list and had to keep my face still. 1,900,000 caddies of iron ore. 2,700,000 caddies of coal, 90,000 caddies of raw bamboo silk, 210,000 of crystal fruit, 70,000 of beast meat, 1,500 of beast blood, 4,700 weapons, including 700 over 1,000 caddies and 710,000 caddy iron fetal bows, and 2 more iron mines they had never finished, and a coal mine in the forest. I had spent 2 years measuring my life in hundreds of caddies, 2 hours in a mine for 1 fist of ore. Take the weapons, the silk, the fruit, the meat, and the blood, I said. Leave the coal and the iron. I will carry those myself. 41 men from Jingxian watched an entire warehouse disappear under my hand and had no idea what to do with their faces. They also had 3 trailers made of solid iron, 10 meters long, 500,000 caddies each, carrying 5 times their own weight, pulled by 20 men. Daxia had been making trailers out of wood with iron on the axles because building one out of iron was not a thing anybody could think about. And then Du Yan told me the exchange rate they had been trading at with Beehive Camp. 40 caddies of iron ore for 1 caddy of cold beast meat, or 70 caddies of coal. Every man from Daxia standing near me made the same noise at the same time. We had spent 2 years underground digging ore because we thought that was what a camp does, while sitting on a forest full of the only thing anybody actually wants. I corrected myself out loud before anybody got carried away, because that ratio is not a market, it is a coincidence. You have to happen to meet a camp that is starving for beasts, and rich in metal, and close enough to reach, and strong enough that they trade with you instead of simply taking it. But the lesson underneath it was the real one, and it cost me nothing to learn. I had been running a camp for 2 years as though Daxia was the only thing in the world. Their raw bamboo silk turned out to be the thing I actually wanted. Roasted in a furnace, it goes soft without losing any strength, and cloth woven from it is warm and comfortable and slightly armored. I stood there in a dead camp holding a scrap of it and thought 3 words that do not exist in this world: paper, cloth, silk. The 3,000 were waiting at the edge of the arrow bamboo forest around a fire. More than half of them were children. That is not a figure of speech. Adults understood the ice abyss well enough to want out of it, and the children did not know enough to be tempted, so the children lived. Most of them are orphans now. I sent my brother back for the trailers because it was going to be dawn, and children walked slowly, and 300 or 400 people came out of my valley pushing carts and shouting at strangers to get on. Children, get up here. I can take 20. I can take 30. Get the injured on first. Move. It is nearly light. The few adults from Jingxian who had been resisting the whole idea stopped resisting somewhere in the next 20 minutes, and by the time we reached the valley, some of them were pushing carts and asking questions about the meat ration. We had lost 9 people in the beast tide. Jingxian camp had lost 9,000. My wooden house was gone. The walls, the corridors, the rooms, the iron chains, 2 years of Wan Li's life. We put up a temporary shed 50 meters wide and packed everyone into it, and Du Yan's people looked at it and were visibly disappointed, which I found extremely funny. The window in my head read like this: Camp Daxia, Level 0, Lord, Guoji, Cultivation, Cold-Resistant Realm. Territory population, 4,621, wood 120,000, coal 145,000, or 210,000. Enabled buildings, 6, iron smelting furnace, level 2, wooden dummy, medicine decoction pot, grinding stone, green bamboo fence, marking stone. 2 years ago that window said 154 people, 15 wood, and everything else 0. 379 people short of a giant camp. We sat around a stove and rebuilt the whole thing. Wan Li offered a new house with 10 times the defense in 2 months, then a month and a half once he saw how many hands he had. I disbanded the hunting team entirely and made it a department that anybody at earth digging can form a squad inside, and I made Du Yan its head. 2 days after he arrived, over Zhang Lei, over Song Lin, over my own brother, nobody liked it. Du Yan tried to refuse it in front of everyone. Nobody here is stronger than you. You take it today, and I want one thing. There is never a shortage of anything that comes off a cold beast in this camp. If there is, I will hold you responsible. Then I made my brother minister, which means that when I am not there, he is me. I gave every child under 6'5" caddies of meat a month for nothing, forever, and I watched 41 earth-digging men from a camp of 12,000 people fail to believe it. They asked me twice. They thought Guo Lei had misspoken, and I gave everyone private property. Anything you buy with contribution points is yours, not the camp's. Yours, to do whatever you like with, and nobody on the Pink Sea Plain had ever heard of such a thing, which told me a great deal about the Pink Sea Plain. Then I went out and stood on a roof at midday. There is a thing I do now, which is that I sit in the open in the daylight while everyone I know hides in a building. Snowflakes the size of my palm come down and turn to vapor an inch above my skin. Du Yan cannot explain it. He knows the cold-resistant realm better than anybody in my camp, and he says the leakless state only lets you move around in the day, not stand in the light, and there are no exceptions, and he is right. My skin is simply harder than the rule. I found the next stage while I was up there, and I am not sure I like it. After you remodel the skin, you regenerate the flesh, you let the cold light through the skin, and it destroys what is underneath, and then you heal it back stronger, which means the rest of my life is going to be an argument with the sun. At the speed I can manage sitting on a roof, that will take several decades. So it is going to have to be advanced cold beasts instead, which is a sentence I wrote down and then looked at for a while. 4,621 people. 2 years ago, there were 154 of us in a hole in a hillside with 3 days of fruit left, sitting in the dark with the fires out, listening to something knock on the door in our dead father's voice. I had 4,000 caddies, a brother, and a campfire I could not tell anyone about. The first time I said out loud that one day I would make the cold beasts and the specters kneel in front of Daxia camp, everyone in that cave thought I was making a speech. I still have not made them kneel. I have made 2 of them burn, which is a start. But here's the part I keep coming back to. In a valley with 4,000 people in it and a mountain of somebody else's iron in my pocket, I am carrying half of a mirror I cannot use, taken off a thing I did not manage to kill, and the man who has the other half is walking around somewhere in a world I have seen about one corner of. He let a monster eat 9,000 of his own people to get his half. He looked at me across the wreck of his own camp and smiled like a friend and told me exactly what he intends. One day he said, "You will hand it to me of your own free will." He was not threatening me. That is what bothers me. He was telling me something he already knows about what happens next. So I have a valley to rebuild, a house to raise 10 times stronger, 3,000 orphans to feed, and 80 advanced cold beasts to find somewhere in a forest whose far side no human being has ever seen. And I have got one white mirror sitting in my room that does absolutely nothing at all. So I put it in a drawer and I got on with the house. And every few days I take it out and look at it, and it looks back, and neither of us says anything.